into Fantasy Draft Prep Live, presented by Snickers, alongside the one and only Jason Fitz. I'm Kelsey Riggs. Fitz, how's it going?
And I am excited. Like, this means that we are this close to getting football that actually counts, like the fantasy football draft process. Kelsey, I'm all in for this. Are you excited?
I'm excited. I'm excited to be with you for the next hour as we get ready for the actual ESPN Fantasy Draft. The marathon continues, which is always a fun time here on campus, and we've got a lot planned over the next hour, Fitz.
Are you a big fantasy football fanatic? Like, give me your fantasy football fandom.
Yeah, so I started playing fantasy football for the first time, I guess it was about 5 years ago. And Fitz, it's quite the experience. I grew up in like a college football town. So playing fantasy football and then covering the NFL for the 3 years that I did in Carolina covering the Panthers, I'm all in. Now, I don't know that, you know, when we talk to Fields and some of these people later, that they're going to agree with all of my techniques for how I draft my picks. But I feel like it works out usually.
Look, and you know, it's so funny you say that because I grew up sort of the opposite. I grew up in an NFL family and, you know, in an NFL house and a big NFL fanatic. So it wasn't until I moved to the South when I was like, why does everybody worry about Saturdays? And that obviously changed my life. But the NFL fandom is part of what kills me every single year when I build my fantasy team. Now, sometimes it helps me get something sneaky right, but it creates this weird, and I think everybody has felt this. I'll never forget, I was in a bar in Nashville called the Rudder, all right? And so I'm hanging out in the Rudder. I'm watching the Raiders play the Steelers. This is a time when my beloved Raiders were sort of meh, right? So I'm sitting in the bar and I'm watching, and they rip off an 80-yard touchdown. And I am running through that bar screaming words that don't belong in public. I'm doing all the trash talking. I sit back down and I'm like, you know what's the best thing about this? At the time, I was like, you know, I got Darren McFadden at the time on my fantasy team. So I just scored all these points. And somebody at the bar was like, no, that wasn't McFadden. That was a different running back. And I'm like, what? And so suddenly it twisted my whole mind. So now every year I have to make this self-negotiation of whether I take Raiders or whether I don't take Raiders, because it can affect the way I feel about certain plays throughout the course of a game.
It makes you look at the game differently. It makes you pay attention to things differently, and it makes you either enjoy or hate the games differently. I was telling you earlier, my parents aren't huge NFL fans, and when I started playing fantasy football, they got in on it, and it just becomes this whole fandom thing. And not just the season Fits, but we're going to talk about it a little bit later. The actual draft day is one of the best parts of fantasy football, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Like, the party around that is amazing. By the way, we should tell everybody, and we'll tell you all night, you can still sign up. You know, you're going to need help through the drafting process because, let's face it, most of you are not Field Yates, right? So if you're not Field Yates, if you're not Matthew Berry, if you're not Daniel Dopp, then you need help. The ESPN app can do that. So get out to the ESPN app. Sign up for the fantasy football leagues there, and it's a great way to make sure that, you know, even if you don't know what you're doing, the auto draft will help you out.
The app or ESPN.com/FFL. We're with you till 7. The draft starts at 7 o'clock, and we'll simulcast that here, and then we'll be all gas, no breaks, sticking with you through the commercials, and Golic Jr. is going to come around too.
All gas, no breaks. I'm stealing that from you. I really like that.
Perfect. I don't think that I came up with it, but I appreciate that you're going to steal it from me.
It's the first time I heard it, so in my mind you did.
Let's talk about some storylines, Fitz, and lots to break down. Let's start with Dak Prescott. You know, injured October of last year, heartbreaking scene. Obviously, everybody's really cheering for his return, but how are you feeling about Dak as we get ready for this year?
I can't say this loud enough. I am all in on Dak Prescott. Like, I am all in on Dak, and I think we've got the Cowboys thing wrong, and I think we've got the Dak thing wrong when we talk about where this team is headed. And let me say this first and foremost, as everybody knows, I'm a Raiders fan. For the love of God, I have a Raiders tattoo, right? So there's no part of me that cares about whether or not the Cowboys are good or bad. What I care about in this is looking at logic. And so for me, there's two things. Dak didn't have an injury history going into last year. He was injured last year. Now, we understand that he's got a different injury with the shoulder that's kept him out of training camp. But I keep looking at what the Cowboys did. The Cowboys said, hey, we're going to change our coaching staff. We're going to believe that Jason Garrett was a problem. We're going to bring in a new staff, and we're going to align that staff with this talent. That staff lost their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year and still went 6-10. I mean, I think we're getting it twisted on how hard it is to win with a backup quarterback. So even though Mike McCarthy as head coach, to me, was a questionable hire, I keep looking at it saying Dak was putting up huge numbers before before the injury. He's never had an injury problem coming into last season. Like, I have no reason not to look at Dak and say, yes, he's going to be epic. I think he's going to put up massive numbers. And I think the Cowboys are going to be a lot better than a lot of people think.
Well, and it's been a long time, obviously, since the surgery and since the rehab and all of that. You're obviously keeping an eye on what happened with his shoulder as well. But Fitz, no concerns for you at all about will he get back to what he was after the injury?
I don't think he has to be great to put up great numbers, because there is the offensive line's got some issues, but there are so many weapons around him. And I feel like that's a cliche we're going to talk about for the next several hours. But when you're talking about the ability to just throw up touchdowns, like that is what this team has. They have every option, every opportunity for Dak to just sit back there and be blessed with so much greatness around him. I don't think Dak has to be Superman to put up Superman numbers, but I still think he can be. So, yeah, I'm all in on that.
And are we all in on the NFC East this year? This is going to be a league that...
I mean, I'm hotter. Let's say this. Like, I'm not like, but I'll say this.
We're not going to be midway through the season saying, does anyone want to win the NFC East?
I think the Cowboys are going to be good. I think the Washington football team has an opportunity to be very good. I think that, realistically, the Giants can be okay. And as long as we forget the Eagles are in the division, we'll be just fine.
Let's talk about a place that you know very well, the Titans, Tennessee, and Julio Jones. And what do you think about Julio there? We feeling good? What do you expect from him this season?
Look, I mean, it's funny because I get to talk to the ESPN affiliate in Nashville every week. And when they signed Julio, they sat back and they asked me, how do you feel about it? And I told the Titans fans, I think you should be doing naked cartwheels in the street. Like, I think this is worth celebrating. Julio Jones is not just a good player. He is a great player. Yes, he's older. Yes, he's coming off of an injury. Yes, you can say all of that is a reason to doubt his production, but I'll also say he's in a situation now where he doesn't have to be the guy. He has to be the number 2 wide receiver. A.J. Brown is the guy in this offense. And everybody talks about Derrick Henry, rightfully so, what he means to this offense. But Ryan Tannehill is absolutely not the quarterback in Miami that he is now in Tennessee. And when you look at their ability to pick up chunk yardage plays, they're one of the league leaders the last 2 years in that without Julio Jones. So I look at Julio Jones coming in and say, man, he's going to be taking on the second best coverage, the second best scheme. Like, absolutely. Julio's going to have a big year with a lot of red zone touchdowns. I think that he's a really good play for people.
And to be in a place where you're happy to be at and to have a locker room like that makes a huge difference too.
Yeah, like we feel right now. Like you came in and you're like, all right, we're working together.
Great.
No?
So great. That's exactly how I felt. I didn't know if that was how you felt going into today, but the only reason I'm here is because they said Jason Fitz and, of course, my Golic Jr. a little bit later. Matthew Stafford. Welcome to the NFC West, Fitz. What do we think about Stafford's ceiling as he goes out there with the Rams and how he's going to fit in?
It better be great. And look, when we talk about Stafford, I think you have to talk a lot about Sean McVay, who has been the golden child, right? Like, if you knew Sean McVay, you got a head coaching job. Like, if you cut his lawn one day, somebody else made you a head coach. We understand that. Well, part of that is because of the way that offense is looked. Now, I think Darrell Henderson has the opportunity to be a nice running back for the Rams. They've got some talent there outside of just what they're doing at the quarterback position. But this is a team with realistic Super Bowl aspirations. They got to come in. Matt Stafford needs to be who Matt Stafford is by reputation right now. Like, I just feel like the Lions get so dumped on in this process, and Matt Stafford comes out clean as a whistle. That doesn't happen if he doesn't go there and excel. But also, if he doesn't go there and excel, maybe we need to revisit some of the conversations we've been having about wonderkin Sean McVay through this process.
We all know how important quarterbacks are in the NFL and throughout the NFL fantasy draft as well, Fitz. When you look at some of the top quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford right now, about number 11 average draft position, according to ESPN.com fantasy leagues. Are you buying this, that he's going to maybe break into that top 10, going to have that kind of year? Are we selling? Are we medium on it? What do you feel?
I think 11's kind of right, you know, because when you think about the way fantasy points come, and really what you want from a quarterback at the fantasy position is somebody that will throw for touchdowns and run for touchdowns. I'm not sure Stafford gives you that dynamic ability, and we'll get some of Fields' tricks, but I've heard Field Yates a couple of times remind all of us, I think there were 20 quarterbacks last year that averaged around 15 points. So when you start talking about point production in fantasy football, I think Matt Stafford is right on the cusp of top 10, which is about where he should be, and that's okay. Like, we make that sound like that's such a bad thing sometimes when it's like it's not top 5, but to me, you can still be incredibly successful with that rate.
Are you like me when you're doing your draft, and even though, Fields and all these people tell us, hey, it's okay, you don't have to get a quarterback, you can wait. Don't worry that the top 5 are off the board, you're fine. I start panicking internally every time and get sucked in earlier. Do you bite that bullet or no?
Can we be honest here?
I'm being incredibly honest right now.
Fantasy football drafts have actually changed the way I cover the NFL draft. I have spent, this is 4 years I've hosted the NFL draft for us digitally at this point. 4 years of doing it. And I used to be so hard on, the morons and the idiots and all the things you say about everybody that you don't like the way they pick. And then you're sitting in a fantasy football draft and you realize that guy you want is on the board and you're sitting there saying, oh my God, what if somebody else takes him?
Yeah.
Somebody else does move up and take that person. And oh man, the rest of your night is like you're sitting at dinner trying to have a drink and all of a sudden all you're thinking about is that you lost out on Darren Waller because somebody sniped him right in front of you. Like that's real. The whole draft process has changed the way I look at actual teams in the actual draft room and how they do it, because we like to yell at Jerry Jones, for example, for needing to be more patient. Yeah. That's really cute to say when you're not the one that's in there saying, I'm in love with this player and I need him in my life.
This has now turned into the ESPN Draft Prep Live presented by Snickers couch where we go through our therapy right now.
I'm all in for a therapy couch
session. We just worked through that problem right there. Let's stick with quarterbacks and let's talk about the Saints. Like when you look at the Saints, who's it going to be this year? Is it going to be Jameis? Is it going to be Taysom? Are we going to see a little bit of both? We got to see both of them. Neither were fantastic. Neither were terrible. Obviously some kinks to work out. But Fitz, how do we feel about what's going on in New Orleans?
So our buddy Mike Golic Jr. is going to join us later. And Mike always makes fun of me because I'm sort of what we like to call risk averse when it comes to the quarterback position in general. So I don't like taking huge risks at that position. So if you got a guy, you stick with the guy. I'm very patient when it comes to quarterback. That being said, and I know this sounds weird with what I just said, I'm all in on Jameis in this situation because there's at least some proof of concept. And while Jameis has too many turnovers, the one thing we forget is that Jameis did throw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns in that same season.
It's because they kind of end up canceling each other out, though.
But do they? When Tom Brady goes down there and throws a bunch of picks early on, do we not look at it and say, maybe risk it for the biscuit affected Jameis?
I mean, the proof is in the pudding there a little bit more, I feel like.
That's probably. Okay, that's fair. I just said Jameis Winston and Tom Brady in the same sentence. I'll see myself out.
Let's keep it rolling because one of the things that we also love about fantasy football is not just the draft parties, it's not just the competition, it's not just the banter, it's also the team names, Fitz. And there are some incredible ones that come out of that. So we are joined now by Omar Raja, who we are incredibly excited to talk to. And Omar, want to start just first of all, we're talking fantasy, we're talking about what we like the most about it. Fitz and I are probably on the same page with food, drinks, everything, the first day of the draft party. What do you look forward to about this part of the year?
Just wings. I eat so many wings. I have gained 20 pounds during this pandemic, and I don't plan on losing any of it. I'm just going to keep on eating until the NFL season is done. So that has been my enjoyment over the last year, I guess.
Okay, well, first and foremost, now that you're with us at ESPN all the time, Omar, I think this is great because J. Tim's has the best wings in the world. J. Timothy's in Connecticut. It's the one thing. So are you a wet wing, a dry wing, a spicy wing? Is there a particular type of wing that we go to? Well, this is the breaking content you can only get here.
Yes, this is what I can talk about wings all day, every day, okay? So the best wings are J. Tim's. I live in New York City right now. But I never understood this fascination with Connecticut wings. I didn't think it was true, but I have to give Connecticut its respect. J. Tim's has some of the best wings ever. They're wet. I always go wet, and I always go buffalo or barbecue. And you really can't miss, I feel like. I've never gone wrong with the buffalo wing.
For the record, I am a dry wing, dry rub kind of person, so I couldn't disagree with you guys more. Give me all the dry lemon pepper wings all the time.
This is why we're the three bears. I'm both. I want the wet and the dry. I want a bucket of each. Go ahead.
Okay. Omar, we're going to throw some team names at you, and you can tell us what you think about them. Whoever came up with all of these, I want to hire them to do something in my life. I don't know what it is, but they're really good.
Okay.
We're starting with Dak to the future. Do we like this team name? And also, how much did our graphics crew crush it with that?
Listen, I'll tell you this. I'm not a huge fan of the return of the Mac names, or Call of Duty is another one that I saw today. But this name, because of the graphic, I'm cool with it. If I didn't see the graphic, I would hate it. But because of the graphic, I'm cool with it.
Whew. Now, almost a tough judge. All right, let's go to the next one.
Super tough.
Hot Chub Time Machine. Very careful with this one, Omar.
I am going to be very, very careful. I'm just going to say it's fine. That's all I'm going to say. It's fine, cool. Nothing else to say about this one.
Let me keep it moving so we stay out of trouble and I don't get kicked off the show.
Yeah, please. I'm uncomfortable.
Lance Revolution. How do we feel about this, Omar?
Okay, that one's actually really good because I've never seen it before. Some of the other ones you've seen, Back to the Future, you've kind of seen before. I've never seen Lance Revolution. I love it. I don't love the attire, though.
I'm too old. Lance Revolution takes me back to Lance Bass and a different time in my life.
You know, I grew up with one of the guys in NSYNC.
You did?
Yeah, JC. Like JC and our buddies. So, there you go. There's your random fact nobody cared about. Next
I feel
name
like there's a story there.
All You Can ETN.
I love this.
There's a little rookie look?
No.
Come on, Omar.
Boo. Awful. This
What's
is the
wrong with
worst
it?
name by far. This is not funny. The picture isn't even funny. I hate it. No way.
Let me see if I can make you happier with this one if I sing to you. Hotel, Holiday Inn. It almost got me. I almost called it the Holiday Inn still.
I'm leaning no still. I'm sorry. The singing, maybe you want to try again with the singing? I don't love it. Let's try it again with the singing.
I'll try it again for you with this next one because we're going to go Cobb, lock it, drop it.
Sure. I feel bad. I was definitely going to say no, though, but now I feel bad. So, yes, only because I feel bad.
We're going to keep singing them. Country Road, Take Mahomes. That's our next one.
That's why I left you that one because there was actually a little melody that I needed.
That fits. You killed that. The melody, everything was perfect. I think it's great.
Look at that.
For me.
What I'm hearing is you like Fitz's singing voice more than you like
mine,
I
like
which
it
is
a lot better than yours.
Totally fine and actually probably the best thing that you could do right now, Omar.
Listen, I was very impressed with his voice. Don't you have a musical background, Fitz?
That is
so
true.
It would make sense. You don't have to be offended. It's all good.
It is all good. Omar, sit tight. We're going to come check back in with you in just a little while, so don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Field Yates here with the make or break rules for drafting a winning fantasy football team. You need to focus on value. All fantasy positions are not created equal. In 2020, just 17 running backs averaged at least 14 fantasy points per game, compared to 29 wide receivers who did the same. Running back value drops off quickly, and if you don't use the early rounds to stock up, your fantasy team stock is going down. You should take wide receivers early. Why? Because wide receivers are the second most important position in fantasy. You simply can't have too many. Remember, running backs and wide receivers comprise at least 4 of your 9 roster spots. You need deep talent at both positions to survive a long 17-game season. Sure, we'd all love to have these guys, but don't forget, there are a lot of good fantasy QBs, so be patient at quarterback. In 2020, a total of 27 quarterbacks averaged at least 15 fantasy points per game. And of the 15 players who appeared on the most championship teams in 2020, only 2 of them were quarterbacks. Yes, you can win your fantasy league with an Allen or a Mahomes, but you can also do it with a Stafford or a Tannehill. Remember to draft tight ends at the back end. After the top 5 tight ends, production falls off a cliff. But the depth of the position makes the next dozen or so tight ends almost interchangeable. So if you miss out on one of the top guys, don't panic. You can and will find a solid starting tight end in later rounds. Defense is the least predictable position in fantasy, and it doesn't win championships. 2019's top fantasy defense, the San Francisco 49ers, was drafted in just 3.5% of leagues. Even last year's top fantasy D, the Colts, was only the 6th defense picked up in drafts. Yet someone in your fantasy league will draft the defense early. Don't be that person. Finding breakout players late in drafts wins leagues, so in this case, upside matters late. Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool, and Curtis Samuel all finished last season as top 25 wide receivers, but they all started the season drafted outside the top 50 at the position. Late in your draft, always look to young players with paths to playing time. Upside, upside, upside. Here's something else. Master a few terms, master your whole league. But know the lingo. One example, streaming. Streaming means to use a bench or waiver wire find as a short-term starter due to a favorable matchup. Some successful managers stream quarterback, tight end, defense, and kicker all season long. You could too. Remember, this isn't your final roster. your draft night roster won't be your Week 18 roster. Trades, savvy use of the waiver wire, and injuries will transform your roster all season long. And that's the fun of fantasy football. Draft night is just the start. So get in the game and go to ESPN.com/FFL or download the ESPN Fantasy app now.
All right, so now that Field showed us exactly what to do, we're ready to screw it all up and probably not.
Oh, yeah, we're not taking any of that advice,
right? We're going to do our
right?
best right now. Top 5 ride-or-die players that we got to have this year. Fitz, who
Ooh, I get to go first?
You're going first.
I feel good about this.
I'm the guest. I'm following your lead.
I feel strong about this, and I'm just going to scroll, and I'm going to scroll, and I'm going to scroll.
What could you be looking for?
The alphabet is good to me, and I am going to take at number 1 on this entire thing. 1, Darren Waller. Now, look, I know Field says you don't need to get yourself a tight end early. I understand that completely, but understand this. John Gruden's offense, he's not using him like a tight end. He is a wide receiver. The Raiders don't have a prominent wide receiver they know will step into the role to get the catches that are going to come. You're talking about a top 10 scoring offense last year. You're talking about, I believe, by the end of the year, probably the number 2 tight end in the entire NFL. He's my ride or die.
That was maybe like number 3 on his list of do not do. So I appreciate the fact that you went ahead, and went the other way. Can
Don't tell me what to do,
that
Field.
way? Can we slide it?
Oh, I'll slide
I'm
you.
just sliding
I
the
got you.
people
I got
because
you.
yours seem to be a better slider. What I'm going to do is we talked about homerism at the beginning, right? And like picking with your head and your heart. I'm kind of doing the opposite of that because the reason I'm going Ja'Marr Chase here isn't because I'm an LSU fan. It's not because of anything with his ties now. It's because I was standing on the sidelines of that national championship game in 2019, and I saw him go off for 221 receiving yards. He had 2 touchdowns. And guess what? He's going to be linking up with the same guy this year, Fitz, Joe Burrow. So how can you not pick Ja'Marr Chase? I think he's going to have a monster year. And because he hurt my heart in that game, because I was there covering Clemson, I believe in what he's going to do at the next level, too.
Now that you have opened up that hurt, it makes it easy for me to do this then, because if we're talking ride or dies that I think are going to have a huge year, I was at that same game, and I will never forget standing there with all of our different analysts that I think are so brilliant and asking, hey, why are we not talking about this guy the way we talked about Andrew Luck? I know it was only 1 season, but when you watched what Burrow did on the sidelines, it was incredible. Now, if you watched last year, Zach Taylor, coach of the Bengals, seemed like he absolutely didn't care about getting Joe Burrow murdered every time he dropped back. That line, atrocious. But they get him a huge weapon in Ja'Marr Chase. Joe Burrow is, even if he's not healthy right at the beginning of the year, 100% of who he could be, he will be by the end of the season in a 17-game season. I think Burrow's going to go off and have a lights-out year. So I'll put him at number 3.
College football playoff record for receiving yards with those 2 together. So we'll just imagine what they're going to do at the next level. Joe Burrow would love to have a really long career like a quarterback that is now in Tampa Bay. And I'm going to go to Tampa Bay, and I'm going to get Mr. Chris Godwin. Because, look, I know you're thinking, okay, you're just like, what? They won the Super Bowl last year. You're just going to go all in on them. Maybe you're thinking Mike Evans. Maybe you're thinking another guy, AB. You're probably thinking Gronk, but Chris Godwin had himself a great year last year, was actually targeted more than Mike Evans in their 4 playoff games last year. So, Fitz, could we see them building on that momentum? Are we going to see another championship run? My sister lives down in Tampa. I would love to see her get another Super Bowl for her sake. Why not?
Look, your sister, I'm sure, is wonderful. Tom Brady, you've had enough. Just stop. Just stop. I don't want Tom Brady to win anymore. Okay, I'm going to find my 5th place. I'm just scroll here. Wait. Am I going the wrong way? Am I going the wrong way?
Oh,
Am I going the wrong way?
What are we doing? Here we go.
If there's one thing I know,
it's not a homer pick.
No, this is complete. Let me be clear. This is a homer pick, and it's because, frankly, I put too much of my life's joy in how my beloved Raiders play every single Sunday. I need Derek Carr to be ride or die. I need Derek Carr to be great. I need Derek Carr to be spectacular because Vegas is opened up for the people, for the masses. And frankly, for my own mental health, Carr, if he goes off this year, the Raiders need that to even be competitive. I think he will go off. Again, top 10 scoring offense last year, and look at the receivers he was throwing to. I don't believe it was Nelson Aguilar that made Carr great. I think it was vice versa. Carr this year has a bang-up year, puts him in number 5 on my
I felt pretty good about our list and what we were picking until you started going for what you needed and not what you believed and not what we've seen and not what we were projecting.
If there's any fact I know, it's that if you say anything wrong about Derek Carr on Twitter, he blocks you, and I don't want to be blocked by my favorite team's quarterback. I love you.
There you go. Now tweet that out. Maybe the I love you will get us extra.
Might give me a creepy block. I don't know.
No, it'll get us bonus points with him for sure. A fun year this year, Fitz, because we don't just get 16 weeks. We get 17 weeks of football, and we're going to take a look now at some of the new things coming up this year, 2021.
Fantasy football is back, and the #1 fantasy app is better than ever. The ESPN Fantasy app delivers all the latest fantasy content to help you all season long. Hey, there are cool new features as well. The new picture-in-picture option lets you watch your favorite ESPN and ESPN Plus coverage while also managing your team. Want to play against the best of the best? Subscribe to ESPN Plus and join the ESPN Plus Fantasy Leagues. And when you join a league, you'll automatically be entered for a chance to win a sweepstakes for a $250,000 prize. We're ready for the new season. Are you? Go to ESPN.com/FFL now or download the ESPN Fantasy app to get started.
And you're watching Fantasy Draft Prep Live, presented by Snickers, as we welcome back in Omar Raja, because we've got some more important things to break down, Fitz. The very highlight of this show is going to be this part right here, because we have some incredible highlights that are actually lowlights for people of whether or not their season goes the way they want it to, Omar. And listen, I'm all for fantasy football, and you put money on it, and we play. Are we on board, Omar, with the loser having to do something terrible at the end of the season as well?
I'm scared to play. I mean, the second I moved to New York a few years ago, there was a last place punishment that blew my mind, because stand-up comedy here is so popular, right? So the person that placed last had to go to a local spot to do stand-up comedy, and the jokes were written by the other players in the league. And that scared me from fantasy football for life. So that is why I'm currently not signing up right now. But hopefully after this show, I decide to change my mind.
Look, I'm going to talk you into it. And I like Kelsey's just like, we just put money on it. Like, we don't do that. I'm too cheap for that in every league.
Even if it's $5.
I mean, $5 goes a long way. But I will say that I've seen, especially in my previous life on the road in country music, I've seen a couple of different leagues where you're forced to wear on stage as the loser whatever everybody else dictates. So if you ever go to a country show in January at the end of football season and you see somebody in a full chicken costume, or maybe perhaps some particularly short 80s tight shorts, that's probably somebody in that camp that lost in the fantasy football world. So I've seen that my fair share of times. So do you have any good punishments, Kelsey?
No, because I mean, the punishment is losing my money. I don't like to gamble. I don't like to put money into something unless I know I'm getting it back. So yeah, I mean, $5 can go a long way, but so can 35 and 50 if you win. You just gotta have the right mindset.
Right.
Let's look at some punishments though for when it doesn't go the right way for people. And let's start with this one: wearing a dress in the street with a sign.
Seems like a normal Thursday night.
Yeah, the creativity on this one isn't that crazy because it's been done so many times. Like, I'm kind of over it because I feel like every year in January we see it.
Omar's a tough judge, I'm telling you. Let's go to the next one.
Tough.
What about?
I see so many viral videos, so it's always tough to kind of get excited.
What about going to see Cats while dressed like a cat? Midnight, not a sound.
Listen. I think watching the movie Cats is even worse than having to dress up as a cat. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie. It's the worst movie ever made. So this is a 10 out of 10. That's the best execution I've seen yet.
Omar, you're gonna have some Swifties come after you for saying. I don't think you're allowed to say that. Like, I mean,
I'm gonna get killed. I'm not checking my messages.
I wasn't expecting that to be our first 10 out of 10 for you, Omar. Let's see how these next ones pan out for you. We're gonna do some musical ones and drumming at a street corner until you accumulate $50. I love this one, Omar. Do you love it or hate it?
God, no, I love it. Because I doubt these people got $50. Because if you're awful, why would anybody give you money?
Right.
Do we know? Do we have the backstory on this? Were people getting their $50 limit that they need to hit?
I mean, it depends on what city you're in. Like, you might get some pity dollars thrown your way as people get more and more drunk. That's the only thing I can think. But I'm with you. Like, you really got to sell it, too. Like, if you're going to play and you can't play, then at least be so entertaining that people decide to give you money. Like, they could have gone a little bit bigger on that, Kelsey.
They could have gone bigger, and I think there's probably, for me, not a worse one than what's coming up next, because this is an actual punishment, because you have to run a 10K if you lose. And Omar, you have to do it in a raccoon costume.
Oh, no.
This has to be a 10 out of 10, right?
Of course. Here's the thing. I couldn't imagine wanting to sign up for this. Like I said, I have not moved this much in the last 18 months. So there is no way I would be able to run past 2 kilometers. Forget 10 kilometers. So, the raccoon gear is also different. I wonder why they picked that animal.
I mean, I'm just saying I Googled it because I'm not smart enough to do math, and 10K is 6.2 miles. I think just having to run 6 miles right now for most of us would be punishment, but doing it in a full raccoon suit seems, Kelsey, like that would be just beyond.
But if there were wings at the end, then I feel like our friend Omar would maybe be in.
Carve up before.
This is taking it next level too, Omar. What happens if the punishment is getting a ridiculous haircut? It looks like this guy actually had some pretty good hair before. Like, this wasn't a shaved head thing to begin with.
Yeah, he probably had the coolest hair ever. I mean, this is just bullying. I'm sorry, this is not punishment. This is bullying. This is wrong. How is this allowed? And it looks like he's crying. Look, he's covering the front of his face. That's not great. That one, listen, it's a great punishment, but I can't give it a 10 out of 10 just out of respect. I mean, it just doesn't look right.
I don't want to brag or anything, but my hair, my hair grows back so fast. Like, whew, that wouldn't even.
Oh, you're in.
Oh, yeah, I'm in on that. Like,
if
yeah.
If anyone wants to tweet at Fitz and get him to join their league and tell him if he loses, that's what happens.
You're also talking to somebody that at one point in my life had a bleached blonde mohawk that I used colored hairspray to match my tie all the time because I wanted to be fancy.
What I will not be doing is making any bets about my hair, because I don't think that I would look quite as good as you would, or you, Omar, without any hair on my head.
Cut here.
Or as good as Christine Williamson, for that matter. I'm nervous to see this next one, Omar, because consuming a stick of melted butter. You're just drinking the butter if you lose? No. Do you want a heart attack?
No, why? Why are we doing this?
That's not bad, guys. Why?
Fitz, what?
No, that's
it's
not
a stick
right,
of butter.
Man.
Fitz, you were that child, weren't you?
He's literally ready to throw up. There's no way that's great.
Look, if you've ever sat next to Mike Golic Jr. when he eats, like that, a stick of butter is nothing. Like, no. Plus, I lived in the South for 20 years, man. A stick of butter is what you put on your morning breakfast.
I mean, you want that in a casserole or on a biscuit. Fitz, I don't want it warm and.
Do you think she was selling it? Because she's acting a lot in that video. She does not want to be drinking that butter.
Oh, yeah. She's definitely dramatic.
Acting.
Over dramatic. I'm telling you, stick of butter, psh, that's a good Sunday worth of cooking.
You know who would probably never drink a stick of butter? Elsa. Take a look at this next one. Elsa is way too fancy to just be chugging some butter. Would you ride a holiday float dressed like Elsa if you lost? I kind of like this one too, Omar. I dig it.
I think this one's actually really good. It's better than the first one with the dress. This one's like creative. There's a whole like Disney character link with it. I kind of like it. And are they driving around the city?
It's a whole parade, yeah.
I think it's amazing. I think that's amazing. That's amazing. The amount of money that goes into that, too, is also way too much, but I'm cool with it.
Give him a mic and make him sing Let It Go. That's all I ask. By the way, you can watch Frozen
1,000%.
Great plug there. We've got one more, and I think this is the one that kind of shocks me the most because it takes the most commitment. It takes the most time. Spending 24 hours inside a Waffle House. Omar, I mean, you see, like, we're talking about wings. You said you've enjoyed being home and eating. Would you do it?
No. So here's the thing. I love eating. And I love also not leaving leaving an area. I like being in the same spot. But if you've ever been to Waffle House, you can't be in Waffle House for more than an hour. So the fact that this person is now doing it for 24 hours is ridiculous. But the creativity on these punishments is good. I'm so used to seeing the dress or having an embarrassing sign. So I'm really glad that all the ones that we've gone through, for the most part, haven't been that. So these are creative for sure. I
don't want to have beef with both of you, but I'm afraid we're going to on this one. Number one, they got to shave an hour off for every waffle they ate. Again, I'll go back to Mike. You just go with Mike Golic Jr. That means you're only going to be there for 2.5 hours because he can certainly get through 21 and a half waffles.
Oh, no.
Number two, I believe that the greatest single downfall of living in Connecticut is that there is not a Waffle House within 5 minutes of my house. That's one
Completely
thing
disagree.
I will always miss about
spared.
Nashville. Like, Waffle House is an American treasure. It's a delight. And you can go put your feet up in Waffle House and just lick the syrup off the plate for a solid 4 hours. Waffle House is gold.
Listen, give me an all-star breakfast every now and then, Fitz. Can you imagine how much you would eat if you spent 24 hours inside a Waffle House?
Just enough.
No, yeah, you would eat way too much. Omar, we appreciate your insight. A tough judge.
It was
I
a
wasn't
pleasure.
expecting that.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, guys.
You're the best, brother.
Fitz, let's keep it rolling now and talk a little bit about some of the rookies that we're going to see this year, because that's one of the things that's so exciting too, not just about the fantasy draft and trying to project what the guys that we have seen experience in the past, what they're going to do, but what some of the new rookies are going to do. And I don't know if there's any more hype heading into this year than there was around a guy like Kyle Pitts and the expectations that he has at this next level. How do we feel? Is he going to be the best fantasy rookie this year?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I think realistically, when you look at Kyle Pitts, one of the things that will always hit me is I was hosting College Football Live last fall. Yeah. And I remember one particular Friday, I was talking to Pollock and Herbie, and I think it was Desmond Howard. And we were all talking about on the show about sort of how to stop Kyle Pitts. So I asked the experts, I said, how would you, if you ran a college defense, how would you stop Kyle Pitts? And Pollock laughed at me and said, you don't ever stop him. And I keep going back to, if you watched any of that film on him, if you go back and rewatch where he was, they were doing everything they could to blanket him in ways that he simply wouldn't get the ball, and he still did. It doesn't matter who the coach is, nobody can shut down Pitts. So while there's always a bit of a learning curve, I think that he's absolutely got the opportunity to be dynamic day one. I think it's a huge pickup for the Falcons. I love everything about this situation for him. And he goes to a coach in Arthur Smith that knows a lot about how to utilize the tight ends. I think it's a home run for everybody involved.
And I feel like even before this year, Fitz, we were hearing the comparisons when he was in college and when he was playing at Florida about, okay, what will he be like at the next level? And can we compare him to Travis Kelce? I think it's a fair comparison. Do you buy into that as well?
Yeah, 1,000%. And we're going to see more and more of this. Just like we have to watch the NBA and say, hey, sometimes the game changes based on what people see in body types and what they become capable of. There are so many guys right now that I feel like are coming into the league that have that body that can handle more. And the way the wide receiver position's changing at college, I just think there's a group of people that feel like they're tweeners and they're becoming tight ends. And it's a more athletic version of the position than we've ever seen before. It's exciting at that position particularly.
Let's go to Cincinnati now, and we got to see last year a rookie season for Joe Burrow, and now we're going to get to see a rookie season for a guy that used to play with Joe Burrow and had a fantastic year with him in 2019 that we talked about earlier, Ja'Marr Chase. So how do you see Ja'Marr Chase fitting into this Bengals offense? We talked about it earlier, when you have those two guys that have already played together, obviously it's different at the next level, Fitz, but you got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I feel great about it, and I think your point earlier about standing on the sidelines and watching him work is so valid here. And Zach Taylor, as I said earlier, has no problem throwing the ball. In fact, early in Joe Burrow's rookie year, they were throwing the ball 55-ish times a game. I mean, that's an alarming usage rate for a rookie quarterback behind a bad offensive line. Zach Taylor, as a head coach, I think one of the things he's got to learn is a little more control in his play calling. So I continue to look at the Bengals and say they are going to air it out. Now, one thing we need to be aware is that Ja'Marr opted out last year, right? So I think there's a little bit of a curve for guys that opted out, and how long does it take for their bodies to get football ready? So we need to be patient, but Ja'Marr Chase feels like to me by the week 5, week 6, he's unstoppable.
It's a great point, because this is the one year where we'll see it's a little bit different, right? Because you did have some of those guys that decided not to play last year, obviously not having Joe Burrow and things he knew were going to be different at LSU. Would that hurt him? Would that help him? And we'll see how that factors in this year. I mentioned earlier that Kyle Pitts had so much hype around him heading into this year. Obviously, the #1 overall draft pick, Trevor Lawrence, I think is the most talked about player. I mean, how far back can we go when you look at how high everybody is on Trevor Lawrence? But how does that translate into his first season in the NFL? And then especially as it relates to fantasy, do we feel good about Trevor Lawrence and the Jags?
No. And look, I'm with you. Like, remember after his freshman year where everybody was saying, oh, he should try and get the rules changed and come out now. Like, I think Trevor Lawrence is spectacular. I keep saying, though, the Jags will fail Trevor Lawrence before Trevor Lawrence fails the Jags. Urban Meyer is a very unproven entity when it comes to being an NFL head coach. We saw that even in his draft strategy and deciding when they already had a great running back to go in and double down and get ETN, right? So you can look across the board and say there's a lot of reasons for questions. Plus, that offensive line for the Jags is just not good. So they're putting him in a grave situation. I think Cincinnati's offensive line, as bad as it was last year, may have been better than Jacksonville's is this year. And Trevor Lawrence is going to be running for his life from week one. So eventually, Trevor Lawrence, he's an epic quarterback. But right now, with this coaching staff, oh, man, I'd stay away from it.
He got a wake up call pretty early in that first preseason game with that sack. You feel very early on, okay, this is a different level. The good thing, I think, for Trevor, though, is despite any of those trials and tribulations, you think about him and you think about, okay, here's this quarterback that came into Clemson and won a national championship and had them in the college football playoffs and all of these things, and you don't think about the adversity, but Fitz, there was some. You know, he had that spectacular first season, and then he came out the next year and had like 6 interceptions through the first 5 games, and that's all anybody could talk about. And he didn't let it get him down. He didn't get in his head, and he was able to come back and be fantastic for them again. So that is, I think, the caveat is that he has already gone through some tough times and was able to continue to stay true to who he is. And I would imagine that having a guy like Travis Etienne in your back pocket, who knows you well, who you know well, that helps too. If not for anything else, then especially a confidence level.
Yeah, I think you're 1,000% right. And that's why long-term, no matter what happens, he's going to be just fine. If we're looking this year at fantasy, boy, I'd stay away from it. But you're right. I mean, you spend 5 minutes covering him, and you realize that he's different. Some guys are wired different from the get-go. You could see that with him.
Najee Harris, I had the opportunity to see an incredible hurdle up close and personal. I was sitting next to Marty Smith, who literally fell out of his chair when that happened, hoping we get more of that, which translate to more fantasy points, more numbers throughout the season. Is Najee Harris the safest running back pick in fantasy, in your opinion?
I think he's that's a tough one. I think yes, but because he has to be. I'm down on the Steelers this year, and I know nobody else wants to be. But Big Ben last year put up pretty good numbers, but he was not the usual Big Ben that we saw. And let's remember last year we watched a Steelers team that was absolutely just all they did was win. And all we did was look at it and say, it doesn't make sense. And then it didn't make sense. Najee Harris is going to get the opportunity to carry the ball so much. They're going to give him the opportunity to be leaned on. And I think he's absolutely capable of being that. So yeah, I think he's safe because his usage is just going to be through the roof. And it has to be. He has to be great for the Steelers to stand a chance in a really good division this year.
When you talk about college football players who were fantastic, we just were in Alabama. And guess what? We've got to stick in Alabama because they just have player after player. Devontae Smith was outstanding for them as well. But Fitz, how do you see him fitting in as the #1 option in Philly?
Is there a more I can't believe we're talking about him in this way than Devontae, right? Like, if you think back to where we were covering college football, and for anyone that doesn't know, Kelsey and I both cover a ton of college football for the network. He wasn't supposed to be who he was last year, right? And it was, in fact, Jalen Waddle's injury that really opened up the door for him to show more of himself last year. So for anyone that didn't watch college football, one of the greatest success stories we've seen in years was the way he came out in an unexpected opportunity and really took it all on. So on the one hand, I want to say no, but on the other hand, I want to look at it and say, what did we expect last year? We thought Alabama's offense would take a step back when Waddle was injured. It didn't. It didn't because he stepped up. So my only concern here is that he's got to learn the position while Jalen Hurts is learning the position also. While they're learning a new coaching staff, while they're learning a new offense, I think there's a lot of things that could make this tricky this year, but it's hard to bet against him. There's
some question marks for sure, but as you said, when we had question marks last year, he continued to not just prove us wrong, but prove that we had not even thought of some of the things that we would see from him in Alabama last year. Fitz? Let's do some hot takes.
Ooh.
Okay.
I suddenly went super high with that.
You did. I was going to let it go. I was not going to let that be a beginning of our hot take. But Matthew Stafford, 2021. We've talked a little bit about what it's going to look like with him going out to L.A. Fitz, is it going to be a hot take? Are you buying it? 2021, Matthew Stafford is 2020 Tom Brady. If you say yes, then the show is over.
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
That take, like, what are we getting ready for first take at this point? Like, that is the hottest of hot takes. No.
I am Stephen A.
And look, this comes down to what we've seen in the past. Like, you can't be the next Tom Brady if we've never seen you win. And I said earlier, I think Matt Stafford has a great opportunity to put up good yards. I think there's a real opportunity for Sean McVay to get back into the limelight of everybody saying, oh my God, he's a golden god. Like, I get all of that. But my God, to be the next Tom Brady, you'd have to have shown that you can win through anything, that it doesn't matter whether you have a bunch of weapons or you don't. It doesn't matter if you've got an explosive offense or you don't. You can win. When have we ever said that about Matthew Stafford? Like, I don't know that I've seen a quarterback in modern times get more benefit of the doubt because of the trash organization that he played for, sorry, Dopp, than we have with Stafford and the Lions. Like, it is alarming to me. I think he's going to be very good, but no, he's not the next Tom Brady.
I think the only comparison there is like, okay, maybe a team that's trending in the right direction, you're coming to a new team. But to your point right there, like we talked earlier, we're comparing other quarterbacks to Tom Brady. No one else has done what Tom Brady has been able to do. So to say, oh yeah, this is a good, fair comparison. Not fair at all, in my opinion. I'm glad you didn't buy on that hot take. Ryan Tannehill, the most underappreciated player in fantasy.
I mean, book it.
Are you buying it?
Yeah, I am taking that all day, every day. Man, what is time? There are certain teams that just don't move the needle. Let's just be honest for a second. We're going to have a truth talk about the Titans because people ask me all the time if there's a bias against the Titans. There is not. There's not a bias against the Titans. There's an indifference towards the Titans. A lot of people just don't watch the team, and you can tell it when we talk about the quarterback position specifically. Whatever you saw of Ryan Tannehill with the Miami Dolphins does not matter. It does not matter. This is a Ryan Tannehill that's very efficient, that's mobile, that gets himself into good situations. It's a Ryan Tannehill that has a ton of weapons around him, and a Ryan Tannehill that still has Derrick Henry. And you're going to have to put everything towards stopping Derrick Henry, which is going to give matchup advantages all along the outside. Tannehill is very, very good, and the Titans are going to have a great offense because of him. I think it's absolutely partially because of him. I think he's undervalued.
His fantasy numbers the last 2 years: first in fantasy points per pass attempt, first in red zone touchdown pass rate, second in yards per play action pass. So, Fitz, I'm over here backing you up, but I still have questions. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to take Tannehill over some of the other top quarterbacks in this league. I mean, we just heard Field earlier talking about, hey, the top 5, and then there's other good ones that follow. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I think the only problem from a fantasy standpoint is that Derrick Henry's going to get those touches for touchdown runs, right? Yeah. Like, we always wanted a quarterback that can do both. I'm not sure that Tannehill will get enough points that way, but man, if you got Tannehill, I think it's a triple. It might not be a home run, but it's a triple when you're putting your roster together.
Let's go down to Carolina now. Sam Darnold with the Panthers, and hot take or not hot take, Sam Darnold will continue the trend of post-Adam Gase success stories.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, part of the reason that Ryan Tannehill was garbage in Miami was because his coach didn't do a very good job. Like, I mean, at some point we got to look at Adam Gase and say, I don't know who he has naked pictures of, but it's work. Sam Darnold is the type of guy that came out of a very difficult situation. And to me, and you know this having covered a team like the Panthers, when you go from New York to Carolina, there's a different level of scrutiny, there's a different level of eyeballs, there's a different way that it's all approached. And the Panthers immediately came in and said, hey, we're not going to draft somebody, you're our guy. I think all of that speaks to the human side of a quarterback who now can feel like people believe in him. And that matters to me. Plus, you've got Christian McCaffrey. So, like, I believe he's not only going to be a better quarterback than we expect, he's going into a better situation than we expect. I think Sam Darnold is going to be pretty darn good.
I think he's going into a better situation, too, and I'm happy to hear you say all of that as a Panthers fan. I want to get on board with it. I know we're going to see great things from Christian McCaffrey again, and he's going to continue to blow up all of the fantasy boards, but no Curtis Samuel, so that'll be interesting for him to not have that puzzle piece this year, Fitz. So I don't know if I'm all in on your take there, but I like what you're saying because it appeals to my heart, which is really, I think, the most important thing for me for fantasy football because that's usually how I pick. Austin Eckler, a better fantasy season than Saquon Barkley?
No, and no. I mean, look, why are we so down on Saquon, right? Like, there's this moment where I keep looking at Saquon, and the injury concern is fine. But if you're telling me that Austin Eckler, who's going to come in and is going to have this epic season, what do we? At some point, we got to pick and choose here. Like, are we buying the Chargers because of Austin Eckler, or are we buying the Chargers because of Justin Herbert? Like, I don't think that both can go out and be as effective as people think they can be. Also, when you look at the defenses in the AFC West, there's a real opportunity to throw on all of those defenses. So I think that receivers have a better chance in the AFC West than running backs do, frankly. So, no, I'm out on Austin Eckler having a better year than Saquon, who's going to come back and remind everybody just how stinking good he is.
And how can you not bite on all the big plays that he gives you as a fantasy drafter?
Yeah, and the ability to do literally anything.
Anything that they need. That's our take, Fitz. Now let's send it over to the fantasy crew, reveal the order of the upcoming draft as we get closer to 7.
It is a lovely evening here in Bristol, Connecticut, and it is time for the ESPN Fantasy Marathon to roll along. And it's an important event that is upon us. We have our 10 panelists, both here in Bristol and around the country, and it is time now to reveal the order for our draft, which you will be following along with from 7 to 9 Eastern Time. Field Yates and Matthew Bear here. Matthew, let me ask you, if you had your pick of one slot, 1 through 10, where would you like to be picking?
Give me one. Give me Christian McCaffrey. But I think there's 5 safe running backs this year, so I would prefer one of the first 5 picks. Right? We're in a 10-team league, 1 quarterback. I want one of the first 5 picks because I think there start to be a little bit of question marks after you get past the first 5 running backs.
Okay, first 5 is where Matthew wants to be. This is fun because we don't know the order. We're going to reveal it live right now. Without further ado, with the 10th pick in the ESPN Fantasy Marathon Draft, Anita Marks, our quarterback, longtime quarterback in the WPFL. Woo! Anita will have the 10th overall pick. Coming in at number 9. Team Marks, baby. Team Marks. With the 9th pick in the ESPN Fantasy Marathon Mock Draft, Daniel Dopp. Woohoo! Daniel has never been spotted in the same room at the same time as TJ Hawkinson.
That's right. Love it. Being at the turn.
Number 8 in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft is Mike Clay, who has already run a projection for how this entire season will play out.
Love it. Let's go.
Number 7 in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft is Damien Woody, who amongst his many accomplishments besides being a Super Bowl champion once bench pressed me on TV 22 times.
That I did.
Is that all?
Was it harder to win a Super Bowl or bench press field?
Oh, definitely Super Bowl.
Yeah, I would think so.
Number 6 in the ESPN Fantasy Football Mock Draft is me, Field.
Rigged.
Thanks for the thank you. Yeah, thanks for the warm reception there. Number 5 in the ESPN Fantasy Marathon Mock Draft is Matthew Berry. Matthew Berry went to high school with and drafted Johnny Unitas in his first ever mock draft.
Is he available tonight?
Perhaps. Number 4 in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft is Adam Schefter, who actually knows the entire draft order. It's in his Twitter draft as we speak.
Sources say.
His sources have revealed very little information up to this point.
Oh, man. Getting nervous.
You are now able to see our final 3 potential participants. We've got Mina Kimes and Stephania Bell and Tyler Fulghum. With the number 3 pick in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft, Stephania Bell, who has a degree from every Ivy League institution. Good slot for you, Stephania. And we're down to the final 2 picks. With the number 2 pick in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft, does Mina Kimes, who's appeering on her 9th show on television so far today.
Right. Only 9? It's a slow day for Mina.
And with the number 1 overall pick, the suspense is no longer. In the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft is Tyler Fulghum, who actually placed a bet at -500 that he would have the first overall pick in tonight's draft.
Vegas treating me well, I guess.
We have Tyler
in Sin City, baby. I need to go to the tables after this and roll some dice or something.
Okay, so you don't have to give us a hint or anything, but do you feel confident in who you are planning to take with that first overall pick?
I do feel confident, and it shouldn't shock anyone who I'm taking 1.1 in this fantasy marathon draft.
I'll just presume it's going to be the Rams defense based on the Aaron Donald jersey that you are wearing.
If it was IDP.
If it was IDP in your favor. Here is our order, 10 through 1. You see it right there. We start with Tyler. We run all the way to Anita. The live draft starts at 7 Eastern on ESPN2. And check us out all over the social channels. Should be a lot of fun. My team will find a way to win.
There you have it. The draft order is coming your way at the top of the hour.
Woo!
And Fitz, we're going to be joined now by the man of the hour. Is there anything better than getting the first overall pick in a fantasy draft? I think not. Tyler, I know you got to be feeling pretty good. You're not showing your cards. Fields tried to get it from you. So I need to know what you're going to do after your first pick while you wait for the next one, because that's the hardest part for me.
Yeah, there should be no shocking surprises at who I take number 1 overall. But once I get to that 2-3 turn after 20 more names have come off the board, I want to find a quarterback. Will I have to take one there to get a top-notch elite QB? Can I wait till deeper in the draft? That's kind of what I'm wrestling with right now. I may want to add another running back to the RB I take first overall. If you can't guess that right now, you haven't done enough fantasy draft homework, who the first pick should be. But I really am trying to figure out how to do my quarterback, or how to fit the quarterback next to the running back that I take first overall.
I'm still trying to figure out what the hell you're doing wearing a Rams jersey when you're sitting in my city with my team. That's fine. It's fine. Hey, who are you the most scared of out of everybody else in this draft? Who's got you?
Mina. Mina's right there at 2. She can steal someone from me. She calls Rams games in the preseason, but she's a Seattle Seahawks fan, so she knows a lot of the things I know about the Rams, about the NFC West. I'm worried she might steal one of the picks I'm hoping for right as it gets back to me for that turn in the second round or in the 4th or in the 5th round. So I'm worried about Mina Kimes most, I think.
God, that's a terrible feeling when somebody takes the person that you're sitting there waiting on. So you're worried about Mina. Who do we need to talk the most trash throughout the entire draft to kind of get in their head so that you can get what you want?
That's a good question. I guess Matthew Berry, let's try and knock him down a peg or two. He's the godfather of this, but if we can all kind of band together and make sure Matthew doesn't make any slick sleeper picks and steal other guys that we might be targeting. He's the OG when it comes to fantasy football here, and Adam Schefter knows everything about the league, so I think those are the two most dangerous. We may need to knock down a peg or two.
Tyler, the world is waiting to see what
Team
you
Mina.
do with
I'm
the
Team
number
Mina.
1 pick. We have no idea. Can't imagine what you're going to do there. Have fun, Tyler.
Gonna get you a Raiders jersey.
Oh, all right. So we've got the draft order for what's coming up at the top of the hour on ESPN2, and we'll stream it live here as well. And you're sticking with everybody throughout the entire show. All gas, no brakes is what we said.
I was totally going to butcher that, so I'm glad you did that.
I could see the wheels.
It was like all pedal, no.
In your brain, no metal, yeah. Fitz, let's talk about draft parties. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, but that's what I enjoy the most. The camaraderie, the food, the drinks, the trash talking, the, oh my God, I'm on the clock and I thought I knew what I was going to do, but Mina just stole my pick right before then. When it comes to draft parties for you, what makes or breaks it?
I think, I got to say, even last year when we weren't able to be in the same room together, it was still so powerful to just have the group chat going and knowing the intensity everybody was feeling. Like, to me, the best part about fantasy football is the camaraderie it builds with a group of people that you're playing with every single week and the trash talking that happens. But that really is born out of the draft party. Like, whatever your event is for the draft sets the tone for the entire, like the guy that's not really interested, the guy or the girl that is suddenly like, is only auto picking, the guy or the girl that thinks they're smarter than everybody. Like, you define each character in your boy band from the minute you start that because you got like the saucy one and the fancy one and the skinny one. Like, it all happens in that draft party. I think that's part of the magic of it. That's the thing you want every year. More than great players to me, you want great hangs.
Do we have a tissue? I didn't expect us to get all sentimental about camaraderie and the feeling of being back together there. You had me in my feelings for a second.
Yeah, look at that. See, I'm trying. Like, are you super competitive with whether or not?
Like, I am. I mean, yeah. I'm really competitive, and that's why
with everything.
I wasn't ready to be in my feelings right then as you were taking us back to 2020 and what it was like and the camaraderie. I'm competitive with everything. Like, if you want to race to the camera right now, I'll win. If you want to have a fantasy bet about you shaving your head, I'll win.
I mean, that's probably.
I don't like things that I'm not good at.
So the weird thing is that I'm strangely competitive at things that I should be good at. And if it's something that I know I'm not good at, then I don't care. So it's a weird thing for me. So like fantasy football is something that I feel like I should be good at. So I do get way too fired up over who signed who and who traded who and what alliances like we've decided people have going through the whole course of the year and who's trying to block what trade. And like it becomes a really heated thing. But like I said at the beginning of the show, it's what brings that moment in. Like, to me, the joy of fantasy is that whether your team's good or whether your team's bad, you've got something that you're still investing in every single Sunday. And when you're a fan of a team that's usually bad, by week 12, 13, you need that. So, like, that's where I'm getting my energy by, like, the end of the season.
And not just something that you're investing in every Sunday, but game after game and player after player, and you're checking, and all of a sudden, oh my God, it's Thursday, and how did I forget that it was Thursday, and I need to set my roster, and the reminder didn't go off on my phone, and it always surprises me. The group, I think, that you play with is incredibly fun. I've been on some work groups, I've been on some friend groups, I've been on some media groups. I used to do it with the Panthers, the beat writers there, and be a part of that. And it just makes for a fun atmosphere throughout the year as you're getting to kind of have that trash talking, that, oh my God. The alliances, I don't love those.
You don't love what?
Like the alliances, when you're like behind the scenes, like, oh, wait, are you trying to block? I mean, I guess it's fun when you're inside that group, but also it's like, hold on. What are the rules? Are we doing this or are we not doing this?
So since we've been honest the whole hour, the real question is, have you ever texted Field to get any advice? Like, because I'm going to be honest, like, I have multiple times I've texted Field and I'm like, oh, what do we do? Not always the best about responding either. Sometimes Field ghosts me during fantasy season. Yater's gonna yate. That's what happens. Like, but everybody hits up Field. Everybody hits up Schefter. Like, like, we've all had that time where you're like, is he gonna play? Is he not gonna play?
Right.
Like, just between us, it never helps me though.
Well, and we're all doing the best we can as we try to pick our fantasy teams, right? You're projecting what you think will happen. You never really know. We know who some of the top guys are, but let's take a look at maybe some of the sleepers.
Hey, Matthew Berry here from the Fantasy Show, and I'm keeping my voice down because my sidekick Daniel Dopp is pretending to sleep. It's our hackneyed visual indicator that I'll now be talking about fantasy sleepers. Unlike the useless sleeper Daniel here, James Robinson was only rostered in 15% of ESPN leagues on opening night, and he was a big reason why many fantasy managers last year won their leagues. He finished as RB7 in 2020. For my sleepers this year, how about quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick? Last year, Fitzmagic averaged 19.9 fantasy points per game in 7 starts for a Dolphins team with average weapons. And now he has a better supporting cast of playmakers in Washington. At running back, how about Trey Sermon? The Niners have finished top 4 in running fantasy points in each of the past 2 years, and Raheem Mostert's career high for carries in a season is just 137. At wide receiver, I'm talking about Antonio Brown. I get it, there's a lot of options in that Tampa Bay passing game, but Brown was actually targeted on 27.1% of his routes last year, a significantly higher rate than both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And at tight end, give me some Adam Trautman. Only 16 targets in his rookie year, but he will be on top of the depth chart this season. Since the start of 2019, Saints tight ends are tied for the 3rd most touchdown receptions in the NFL. Draft any of these guys, and come January, perhaps you will be sending a petty "I told you so" email when you win your league. Speaking of petty, all that's left to do is to wake up Daniel to finish this bit. Daniel, you're supposed to wake up and fall off the desk.
Yeah, I know, Matthew, but I wasn't really sleeping in the first place. And plus, I really hurt my back last week when I was doing some stuff here on set. So it was
Oh, nothing better than when a sleeper pick pays off.
Do you is there trash talking? Like, are you a trash talker extraordinaire in a fantasy league?
Big trash talker. Does not always pay off for me because then it comes around and bites me in the butt, but big trash talker.
See that, again, I'm going to go back to my life experience of a team that has let me down more years than not, especially in the last 20 years as a Raiders fan. Like, I have learned that there is absolutely no point in talking trash. Like, I watched 2 games last year.
Oh, there's always a point in talking trash.
No, because it bites you back. Like, you sit there and you're like, I'm the best, you stink, your mom. And then all of a sudden, bam, it's like, no, your mom, because you lost. And that's what happens. Like, I'm too guarded at this point. I'm too jaded towards the whole process because my actual football team lets me down too often.
Fitz, the other thing that I think when I think about fantasy drafts is not just the trash talking, but I also have like this board that I'm usually scribbling things on and you're trying to keep up with, okay, this person's off. But the other thing that always sneaks up on me somewhere through like my 4th pick is, oh my God, bye weeks. And all of a sudden I've got 5 guys and they all have bye weeks on the same weeks. And I start trying to factor that into it. Do you think about it? Do you worry about it? Or you're like, it'll work out. I'll pick up somebody when I get there. I don't care if I have literally no one on my team on offense.
One of my friends many years ago said to me, why do something today when you could do it tomorrow? Is like a life lesson for me. And there's a procrastination element moment for me. I'm the first to admit that, like, when you tell me that a paper is due and as a kid on Thursday, that meant I needed to worry about it, Wednesday at midnight. So every year I say, this is the year I'm gonna follow the spreadsheets. I'm gonna make sure that my bye weeks are all handled. I'm gonna be super responsible with it. And then I get to like week 9 and I'm like, what the hell was I doing when I drafted that I didn't even pay attention to it? And then all of a sudden you're pinched in. There were a couple of games I lost last year because I just couldn't feel the lineup. Like you just look around and you're like, sorry guys, I'm just gonna take this one on the chin because I can no longer feel the team.
I hate that feeling because you're like, okay, I knew this was gonna happen. It shouldn't sneak up on me. I should have been ready for it.
And you know what? Just on behalf of me and you and this feeling, if you see that your opponent is doing it, don't call it out. Like, why is it that whoever I'm playing then has to message the entire group and say, well, I'm kicking Fitz's ass this week because he doesn't even have enough running backs to field a team. Like, this is just take the win. Don't demolish me in the process. That's all I'm asking for.
There's a lot of things that go into a fantasy football season, and we have touched on some of them. We've worked through some of them as well, Fitz. We're going to talk to somebody now who is part of fantasy football in a big way. Looking forward to this interview as we have Colts running back Jonathan Taylor with us now. Jonathan, first of all, thanks for the time. Know you have a busy day and you got a busy season ahead. We're talking fantasy football, so we got to start there. Are you a fantasy football fan? Did you used to play? Were you involved?
And first of all, so in college, our running back teammate, Garrett Groshek, he tried to get us to all join this fantasy league. And I heard you guys talking earlier. It was pretty tough to kind of maintain that consistency, especially when you're preparing each week for a game. But I tried to dabble in it a little bit in college, but it was just all for fun.
So now that you're in the pros, we always hear guys talk about it, and some of my friends that have played in the league always say I play real sports, not fantasy ones. Like, are there actual fantasy leagues going on from NFL teams?
I believe so. I believe that there are a lot of people who are in tune to fantasy football. I mean, especially if they were brought up playing or watching their parents or brothers or cousins have fantasy football leagues. And that's just something that I never really got introduced to until college. So it was kind of hard for me to catch the groove because, like I said, I was preparing each week for games.
Jonathan, you probably just heard us talking a little bit about trash talking, and I'm all for it. I'm going to trash talk Fitz the whole rest of the show about how I can beat him at anything, even though I probably can't. And he says he doesn't do it as much because then it comes back around and bites you sometimes in the backside when you trash talk and doesn't pay off. Where are you with the trash talking, whether it's on the field, in games, in the locker room? Are you a trash talker?
One thing about trash talk, if you're going to do it, you better be prepared to win every single time. So I like to go out there just prepared, focused in order to come out with the win every single time. But if you are a guy who likes to trash talk, just make sure you can come out with the dub every time.
See, that's the problem, Jonathan. Like, I'm a Raiders fan. My team doesn't usually come out with the dub. Like, it's been a long time.
You learned the hard way.
So Kelsey and I both work a lot in college football. We both loved watching you at Wisconsin. I think it's funny or interesting. You guys drafted Kwity Paye out of Michigan this year. So, like, is there in the world of trash talking, we got a Michigan-Wisconsin sort of wager going on? Any Big Ten bets going out there?
Now, I definitely did talk to Kwity about, especially the few times that we played each other. And in the future games coming up, I'm going to take my guys every time. I love those guys back at Wisconsin, and I know they'll be prepared this season and ready to take on Michigan.
Jonathan, I want to talk a little football with you, too, as you get ready for season 2 and had an outstanding last year, really hit your stride down the stretch and did incredible things. How are you feeling as you get ready for your second year?
I'm feeling really great. Just as having the offseason that I've had this year compared to last year, which was really hectic. This has been really, really fun, especially getting a lot of reps in, coming in OTAs, now having a real training camp. I mean, it's just been really, really gratifying to realize that, hey, I'm finally going through what my first season should have been like. And a lot of people are saying it's my first year. But I'm really excited going into this year, especially after this offseason.
I think that's interesting, Jonathan. We don't talk a lot about the human element of the adjustment. Like, you're a pro, suddenly you live in a totally different place, and now last year you guys had COVID, you didn't get anything normal. What was the toughest part of just adjusting to being a pro in your rookie year?
One of the hardest things I would definitely say was translating everything that you learned virtually onto the field 100 miles an hour. Normally you'll go over things in the meetings, and then you'll go through a walkthrough, and then you'll have practice. But it was just hey, we got to learn everything virtually. You got to learn what to do. And then, okay, we're going to come in for training camp, and it's time to get it done. So being able to adjust rapidly to those kind of things was definitely one of the toughest things.
Jonathan, every year and every season and every team is different, and last year was certainly more different than any other season. But we've heard from players all across college and the NFL just about the camaraderie that came from what you guys went through and all the time you spent together. What's something that you learned about maybe your teammates or the organization through some of those trials last year with COVID?
Really, one thing that I learned is you learn a lot about how people handle adversity. I mean, you have a ton of protocol. You have testing you have to do every single day. You got to make sure you give yourself an allotted amount of time to get the results back, still have time to prep. So you really find out, how tough guys mentally are. And I'm grateful that, I'm with the Indianapolis Colts because everyone in this building is super mentally tough.
Jonathan, real quick, you want to let us know, Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson, you want to tip anybody off on anything to expect? We got to ask.
Yeah, those two guys are great players. You guys saw Quentin last year. This guy, he's a bull in the ring. And Carson is super, super smart. It's just amazing. I can't wait to see those two guys out there. I can't wait to have those guys balling out and doing what they do best, is being great football players.
Fitz tried to get you to break the news, and you said all of the good and right things there, Jonathan.
That's why you're a pro, man. That's why you're a pro.
Exactly. Thanks so much for the time. Good luck this season.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you so much.
Talk about a guy who had a great year last year, Fitz, in the midst of a tough year. Some of the things that we touched on right there. It's going to be interesting to see not just how he and some of the other guys who are ready for their second year build on it, but especially the rookies this year coming off of last year, whether or not they got to play with their college teams, whether or not they went through COVID, kind of what that looks like as we translate into hopefully a more normal football season this year.
I feel like we can actually take rookies and second-year players this year, and we can sort of bundle up everything we see and just accept that it's all going to look very different. Like, I know a lot of people were looking at production last year at the rookie positions across the field, at running back, at wide receiver. We talked so much about the rookie class last year at wide receiver. I just think we have to understand that there's an element of adjustment in life and in the game and learning the game that simply didn't happen. I think a lot of second-year players this year are poised to have a big breakout because this is their first opportunity to have gone through a normal offseason, to get the normal opportunity to learn the playbook. Like, there's so much that's just different last year that I think we can't take some of these players that we knew were big brands going into last year's draft and may not have performed to that level. I think we need to reset and recalibrate those expectations this year.
That's a great point. And not just the expectations are going to be different, the atmospheres are going to be different this year, right? Because we finally are, for now, getting back to football that looks and sounds and feels a little bit more normal. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that one, Fitz. As we get ready for the draft here at 7 o'clock or a little after 7 o'clock now, Fitz, are you taking notes of what these guys do, of the order as you get ready for yours? Are you like, okay, I don't need to know what they do because I've got my own method and, Fields tells me not to go tight end number one. I'm doing it anyways and going Darren Waller. Like, what are you doing?
So here's the thing. I'm going to take their advice. But what I feel like in the moment, when you're actually drafting, every year, I'm thinking, man, I'm having a hell of a draft. This thing is crushed. You know what? I'm patting myself on the back. I am doing so well every year.
I'm the opposite.
Every single one of them, I'm like, I am crushing it. And then the next day I open the app and I think, God, this whole team is garbage and I stink. Like, I don't know why. In the moment of the draft, I'm like, oh, yeah, best player available. The app would be proud of me. Field would come in and hug me. And then by the next day, I think I should never talk about football again in my entire life. It's every year.
So I'm the total opposite. I sit there throughout the whole draft and I'm stressed out and I'm like, why did I make that pick? Why did this person do things before me? They already had a running back. They had two running backs. Why did they get that guy? I needed that. I'm botching this. Why did I bet money on this league? Why am I playing? And then at the end of the day, when I sit back and look, I'm like, oh, okay. Actually, I think on paper this might all work out. Now, by week 2, when I'm at the bottom of the league, I'm like, okay, I should have not been so confident early on. But I actually feel not confident when I am in the moment. And then when I take a look back at who I've drafted, I'm like, oh, okay, I think I actually did an all right job.
No, my entire fantasy team is like gym selfie. Like, you just finished working out and you think you look great, so you're like, yeah. And then 2 days later, you're looking and you're like, I don't know why I took a picture of that. That's my entire draft life. That is the process.
What do you worry about the least in your draft?
Well, I think defense is something that, and Field alluded to it earlier. I mean, you can just start to plug and play defense at any time during the course of it. So
do you get to a point though where it's like, gosh, I feel pretty good. Like I've got a couple of the wide receivers, I got a good tight end, I got a couple running backs, I got my quarter. Like, do you start saying, well, okay, maybe like this defense actually last year put some great, points a couple of weeks in a row. Like maybe I'm the one that starts this and I get this, or you're just like, no, it's too early, don't do it. It's too soon.
So I bit that bug last year with San Francisco. I went into the draft process saying, man, the 49ers defense is so good. And then decimated by injuries. We know why, but the San Francisco defense just turned out to be not what we had hoped throughout the course of it. And so I think that was the valuable lesson there, where the one time I took a little bite of the apple, I realized that I was told not to bite the apple. Like, you just sort of have to learn through that process for me. So I'm really going into this year saying, hey, whatever happens on the defense particularly. I need to, in my mind, especially in a 17-game season, we talked a little bit about this, but in a 17-game season, we're going to see more attrition than I think we're used to ever seeing, particularly at running backs, and we know how important running backs can be to winning a late season game. So I look at that and say, man, if you've got somebody that you think is behind a second string running back that has a real opportunity to maybe get some snaps by the end of the year, might be better. Like, I'd rather spend that equity late in the draft on that than on a defense when I can just plug and play whoever ends up being good throughout the course of the year.
I like that mindset. I have another question for you because, listen, I love college football. I love NFL football. My first love, though, was soccer. I played soccer my whole entire life. So I'm telling you this, I'm telling you this fits.
He's the better-looking one with much better
I'm telling you this
abs.
fits because kickers get me every year, too, because I kind of get tricked. And when I'm in that same spot where I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good. I look at my bye weeks. I'm pretty covered. I've got a couple wide receivers. Feel good about my tight end. I can pick somebody off the wires there bye week. I start looking at the kickers, and sometimes I'm like, looking at my lips like, okay, wait, this guy is one who consistently gets fantasy points. And even when nobody else is picking kickers yet, I'm always tempted to go kickers early. Not early, but earlier than others, just if it's one of the top two.
Yeah, the thing that haunts me is especially when you're snake drafting, and you get later and later and later into the draft, and you feel like, man, maybe it's time to take a kicker. You start to feel that a little bit, and then all of a sudden, you choose not to. You think, okay, I'm not going to take this kicker, and then you hit the next round, and everybody else starts to have that run on them, and you think, son of a biscuit.
There's nothing worse than that.
That's what happened, yeah. Like, that is the worst of the worst, is, so then you've got this debate of, would I rather be a few picks too early but get somebody I love, or would I then take the chance that maybe I'm drafting way too late? Which, again, comes back to what I said earlier. Maybe we should remember all of this when we're analyzing the way our favorite team actually approaches the draft, because it is not easy for fantasy. I can't imagine the real life.
Do we want to start the run on that position, or do we want to be the one kicking ourselves for not being a part of the run because now, hey, I'm just going to miss out on that run and get it later and get somebody else?
Yeah, none of us want to be the person that has to look at the app and say, oh my God, I need a kicker. Who does the app tell me to pick? Because that's when you know that it's just
exactly. It's not a good place to be in. Fitz, before we go, we've talked a lot about the fun that we've had. We talked about the drinks. Food. The one food that you have to have at a draft party quickly is
nachos.
Nachos. That was an easy answer. Thanks so much for watching Fantasy Draft Prep Live, presented by Snickers. The Fantasy Draft, well, it starts right now.
For fantasy football, you will actually be drafting a team.
Yeah, normally I just judge, but now I get to draft and be judged. So it'll be fun to be part of it. I'm excited about it. We should talk about the rules of this league.
In just a second, we will. But a reminder that if you want to be a part of our cool second screen experience, you can do so. Check out ESPN's social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and the ESPN app. Mike Golic, Jason Fitz, Kelsey Riggs, amongst those who will be a part of that second screen experience. But Matthew mentioned the rules. It is important for us to lay out those rules. This is a PPR league, which means every catch you have, you get an extra point. This is going to be the first 7 rounds of what would normally be a 16-round snake draft, Matthew, but you do not
have any positional requirements, which means there's a chance that we get through 7 rounds and some teams don't have a quarterback or don't have a tight end. Again, you see the positions underneath there on your screen. Those are what you would have to leave the 16 rounds with. You start a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, a defense, and bench.
Just at the end of our draft, we'll also have a sleeper round, the names that did not quite make it in the first 7 rounds, but we want to highlight them all the same because it's important that you have your sleepers, especially this time of the year when there are so many names that you must be juggling. And of course, you're probably wondering, how long do we get to pick? 1 minute per pick. That's it. 60 seconds. You need to act fast in this here draft. Let's take a look at the draft order, by the way, Matthew.
We're starting out with number 1 pick.
That's right. Tyler Fulghum has the very good fortune of having the number 1 overall pick. The order goes from there all the way down to Anita Marks at number 10.
We will introduce everyone as we get to their picks, but Tyler, we're heading out to Vegas. You are on the clock, my friend.
Oh, man, it should be no surprise. It's not going to be any shock at all with the first pick in the first round of the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Draft. I am selecting Christian McCaffrey, running back, the Carolina Panthers. And I'll let you guys discuss the merits of McCaffrey, but I needed this today for this very simple reason. I told my mom earlier this week about this very special show. I'd be sharing the stage with these venerable minds and faces at ESPN. She goes, "Oh, that's great, honey, but I'm going to have to tape it because I'm going to the Maroon 5 concert tonight." So while she's fawning over Adam Levine, I'll be fawning over the thought of Christian McCaffrey going for 1,000, 1,000, and 100 catches with Sam Darnold as his QB and Joe Brady calling the shots.
Would always love to go to a Maroon 5 concert. That sounds tremendous. One of my favorite bands.
Didn't have Maroon 5 on the list of players we were going to talk about today, but yes, Adam Levine is an all-star. There's no question about it. McCaffrey, of course, is a no-brainer. The consensus number 1. Let's go now to pick number 2, Mina Kimes. Dwayne Eskridge there for the taking.
So it's DK Metcalf, right? This is a tough decision for me. I have been torn the last 15 minutes since I found out I was picking 2 between Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. I like the Vikings offense, but Kamara is so tempting with Michael Thomas out. I know he didn't get a lot of targets with Hill in, but I think Winston wins the job. I'm going to make it a little spicy at number 2, and I'm going to take Alvin.
Ooh, Alvin. Yeah. I thought you were going to say make it a little spicy, a little chef analogy, right. Chef Dalvin Cook. Instead, she goes Alvin Kamara, second off the board. No major surprise there, Matthew. I mean, this is a player who is as good of a bet to have 80 catches from a running back as basically anybody besides Christian McCaffrey in his 4 seasons of the NFL, 81, and then 81, and then 81, and then 83 catches last season. Stephania Bell has the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. Stephania, fire away.
I've played in leagues with Mina, and she's sniped me before. So I'm not surprised she did it with Alvin Kamara. That's who I would have taken at number 3. But I'm going to mix it up a little bit, too. I might surprise you. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry with my pick. Over 1,500 rushing yards in consecutive seasons, over 2,000 last year. And guess what? In 5 seasons, he's only missed 2 games. And you know I like that. Have you seen his training videos? I'm all in on Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, look, obviously, even though Arthur Smith is now in Atlanta, we expect it still to be a run-heavy offense in Tennessee. The addition of Julio Jones may lighten the boxes that Derrick Henry sees. All of a sudden, you got to deal with that passing attack between A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So Derrick Henry, not involved in the passing game, but obviously such a threat at the goal line, an easy top 5 pick. Adam Schefter, you are on the clock.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to imagine that sitting here at 4 that I can go cooking with Dalvin. And that's exactly what I plan to do. Dalvin Cook at number 4. Give me a guy that catches the ball, runs the ball, scores with the ball, does everything with the ball. Dalvin Cook.
Feels like the play. I mean, I'm surprised he was there at number 4 for you, Adam Schefter. Great pick by you. Dalvin Cook was remarkable last year and a dual threat running back, as we all know, which in fantasy football, it's very hard. Derrick Henry is an outlier in his ability to be such a dominant player with limited pass-catching upside relative to these other players. At number 5, Matthew, I am sitting here, and not a major surprise that both Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley are there. Those are the 2 players that I think will be most commonly decided. Oh, you have number 5.
I have number 5, yeah.
I'm going to pick for you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, like, here's the thing. It's one of those things that happens in a draft when I have Dalvin at number 2. So when he gets past, you're like, oh, maybe it makes it to me. But, of course, Shefty snipes me, just like he does in real drafts. He does it in the mock draft as well. Honestly, I'm excited about this entire Dallas offense. Offensive line is healthy. Dak is healthy. So give me Ezekiel Elliott, who I think is the last of sort of the solid, safe running backs among the top 5. We know the volume will be there. He's another guy that's never missed a game due to injury. So I think Zeke has a very high floor and obviously a high ceiling given the explosiveness of the Cowboys offense field. And you are up at 6.
I will be there in just a second. But Tyler Fulghum has some thoughts here on this pick of Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I think Matthew has a good value pick there with Zeke. One stat I saw from last year about him that I think is going to regress positively. He had 12 carries from the 1-yard line, only punched it in 5 times. I think that is going to be something where he has a much better conversion rate if he gets that many totes from the 1-yard line. And I think this Dallas offense will be explosive again.
Yeah, by the way, you just made Mike Clay's day. Mike Clay loves to talk about positive and negative regression. He has all sorts of articles.
Soaking this in. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Just keep it going.
You were speaking Mike Clay's language, but I agree with you. Like and many of those 12 carries, by the way, were without Dak Prescott. Like, he got unlucky in touchdowns without Dak Prescott, so we expect that offense to be a lot better with Dak back. Field, you are now up at number 6.
And I will hold that thought until we return here on the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft Show. 5 straight running backs off the board. Who will be the first pass catcher to come off the board, and how soon will it be? Find out next as you stand by and stick with us here in the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon on ESPN2. We get 2 hours of fun. Stick with us throughout the night.
We're just getting rolling here. We're just having fun here. Everything's getting rolling. We've had a personnel change. So Mike Golic Jr. sitting with me. I'm Jason Fitz. During every one of these commercials, we're going to be sitting right here, Mike. And number one, we've got a few picks off the board. So Tyler, my mortal enemy, Fulghum.
This beef has become pretty real here. The palpable disgust, because we get the easy job. Like me in these fantasy marathons, I'm the peanut gallery. So they do all the work. And it used to be me and Stu Gatz, me and Sarah Spain, your co-host on ESPN Radio. And now you and I get to be here in the peanut gallery. And Jason is incensed that Tyler Fulghum is up there wearing a Rams jersey in Las Vegas, of all places.
I mean, with the Caesar's Palace right behind him. Like, what are we doing? Like, you're in my sit. Okay, but in fairness, this is exactly what we do during the regular NFL draft, too. Like, we get to sit over here and overanalyze everybody. I think it's interesting, if anybody was watching the pregame show that Kelsey Riggs and I did, one of the things that Matthew Perry said is that he didn't care where he picked as long as it's within the top 5, because there were 5 can't-miss running backs in this year's draft. Well, the draft board will giveth and taketh away, as it gave him the 6th pick overall, and then he took Zeke. So Zeke versus Dalvin Cook. You think can't miss somewhere in there?
Well, I mean, you can certainly see. So we went Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and then Ezekiel Elliott. And listen, if you're going to assume, I just heard Matthew and them talking about regression to the mean, all these fun words the analytics community likes to throw around here, which basically says, for the Cowboys case, it's going to get better, right? Zeke Elliott, much better shape this year, hopefully behind an offensive line that is resurgent, that's healthier. L. Collins suffered a little bit, got a little bit dinged up in practice today, so starts to worry you. But if you get that group back going, they got a passing game that's going to make for way lighter boxes for Zeke in a great year.
Which is, by the way, why I said in the pregame show also I'm high on Dak this year. I mean, I realize that health is going to be a constant conversation, but Dak doesn't have an injury history. He had an injury last year. There's a difference between coming off of a brutal injury, and now he's got the shoulder thing. There's a difference between that and turning around and making it an injury history. I'm not willing to take that leap. So in my mind, you mentioned the offensive line, and I always defer to you on that with your past and your history. I think the line is the key, because if the offensive line can hold up, this Cowboys offense has a chance to be incredible. And if this Cowboys offense is incredible on a team that was 6-10 with their backup quarterback for the majority of the season last year, the Cowboys take a step forward.
If you're looking to poke holes in it, the thing you could say is, on the other side, you want to talk about real going back to the mean here. You're hoping Dan Quinn and that defense can turn some things around, can be anything other than the sieve the Cowboys were on that side of the ball last year, which means maybe you're playing in less full-on Big 12 shootouts, maybe you're having to come from behind less, and so you could tamper some of the offensive production a bit. But I just think, God, with CeeDee Lamb, who he didn't really get to play with much last year, getting to open and unlock that even more, this has a chance to be something special.
As a Raiders fan, defense doesn't exist. I don't know what defense is. We don't talk about it. I think there's an interesting pick here, and it comes in from Stephania. They got Derrick Henry. You mentioned it earlier, and Derrick Henry is interesting to me because you add Julio Jones to an offense that was already very good. They got a lot of chunk yardage plays. I've been singing the praises of Ryan Tannehill. I think when you look at Ryan Tannehill and now Julio Jones coming into a situation where he's the number 2 wide receiver, I think there's something there that could really be explosive for that whole offense. But they're either going to have to make a decision. You're shutting down Derrick Henry and getting eaten alive by everybody else?
And what have we seen last year? Playing defense against this team, shuffling deck chairs in the Titanic. Derrick Henry back-to-back rushing titles. The interesting thing when you look at this quintet of receivers in the top, or running backs, why I say that is, Three of these guys, dynamic receivers. Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, certainly the lesser of this group when you look at Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Ezekiel Elliott. And so we know in fantasy, especially PPR leagues, having running backs with that kind of versatility to be three-down players is a huge deal.
We'll get you back to the TV side.
The Fantasy Football Marathon rolls on. Matthew Berry along with Field Yates. We are hour 25, and we have just gone through the first 5 picks of our mock draft with our esteemed panel here. We started off with Chris McCaffrey.
No surprise.
Then Alvin Kamara. Then Derrick Henry. Schefter took Dalvin Cook. I finished off with Ezekiel Elliott. 5 running backs off. We are in the draft. Pick 6 now. Field Yates, you are on the clock.
I think many people would be steering towards Saquon Barkley, although there's so many smart minds like Stephania Bell that have experienced or expressed a little bit of caution surrounding Saquon as he returns from that torn ACL in week 2 of last year. So let's get the pass catchers rolling. And I am taking Chiefs tight end Travis Kelsey, who has 5 straight seasons with at least 1,000 receiving yards. No tight end in NFL history has more than 5 seasons total of 1,000 receiving yards. He's done it 5 straight years. Other than the fact that he shaved his beard, I have 0 concerns about Travis Kelsey going into this season. Not a one.
No, and we talked about this on the podcast, Field. He's as close to money in the bank as you get in fantasy football. I think he has at least 8 touchdowns in 4 of the last 5 seasons. And you think about positional scarcity, the difference between him and the number 2 tight end, who for me is Darren Waller, like 50, 60 points. And Waller's really good.
Sure.
So you get a weekly advantage at the tight end position. Other positions are deep. If you were taking a pass catcher, Kelsey, I think, is the right move. I had him at number 6 overall. So we go from Field Yates now. Damien Woody, our Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
No left tackles here, Damien.
No left. Yeah. Maybe a kicker. No, just kidding.
Exactly.
I think for me, I'm going to go Austin Eckler.
Ooh, I like that.
Los Angeles Chargers. And when I look at the Chargers situation, they really invested heavily in the offensive line to rebuild that offensive line. But the thing I like most about the Chargers situation, Joe Lombardi coming over from the New Orleans Saints. And who was with the New Orleans Saints? Alvin Kamara. And I think he's going to bring that to the West Coast. And who's going to be the biggest beneficiary? Austin Eckler.
Well, it sounds like you've been listening to the Adam Schefter podcast. Because Austin Eckler told Schefter that exact thing, that basically he's going to be the Kamara in Joe Lombardi's offense here. This is a guy who averaged over 18 touches, over 102 scrimmage yards per game in the 9 full games he played last season. Once he came back from injury in week 12, he had a 20% target share, led all running backs. I'm excited about this Chargers offense as a whole, Adam, and I know you talked to him about him. Eckler seems really locked in.
Yeah. And listen, I said, would you recommend yourself high? And he said, absolutely. He didn't even hesitate. And,
He's all about it.
And let me tell you something. He sounded like he was on it, knew what he was talking about. And you know what? Another thing about him, he cares about fantasy football and is aware of the people that roster him. So that's one more reason to like him.
Since the start of 2019, he's 3rd among all running backs in fantasy points per touch. When he gets work, he produces in a big way. And it sounds like under Joe Lombardi, he's going to get a lot of work.
He will be a busy man. Mike Clay, pick number 8 for us. Mike, what do you got?
Stephania, avert your eyes.
Oh,
I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
I know.
Saquon Barkley
Yes,
is the pick for me here. I'm higher than him on most people right now in the industry. Look, here's the thing. As a rookie, the number 1 scoring fantasy running back. 2nd season, he was top 5 in fantasy points per game when he was on the field. Last year, played 88% of the snaps week 1. Now, look, I know he might get off to a slow start this year. I get that. I'm okay with it because it's a weekly game, and I'm going to get a lot of top-end games, hopefully, out of Saquon Barkley this season. I'm saving him for a playoff run, a championship. I'm not here for 2nd place. I'm here for 1st place. I'll take the discount.
I think as long as you're planning that, that's good. You know, because I actually expect big things out of Saquon in the second half of the season. The concern would be Dalvin Cook 2.0. Remember how high you were on Dalvin Cook the year he came back from the ACL? But then he got a lot of volume of work. Maybe too much for somebody coming off the big injury. That's my only concern is when people get excited, when Saquon starts to look good, does he then overwork and we end up with a similar situation?
I don't anticipate Saquon to be to play maybe for the first 3 games of the season, Mike. Ooh. So you know how much I love you, Boo. If I were you, make sure you get Devontae Booker at some point in time in your draft.
I'll do that.
For folks out there who are going to be drafting Saquon, I know the Giants really like Devontae Booker a lot, and so that's what I would do.
Listen, Anita's covered the Giants for years and years and years, and so I like the fact that you took an injured Giants player.
Matthew,
no, listen, Anita, no, I'm saying Mike Clay wearing an Eagles shirt took an injured Giants player. Fantastic. The drafts. No one ruins their draft in the first round except Mike Clay. Nice job.
We'll see.
Secret Squirrel Daniel Dopp, you are up.
Yeah, Devontae Booker's still on the clock, right?
He's the starting running back from the Giants we just heard from
Anita.
Anita.
That's what I just heard. Yeah, I love it. Here I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor. Listen, he started a little bit slow, but the end of the year, he absolutely crushed it. Finished as RB6. Of course, you have the return of Marlon Mack. Nyheim Hines is still there, but the talent for Jonathan Taylor is unquestionable. Matthew and you have talked about this. He just passes the eye test in so many ways. The dude's a superstar. I love being able to get him here in the back half of the first round.
Agreed there, Daniel. This is a player that the Colts are continuing to rave about during a very downtrodden camp at times in Indianapolis. They've had at least Jonathan Taylor to look forward to. All right, we got to the end of the first round. Anita Marks, you get 2 picks back-to-back, but let's start with pick number 10. Who will be the final member of the first round?
What do I do? Everything is so tempting here. I have to go Antonio Gibson, and I know there's a number of people that I know I have to. Oh, I love this guy.
Anita.
What do you mean? You could have had him. You just picked right before.
I just took that, but I wanted to.
But
So you guys are saying it wasn't ever getting back to me. This is very frustrating.
No chance.
It's interesting because I love this Washington team. I've got Washington winning the division. I'm all over it. The amount of speed that's on this Washington, I know you love it, Matthew. The amount of speed that's on this Washington offense is just ridiculous, but I think a lot of people are fading them because of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Don't! What I love about Ryan Fitzpatrick is that he is a gunslinger. He is an Ivy League gunslinger, and what he does is he puts the ball in the right position, in the right areas where he allows his playmakers to make plays, and that's what Gibson's going to do. So I'm going Antonio Gibson, and do I make my next pick now?
No,
or do
Anita, I'm just going to tell you, you know what I love about Ryan Fitzpatrick? Everything. Look, but Anita, I'm with you. Antonio Gibson, really excited. Here's a guy that last year when he got 15 touches, averaged 19.6 fantasy points per game. He was 13th among running backs in fantasy points per touch, and we know they expect a bigger role for him this year. Last year, he was just sort of learning the running back position. He mostly played wide receiver at Memphis, so now he proved that he was able to be a running back in the NFL. They improved the offensive line. They improved the offense with Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're going to be in scoring position quite a bit and get the ball in good field position thanks to that great defense. Love the pick. Was really hoping he would fall. Back to me. Pick number 2, Anita Marks.
Not quite, Anita Marks.
What?
We're going to hold off on round 2 until we come right back from a quick break. And surprisingly, Davante Adams is still sitting there on the board. All Davante Adams does is catch at least 10 touchdowns in a single season. Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay. How long will Davante Adams have to wait? Find out next.
All right, we're going to keep the fun happening right here. Only one player taken in the first round that was not a running back. That's Travis Kelsey that went to Field Yates. You like that?
I understand it. Listen, as someone who's in a super flex dynasty league this year, Travis Kelsey was also my first pick right around in that same area. So I get it for all the reasons mentioned there, but we saw what the bread and butter is. You go with running back, and I am enjoying, I can't wait. I hope we get to talk to Daniel Dopp because you could see the anguish. He gets a pick we both love in Jonathan Taylor and then is absolutely heartbroken to see Antonio Gibson go off the board after.
Well, we've got Dopp now. Daniel Dopp, all right, we saw the reaction. If you had it to do over again, would you change your pick?
All in on Jonathan Taylor. I was just hoping at the turn, if I could have gotten Taylor and Antonio Gibson, who I think is going to have a huge year this year, I would have been stoked. But, I'm not going to complain. I still got Jonathan Taylor, and there's a lot of talent left on the board.
Yeah, so, Dopp, walk us through Jonathan Taylor here. What stuck out about him? Obviously, a rookie year that sort of built across the season last year.
Yeah, he obviously started a little bit slow, but towards the second half of the year, man, he just absolutely crushed it, finished as RB5. You look at that final game that he had over 200 yards. I mean, Of course, he's going to see a little bit of regression, I think, in the passing game with both Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines returning. But that dude is a superstar. He's only 22 years old. He is the face of that franchise outside of Quentin Nelson. Mike, I know that you're going to appreciate the guard play is a big deal. Outside of Quentin Nelson, it is Jonathan Taylor, man. And that offense is going to run through him. And I'm super excited to be able to grab him, knowing that there's still so much that I can grab. I mean, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, there's a lot of guys in the second round I can go after there.
Do you have any hesitation taking somebody that's dealing with a different quarterback? Because we have no idea Carson Wentz's health or whether or not he'll play, when he'll play, what he'll look like.
That's a good question, Fitz.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're a professional. I don't think so. I thought about it, and I don't think so. As a part of that conversation, you realize that Jonathan Taylor is I don't want to say, he can be quarterback agnostic, I think, to an extent. Whether it's Carson Wentz or, last year with it being Phillip Rivers, I think he's the kind of running back that you can fit in there behind that offensive line. You look at the way that he ran behind Nelson last year, and the dude is just a beast. So, yes, if you had a better quarterback, I shouldn't say better quarterback, if you knew Carson Wentz was going to start and he was going to be there for a full 17 games, I would maybe be a little bit higher on Jonathan Taylor than I am right now, but I'm still okay with it. I don't need that quarterback play to be fantastic for Jonathan Taylor to be able to have a huge number of touches. He's going to get volume.
There's only one more pick before you're back on the clock. Dopp, we'll let you get back to it. Thanks for hanging out with us, my friend.
Appreciate it, guys.
Mike, I'm going to steal the phrase quarterback agnostic.
Oh, my God.
I mean,
it just rolls right off the tongue. That's why Dopp's the best. That's why they give him the show on ESPN Minus that you guys all love. Bring back Minusy. Bring back sweet Daniel Dopp's toys.
I laugh, though, because Dopp, for anyone that doesn't know, huge Lions fan. I feel temptation sometimes to pick my beloved Raiders. I don't think there's a lot of temptation to pick many Lions?
No, I would say that's probably a safe bet this year. Unless maybe, listen, TJ Hawkinson we'll get to later on in the draft there. Great tight end for them and an offense that's hockey line changed its skill group around Jared Goff. But, yeah, pretty easy decision.
Still a ton, by the way, for anybody that's just tuning in. The first round is done, and Anita Marks is on the clock to take over the second round. But, again, still a ton of talent. All but one player in the first round were running backs. And that doesn't surprise anybody. But as Field alluded to, I mean, we still have huge name wide receivers that are sitting out there.
Yeah, I know Dopp was heartbroken that he couldn't turn around and get Jonathan Taylor and then Antonio Gibson there. But you look, we talked about Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, these great wide receivers that are going to be sitting there ready to party for all these guys.
Yeah, I keep looking at this thing. It's a reminder in a snake draft that, especially in a 10-player, 11-player snake draft, or a 10-player, be at the bottom. Like, give me 2 straight picks. I want volume. All right, we're going to keep being here every single commercial. But in the meantime, right now, we'll send you back to the guys on TV.
The ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon rolls along here on ESPN2. Field Yates and Matthew Berry as we are about to begin the second round of our mock draft, I should say. Here are the first 10 selections, Matthew. 5 running backs to start and 9 in total.
Yeah, exactly. And so as you look to the second round, it's obviously a running back heavy draft. We've talked about how deep wide receiver is. Kelsey's off the board. Devontae Adams still out there. So as you approach the second half, you have to sort of think like, hey, do I want to reach for a running back or do I take best player available? Guys like Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. My expectation here is that, especially in a 10-team league, it's still best player available for me.
Not a bad call right there. Of course, we're in 7 rounds in total. We kick off round 2 with the person that concluded round 1. Anita Marks, you are on the clock with your second pick. Who will it be?
So this is a tough one because wide receiver is so deep, right? The pool of wide receivers is so deep, but how can I pass up on Adams, Devontae Adams? I mean, it's not like Randall Cobb's going to take a lot of the targets away from him or anything like that. So I'm all in on Devontae. Give me the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year with my number 2 pick.
Devontae Adams, I mean, it felt like a steal, to be honest with you. I was surprised he was not drafted in the first round. We talk about the safety that you want to find with some of your early picks. It's hard to win your league in the first round of the draft or the top of the second, but you can often lose it, Matthew. You're not going to lose it because of Devontae Adams.
We talked about Travis Kelsey being money in the bank in fantasy football. So is Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he certainly is.
Especially, by the way, with Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay and on a mission. Yeah, so really like the pick. Daniel Dopp, you are up for number 2.
All right, Matthew, as much as this hurts to take a cheesehead here, I believe being able to grab another running back is huge. And Aaron Jones coming to me in the second round. He's a guy who's been a top 5 running back each of the last 2 years. The dude is uber efficient. Doesn't have Jamal Williams there, so maybe he'll get a few more catches in the passing game. Still A.J. Dillon to worry about. But with Aaron Rodgers being back, Devontae Adams being back, that offense is going to be rolling again this year. Give me the guy that can pound it in for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Can't go
Hashtag free Aaron Jones.
Can't go wrong with that offense. I do think that A.J. Dillon will have a role, but it's not going to come at the cost of Aaron Jones this season. Aaron Jones, of course, signed to a new 4-year deal this offseason. We talk about following the money frequently. You don't bring a guy back if you don't plan to feature him once again.
Yeah, and by the way, they like to run the ball. I mean, Aaron Rodgers sets that up, and once Aaron Rodgers came back to Green Bay, the fantasy value of everyone on the Packers obviously immediately rose. I'm surprised Jones is another guy that usually goes in the first round, so nice value on the first 2 picks of round number 2. Mike Clay, you drafted Saquon Barkley. Cam Akers next. Who are you looking at?
Wow.
Well, you know what? Honestly, I went Antonio Gibson. I brought my note here. I have this all ready to go.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson, no matter what. I had it ready. So we're just gonna go with Tyreek now. We're gonna sub in Tyreek here. We'll go with the number 2 wide receiver. Why not, right? I mean, he number 2 last year, number 2 this year. The guy is tremendous out there in the field, super fast. He's in one of the pass-heaviest offenses in the league, highest scoring offenses in the league, best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, it all sets up for another big season. So I'll pivot here to Hill.
And by the way, I just want to be very clear. I'm giving Mike Clay grief, but we love Saquon. We love Saquon as a player, and we want him to have a great season.
No. Keep it going. I want that chip on his shoulder.
I just want to be clear on that.
I hope he's watching.
I want to give grief to.
I'm gonna feel good if when he has a big season. I'll feel much better about
Mike's
this.
team is playing angry already.
I am. I'm a little fired up.
Can a fantasy team have bulletin board material?
It sure does. If it can, Mike Clay's will be the best proof of it. Damien Woody, your 2nd-round pick. Time for you to make it. What are you thinking here?
I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley.
Ooh.
Calvin Ridley.
Okay.
Guy had 90 catches, over 1,300 yards, was targeted 143 times last year. And that was with Julio Jones in Atlanta. Julio moves on to the Tennessee Titans. I think he's going to have a monster year, even with Kyle Pitts being the high draft pick at the
over
tight end
Diggs
position.
and Hopkins.
I'm putting my neck out there.
Look, in the 7 games last year in which Julio Jones did not play, Calvin Ridley over 19 fantasy points per game, over 11 targets per game. We expect the Falcons defense to once again be bad. Look, if a year from now we're all sitting here and saying like, wow, number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, Calvin Ridley, like that's not shocking. That's not a shocking outcome. Like he's got that kind of talent. I agree with you. I have Diggs and Hopkins higher, but I have Ridley at 5. Like he's going to have a very big year.
He performed that well with an injury that he was dealing with for about half the season. In and out of games a couple times, but he's had a procedure on that. He's 100%. I think he has a great season.
Hey, I'll tell you what, for a guy that doesn't normally play fantasy football, Damien Woody's crushing it.
Super Bowl champion and maybe soon fantasy champion. All right, from Wood, we now go to Field Yates, pick number 2.
Yeah, and I was the only person to not take a running back with my 1st-round pick, so there would inherently be some pressure on me to land a running back in the 2nd round. And instead I say, what's the old RG3 expression? Pressure makes diamonds?
Sure.
Give me Stephon Diggs with my 2nd-round pick.
Wow.
We've talked about a couple of the wide receivers that have a chance to be the number 1 scorer in fantasy. All that Stephon Diggs last year was lead the NFL in receiving yards and receptions, just shy of Devontae Adams for the receiving touchdown lead. I think another monster season is intact for him in Buffalo with his highly paid quarterback, Josh Allen.
What's crazy is that, last year there were no preseason games. There was a shortened run up to the season, obviously, due to COVID, and yet Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs were immediately on the same page. You can only imagine what year 2 brings, especially given the fact that they added Emmanuel Sanders, another veteran wide receiver that I think will help take some of the attention away from Stephon Diggs. Love the pick. Very surprised he lasted to pick 6 in the 2nd round.
I am just fine with that. All right, coming up, we still have no quarterbacks taken in this draft thus far. When will the first quarterback come off the board, and who will it be? We will find out in just a few moments as the ESPN Fantasy Marathon Fantasy Draft continues to roll along. Stick with us. We've got 5 more rounds ahead.
All right. Sometimes in the moment, people have surprising drafts, right? Like we've all been there where you're drafting and you feel like things are going really well.
You're a Raiders fan. You know all about this.
Oh, my God. Like every year. But, you're sitting there and you're saying, maybe I get the strategy. So far, Damien Woody is going full Raiders in this draft. I mean, in the 1st round, he took Austin Eckler, which I think is going to be a very good pick. But the reaction, even from Schefter in the moment, was a little like, huh. In the 2nd round, he takes Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley.
Hey, listen, Damien is projecting outward, right? Like Austin Eckler is a guy that people think could have a breakout fantasy season this year. Calvin Ridley, he's saying those Julio Jones target got to go somewhere with a guy who I saw. Calvin Ridley's one of those guys. If you're looking on the internet, seeing all these pictures people posting a dude cooking in training camp, it might get you excited for this. So I can see what he's trying to do, but much like we talked about with the Raiders, maybe a little rich for some folks, Chase, when you got a guy like Aaron Jones who was still on the board at that point.
Let's bring in one of the team manager's greatest experts, Field Yates, joining us. Field, you're picking right after Woody in the second round. He takes Calvin Ridley. Walk me through give us a moment of honesty here. What were you thinking, Field?
Well, I don't say anything bad to Damien Woody ever in life because if I do, he'd pancake block me into the next studio. So I just sort of I make sure that whatever I say about Damien, it's all the praise that he, of course, deserves. But I don't really have that much of an issue. Here's my thing, is that every year in fantasy football analysis, you tend to hear a lot of the same thoughts, same opinions, same sort of narratives from a lot of minds that you already know in fantasy football. But typically the way that you achieve greatness is by being a little bit bold. And I'm not talking about finding a guy who's the fourth string running back on his roster right now. I'm talking about finding the player that goes from good to great. Now, Calvin Ridley was great last year, but there's another tier for him to reach, potentially the #1 scoring wide receiver in fantasy football with Julio Jones now playing in Tennessee. That being said, I wasn't expecting to have Stephon Diggs waiting for me with my second-round pick, 15th overall, so I'm happy about it.
Field, as always, we appreciate you, man. Even though you took the wrong tight end in the first round and Waller's going to have a better year than Kelsey, keep crushing it, brother.
You know, Fitz, you and Matthew Berry really uphold the standard of avoiding homerism here at ESPN. Our objective news standards are always met by the two of you. Well done, my friend.
Thank you. See, he appreciates my professionalism.
Listen, I just appreciate how smart Field is that he knows Damien Woody got the heaviest hands at the company. You don't want those problems. Think it through.
The funny thing is, I remember the first time I ever fist bumped Woody, and he's so gentle with it, and
because he knows if he actually puts any force behind that thing, it's like a tractor trailer. You're going down.
And you were an offensive lineman, and you can speak to just the hands and the way it works in the trenches, right? That's all I kept thinking was we see it on TV. I mean, you see the hand come across the face, but when you see the hand and realize that Woody's hands are as big as my face, it puts it all into a different.
Jason, but there's two different breeds of offensive linemen, right? There's the normal ones like the rest of us who got to punch. We got to go and try and go out there and affect you. Damien just puts the paws on you, and that's game over.
So we agree, right? Waller better than Kelsey.
Jason, we agree Waller's in that top 3 with Kelsey and George Kittle there, and I'd probably put Kittle ahead of him, but that's just a personal preference. For me, I like tight ends that can do a little bit of everything, that are great blockers, the Iowa Cornhusker, Iowa Cornhusker. God, I'll take a lot of people.
It's been a day. Chennai and Golic Jr. Come on, you've already done one
4
shot.
to 7 Eastern, Monday through Friday. Check us out.
We mentioned last round, not a lot of wide receivers yet. We're starting to see a run on them now. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley, Stephon Diggs. I'm not surprised.
Very interested to see where DeAndre Hopkins stratifies in this year. What that Cardinals offense with Cliff Kingsbury added a few more weapons there. Big year for him and Kyler Murray. How's that going to affect DeAndre Hopkins, who 2 years ago you would have argued was wide receiver 1?
Well, we'll see how it keeps going as the draft continues right now. We'll be here every commercial, but in the meantime, just like you, let's watch everybody on TV.
Beautiful shot of our ESPN campus here in Bristol, Connecticut, and nearly 1.5 million people have drafted a team, join them to be a part of fantasy football this year. We're back with our fantasy football draft. Field Yates, Matthew Berry, and a whole group of people that are very smart. Matthew, we're in the middle of our second round, and you have your second pick in this draft. Who are you taking?
I thought you were going to go with the guy I'm about to take, and then I was going to take Stephon Diggs. But you take Diggs, so give me Nick Chubb, who I had as number 12 overall. I'm as a first-rounder in a 12-team league on my overall board. It's a guy who was running back 7 last year on a points-per-game basis. He's a guy who last year had 16 or more fantasy points in 8 of the 11 full games that he played. My expectation is that the Browns' offense is better this year. Nick Chubb has such an incredibly high floor. Since taking over as the starting running back of the Cleveland Browns, Week 7, 2018, he's averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game. He's been the 9th best running back in fantasy since that point. He's 7th in rushing touchdowns per game. Nick Chubb is, I think, one of the best pure runners in the NFL. Well, obviously, it's a great offensive line, and I expect the Browns' offense, which really started to gel towards the second half of last year, to come on strong this year as well.
Can't argue with that. A player who, even though he does have a backfield mate in Kareem Hunt, who has standalone fantasy value, you don't have to worry about that. That offense does run through Nick Chubb. So again, a very running back heavy start to our draft, which moves us forward to Adam Schefter. Who are you thinking with your second overall?
Well, I think in honor of my friend Keyshawn Johnson, I'm going to go with DK Metcalf, who I figure if I could get DK Metcalf at 17 after Keyshawn got him at number 3 today, I'm crushing it right now, okay?
Look how upset Mina Kimes is. Mina Kimes is so angry.
14-pick discount for you,
No,
Adam
you saved
Schefter.
me from myself.
No.
You saved me from looking like a homer, so you can have him.
I
don't even like him anyways.
Yeah, Mina, I give it an over-under of 5 minutes before you shaking your fists as a meme on the internet.
Probably sooner than that.
Probably sooner than that.
Well, no surprise that Adam leans towards DK Metcalf. They have comparable physical stature. DK obviously a star of that Seahawks offense and should be again this year, Shefty. And now you have one wide receiver after taking a running back in the first round.
And I think that Seahawks offense, as much as they love to ground and pound it, I think they're going to be airing it out a little bit more than they have in the past.
I'm a believer in Shane Waldron. I do think they let Russ cook this year, and we saw what Metcalf could do last year. Stephania Bell, you were up for pick number 2.
Should I just really rock the boat with Mina and take Chris Carson?
Please do.
Please, actually, yes. No, you should.
No.
Definitely.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm listening to my guy, Damien Woody, who's been talking this week about Najee Harris. And I don't usually go to running backs off the bat, but I have to in this league. And Najee Harris isn't going to come off the field. And that's what I want for fantasy purposes. He can do everything. He can run. He can catch. I love this kid. Looking forward to him this season. Add him to my roster.
Yeah, Najee Harris, the Steelers have been very clear about their anticipated role for him. He seems like the front runner by many people's estimates to be not just the offensive rookie of the year in fantasy, but in the NFL as well. And Mina Kimes is coming up on the clock, but we can't quite pass the baton to you, Mina, until we do a little replay of when DK Metcalf went off the board. The disbelief, the frustration.
Look at this.
Nobody. And I mean
this,
nobody
America. Come
is
on.
better in terms of reactions, facial expressions than you, Mina Kimes, an incredible talent. You're now back on the clock.
Well, it was also an incredible acting job because the wide receiver I really wanted in the same division is still on the board, and that's Nuke Hopkins. I love the additions that Arizona's made, the trade for Rodney Hudson, the drafting of Rondale Moore. They also signed A.J. Green. I still think Nuke is the undisputed number 1 in this offense. I think it's a passing offense that's going to evolve a bit this year, and frankly, it has to. There's a lot of pressure on both Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. I feel like Nuke's a no-brainer, so he's the one for me.
Can't go wrong with DeAndre Hopkins, who, of course, every year is basically 1,000 receiving yards on 100 catches and close to 10 receiving touchdowns. He has been money in the bank for a long, long time.
He had a 29% target share last year.
Right.
A 29% target share. Second highest among all wide receivers. Who's top 2 in the NFL in targets, receptions, and yards. And again, just like we talked about with Diggs, that was with a shortened preseason. And remember, last preseason, him and Kyler were both banged up a little bit. I mean, like, imagine now a full year in that system. I can't believe Hopkins lasted that long. Tyler, we are now up to you for 2, the last pick of the second round. Tyler Fulghum.
I'm just a Mixie boy. Give me Joe Mixon. I can't believe he lasted all the way this deep into the second round, but we talk about things you want out of your running backs. I have Christian McCaffrey, who's the best in the business. You want 3 down backs who will catch the football, don't come off the field, play in offensive environments where they're going to be in shootouts. Check all those boxes for Joe Mixon. Giovanni Bernard is gone. He'll be on the field for all 3 downs, catching passes from Joe Burrow. We have seen him when he is given opportunity absolutely deliver. And I think Cincinnati's going to have one of the more explosive, sneaky offenses this year. And they'll need to score because I don't think that defense is going to be all that great in the AFC North. So Christian McCaffrey paired with Joe Mixon, I feel good about my start at the running back spot.
Not a bad start for you, Tyler Fulghum. We'll come back in just a little bit with Tyler's 3rd round pick. Also, a recap of how his mom's experience at the Maroon 5 concert has been so far. And, of course, look at the players who are still available right now. Plenty of running backs and also wide receivers.
Executing the perfect trade turns good fantasy teams into great ones. Trade Assistant with IBM Watson, exclusive to ESPN Fantasy, helps you wheel and deal with confidence all season long. Trade Assistant with IBM Watson identifies logical trades and lets you customize trade packages by position. Need a superstar running back? Let Trade Assistant recommend specific packages that give you maximum value and a greater likelihood of acceptance. It's like having your own assistant GM. Go to ESPN.com/FFL or download the ESPN Fantasy app now to get started.
If there's one thing most of us know, we need some assistance when it comes to these things. The app is a great way to do that. You got a little assistance in some backing up of your thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins as Mina Kimes co-signed you by drafting him.
Man, I just had to say, shout out to Mina here. She's one of those people that once she co-signs something I just said, like I threw the DeAndre Hopkins thing out there. It made a ton of sense. When she picks it, I'm like, all right, I do know what I'm talking about.
I mean, there are certain people, and look, I say it all the time. Like, we've got people here that watch a ton of film that I just find myself constantly going to and saying, hey, what am I missing or what do I need to see? Mina is at or near the top of the list for that when it comes to breaking everything down. It's why she's the best of the best. In the meantime, as we've seen so many of these picks go down, we're going to get Matthew Berry joining us now. Matthew, so far, your level of confidence in your draft is?
Than high A+. Like I'm crushing this draft like a grape. I'm crushing this draft like a grape.
All right, so Matthew, walk me through. We've got Zeke Elliott for your first pick, Nick Chubb with the second pick here. No concerns about this Browns offense taking any steps back this year after a stellar 2020?
No, I think they actually take a step forward. I mean, again, remember last year, Kevin Stefanski's first year taking over that Browns offense, and like they turned it around. And I think a second year, again, we talk about this. Like, there was a shortened preseason last year. You know, Kevin Stefanski had to coach a game by Zoom, right? I mean, like, now they're back in. That offense runs through. What does Stefanski want to do? He wants to run the ball, set a play action for Baker Mayfield. Obviously, it's a very good offensive line in Cleveland. Nick Chubb has such a very high floor. What I like about the two picks in Zeke and Nick Chubb is those are two guys that easily can get 20 touches a game. Those are two guys that are going to get the ball a lot when they're near the goal line, behind good offensive lines on teams that will run the ball a lot. So I think two very high floor players for me at the first two picks. Wide receivers still deep. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins just went. I will get a good wide receiver in this round. I'm not worried about it.
I'm just saying there's one that plays for your favorite football team still sitting up there in Terry McLaurin. All right, we appreciate you, Matthew. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Keep crushing this draft, brother.
Appreciate you guys and Fitz. Don't listen to Field Yates. You keep sticking with the Raiders, man. I got my Washington team. You got the Raiders. Do not, if I have one piece of advice for you, Fitz, it's not to listen to Field Yates.
I'm taking that piece of advice all day, every day. Thanks, Matthew. We appreciate it.
I'm just saying the Washington football teams at least had a player taken in this draft so far.
I mean, what? Like, no Darren Waller off the board at this point. We've got to run on running backs. Like, we're taking Joe Mixon before we take Josh Jacobs? No!
Taking Joe Mixon, taking Le'Veon Bell. I mean, what we heard from Matthew there about the running backs he took there. That's kind of the difference with what we've got going. Le'Veon Bell, I say that as I'm talking about Najee Harris.
I thought you were being sarcastic for a second.
It was the joke there because when you look at the Steelers situation, yes, we know Mike Tomlin will throw volume carries at these players. Le'Veon Bell, 22-plus touches a game every year he was in Pittsburgh with them. But now with Najee Harris, that offensive line is gone. Regime change there up front. And so now how's that going to work? We know he's going to get the volume because that's the best set of hands on a running back in this last NFL draft. So he's going to get a lot of opportunity. I just don't know what kind of support he's going to get.
Well, and you were big on Najee coming out, obviously. We talked a lot about it at the NFL draft. I think it's a great pick. It's a right fit. And it's going to be important that he play well because if the Steelers want to have any chance, I mean, we saw eye test regression of Ben last year, right? So there has to be some element of betterness.
There has to be. And listen, the pick running back there was rich for my taste. I think they should have helped themselves out up front. But it does show you what their intentions are. If you're going to spend that kind of draft capital on that guy, I'm sure Mike Tomlin and company intend to give him plenty of cracks at it.
Yeah, you know, like other first-round running backs picked, like, I don't know, Josh Jacobs. I'm telling you, I'm just going to keep it's going to happen.
Damien Woody's going to take him for you.
We're going to keep watching. We'll see if Matthew Berry takes Terry McLaurin. He's still on the board. Let's head back to the TV side.
I guess Matthew Berry, let's try and knock him down a peg or two. He's the godfather of this, but if we can all kind of band together and make sure Matthew doesn't make any slick sleeper picks and steal other guys that we might be targeting, he's the OG when it comes to fantasy football.
Well, I don't say anything bad to Damien Woody ever in life because if I do, he'd pancake block me into the next studios.
I don't know, A+? Is there higher than A+? Like I'm crushing this draft, like a grape. I'm crushing this draft like a grape.
Those sights and sounds came from. We have a cool second screen experience for the draft tonight. Check it out on the ESPN social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and the ESPN app. And with that, we say hello, welcome back to our ESPN Fantasy Marathon Draft. And we're at the top of round 3. Tyler Fulghum had the long wait. It was approximately 84 years between his first and second pick. But Tyler, you're right back on the clock after 2 running backs. Which direction are you headed? Of course, just 1 tight end off the board. Otherwise, mostly running backs with a few wide receivers sprinkled in.
It's been 84 years, like that old woman in Titanic. Field, I'm going to, you kind of alluded to it there. I'm going to go, since I am in Sin City, baby, Las Vegas Raiders tight end Darren Waller. And the reason being, last year, he had the same exact number of targets, 145, as Travis Kelsey. Field, you took Travis Kelsey, 5th or 6th overall? I'm basically getting 99% of Travis Kelsey at a 15-pick discount. Gone is Nelson Aguilar. There's question marks about Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. The offense that John Gruden has been built around the considerable talents of Darren Waller. So I get a top-notch tight end to go with my 2-3 down goal line stud running backs in Joe Mixon and Christian McCaffrey. Love this stat right here about Waller, him leading all tight ends in red zone targets a season ago.
I'm not so sure about that 99% of Travis Kelsey. I mean, my guy, T. Kelsey's done 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons. But I do like Darren Waller. The guy has been one of the breakout stars in the NFL over the past few years.
Waller, the baller, he is 14th among non-quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. Not among wide receivers, not among pass catchers, among non-quarterbacks here. He led all tight ends with 22 red zone targets. That passing offense run, just like, you know, to an extent, I guess Kelsey, the Chiefs passing offense runs through Kelsey. The Raiders offense runs through Darren Waller. When you get a tight end where the passing offense runs through you, especially for a team whose defense probably isn't that strong, they're going to be throwing a lot. I love Waller. He's on my love list this year. I have him as a second rounder. So the fact that Tyler got him at the top of the 3rd, I'm very mad about the pick. I was really planning on him coming to me here at 5, so I got sniped.
Nothing
no
I like
fun.
more. Yeah, well, that's okay. I actually thought it was pretty fun.
I'm sure
I enjoy more than seeing you get mad during a fantasy football draft. So, Mina, I encourage you with your 3rd round pick to do something that would frustrate Matthew.
Oh, gosh. That's a lot of pressure because I don't know who Matthew wants, but I know who I want. And it's a pick that I didn't love in the real life football draft, but I love for me in fantasy, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because I expect a lot of defenses to try to force the Chiefs to run the ball, play too high, and we saw last year that when defenses did that, they did run the ball. Damien Williams is gone. He is the unabashed, unequivocal #1 back, and he's now the #2 on my team.
Any concerns? We're hearing talk about, you know, Jerick McKinnon getting some run in training camp here, and obviously they like Darrell Williams in pass pro. Disappointing rookie year for CEH. Any concerns here, Field, from you?
No, I feel like it's been a rite of passage over the past few years to hear about a non-projected Chief starting running back that's looking great in training camp. Like, maybe some of that's the fact that you're playing with Patrick Mahomes and everybody looks good, but the investment here in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 32nd overall pick last year for the Chiefs with the time where the defending champions, they know they need to get him back on track this season.
Well, if you're going to invest in an offense, the Chiefs are a pretty good one to invest in. Stephania Bell, you're up. Pick #3 of the 3rd round.
You know what another good offense is to invest in?
What's that?
The 49ers.
Washington. Oh,
yeah.
Homer.
And so seeing Darren Waller come off the board, I know that George Kittle will not make it back to me, so I'm going to draft him with my next pick. You can call me a homer if you want, but we know there are tiers of tight ends. Granted, Travis Kelsey at the top, but Waller and Kittle to me are the next 2, and then it starts to drop off. I do like Mark Andrews, but I still think there's a big jump to him. 14 games in each of his first 3 seasons. I know there were only 8 last year because of the injuries, but I was at camp. He's healthy. You know what I saw? I saw him catch a touchdown pass from Jimmy Garoppolo. Saw him catch a touchdown pass from Trey Lance. So it doesn't matter who's going to be the starting quarterback. George Kittle's going to get the ball.
Nate Sudfeld also has a nice report. George Kittle just in case
just
that needs to happen as well. With Kyle Shanahan, you never know. He could probably turn him into a 4,000-yard passer. So George Kittle goes off the board a little bit earlier than his ADP would suggest, but to Stephania's point, fear of him not being there in the fourth
and
round.
that's a great point. Like, get your guys.
Yeah.
Stephania's absolutely right. Higher than the ADP, okay, but she wants Kittle. No argument there. He's a great player, and it's not coming back to you. So know where you are in the draft. Don't be afraid to go away from ADP to get your guys. You're not going to lose your league because you have George Kittle as a tight end.
No, that's right. I've already crushed you in the draft.
Adam Schefter, you are up with your third pick.
Well, we know how productive DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown were together before, so we might as well reunite them again on Team Schefter here and put them together and have double wide receivers from Ole Miss there. And so there we're going to go. Dalvin Cook at running back, DK Metcalf, and A.J. Brown at wide receiver.
If I had to guess, if there was to be a poll amongst the masses on Twitter, they might really like your team so far, Schefter, because 3 players, big names, coming off of monster seasons, all of them young. And yeah, I love the idea of reuniting A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. I think that the addition of Julio Jones will actually help A.J. Brown, as in less attention paid to A.J. Brown this year by opposing defenses. Not that much less, but a little bit less.
I would have liked to have gone Justin Jefferson, but I have Dalvin Cook, and I didn't want to be that Viking-centric. And I would have liked to have sniped Matthew and gone Terry McLaurin, but I decided to go A.J. Brown.
Well, listen, I'd have taken A.J. Brown if he was there for me. I love him. I have him higher on my board. Next wide receiver on my board actually is Keenan Allen. But you know what? Sometimes you just want to have a little bit of fun. I know this will frustrate a lot of people. Give me Terry McScorin. He's not Scary Terry, Anita. He's not F1, Mike Clay. He is Terry McScorin. Understand this about him. This is a guy who last year had 9 games with 8 or more targets, averaged 19.3 fantasy points per game. He was 9th among wide receivers in targets per game. He actually got unlucky with his touchdowns. Only had 4 touchdowns last year, and yet was still a top 20 wide receiver with, let's be kind and say, inconsistent quarterback play last year. Now you add Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's not scared to be aggressive, not scared to throw into traffic, and I expect that entire offense to take a big leap here. So McLaurin, who got, look, there you stop with the Scary Terry. Someone get Anita a Terry McScorin T-shirt for the love of Pete. It's the only thing, Anita, I love you, but I hate your insistence on that nickname. It's the wrong. He doesn't even like Scary Terry. But I will tell you this: he's going to like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who in the last 3 seasons where Ryan Fitzpatrick has had at least 12 games started, he supported a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. Think about what he did with Devontae Parker in Miami. Love me some Terry McScorin.
Terry McScorin, Matthew goes with the homer pick as well, which means that we have reached my pick in the 3rd round. I'm back on the clock. And we've been talking about this throughout the draft. One of the themes early seems to be, if you've got a guy, take that guy. And for that reason and that reason alone, I've decided to go with CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. I think the breakout player in fantasy football this year. Would not surprise me if he was a top 5 scoring wide receiver in fantasy this year. The sky is the limit talent-wise. This reminds me of Calvin Ridley a few years ago. Calvin Ridley slid to the Falcons, 24th overall, and they were stunned he was sitting there in the draft. They didn't even need him. They took him because he was too good to pass up. The Dallas Cowboys did it a couple of years later, and just like Calvin Ridley quickly became a fantasy superstar, I think CeeDee Lamb is bound for the exact same thing in a pass-happy offense in Dallas.
The rarely seen wide receiver start.
Oh, tight end first.
And Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Travis
Zero
Kelce,
running back strategy,
zero running
baby.
back.
Let's get weird.
You are going pure zero RB. Interesting to see here. Look, CeeDee Lamb, his first 4 games as an NFL player with Dak Prescott, 16.3 fantasy points per game, got at least 5 receptions each one of those games. And we're hearing all the reports out of camp. Like, he's expanding his route tree. He's lining up outside. He's lining up in the slot. Like, the talent is evident. He pops off the screen.
Sure.
We expect great things out of that Cowboys offense. And again, as we sort of talk about, like, get your guys. You've been talking about on the podcast quite a bit about how much you love CeeDee Lamb this year. Maybe he doesn't make it back to you. I didn't think McLaurin was making it back to me.
Yeah.
Mike Clay might have taken him. We know Mike likes him quite a bit. So we move off of CeeDee Lamb. And now Damien Woody is up for his 3rd pick.
Well, for me, I love the Los Angeles Chargers as a team this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Los Angeles Chargers are going to be one of those surprise teams in the AFC. Justin Herbert is just a star, but I'm going with Keenan Allen.
There you go. I thought you were going to say Jalen Guyton for a second. But.
So you've got Eckler and Allen now.
Yes, I'm Los Angeles Chargers centric.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen is just, man, you talk about one of the best route runners in the National Football League. I think he just has a big-time rapport with Justin Herbert. I think he's going to have a huge year this year in that Joe Lombardi offense.
Yeah, and he is the route running king. He has been remarkable once again in training camp. Still a young player. Feels like he's been in the NFL forever, and yet Keenan Allen right in his prime.
As I said, he was my number 7 wide receiver. I had him one spot ahead of McLaurin. I just wanted to go with a little bit of a homer pick. No issue with the pick. It's a great pick, Keenan Allen. Love the pick. Mike Clay, you are up for your 3rd pick.
Yeah, so last season there was a rookie wide receiver who had 3 targets in his first 2 games, and then the coaching staff was like, this guy seems pretty good. Maybe we should give him the ball a few more times. That was Justin Jefferson. From that point on, the number 4 scoring fantasy wide receiver. Matthew, you said before a 29% target share was high. He was at 28% from that point forward, almost 45% of their air yards. This guy is really good at football, arguably the number 1 dynasty wide receiver right now, and he's set up for another year. We could be talking about him as a number 1 receiver in fantasy this time next year. So I'm happy to get him in, what are we in, the 3rd round here? 4th round? Yeah, 3rd round.
And sounds like that shoulder issue that he suffered earlier on in training camp, nothing to be fearful of. Schefter reported that just hours after the injury, and it seems like he is making progress back to a return, which is excellent news. He was stupid good last year.
Not only stupid good, but super consistent. 7 different games with over 100 yards. That was tied for 2nd most among all wide receivers, like 5th among wide receivers in receiving yards per game. So great talent, great consistency, and obviously very narrow target tree. It's him and Thielen. We like Irv Smith too late, but honestly, there's not a lot of pass-catching options outside of Dalvin Cook. It's him and Thielen, really. All right, Daniel Dopp, you're up.
Yeah, Mike Clay's the worst, taking Justin Jefferson right in front of me. So I am going to, here's the thing. I'm looking at my 2 running backs right now, right? I've got a week 13 bye and a week 14 bye. That's really late in this ESPN league. So I'm going to grab another running back from my Detroit Lions, DeAndre Swift, baby. Grabbed him here at the back end of the 3rd round, a guy that I can count on when I make it to the playoffs. All right, but seriously, DeAndre Swift is in for, I think, a big 2nd year. Had 114 carries last year and 8 touchdowns. Obviously, that efficiency is not going to carry over. But you look at what he was able to do the second half of that year with the new coaching staff. They want him to be the guy. I think that DeAndre Swift is going to be a top 12 to 14 running back. So for me to get him here in the 3rd round, I'm going 0 wide receiver while Field is going 0 RB. I got 3 running backs on my team, and I'm happy with it.
Love it, Daniel. We can make a trade at the end of this draft. You can give me whoever your best running back is, and I'll give you whoever my worst wide receiver is. Seems like a reasonable enough exchange for us to make.
I don't need a Matthew trade, Field. I don't need a Matthew can send those.
Oh, wow.
Just some shrapnel here. I'm just sitting here.
No, that was accurate. Let's be honest.
One pride, Daniel. One pride.
One pride.
Right. One pride.
T.J. Hawkinson left on the board by Daniel, interestingly enough. Anita Marks, you get to finish off the 3rd round for us. Who are you thinking?
Wait, Anita, you held up your football when Daniel took DeAndre Swift. What was that about?
You can't.
Because I was worried that he was going to take a running back that I wanted, but he didn't.
Who is that running back?
Because I don't.
No, I took the right running back, Anita. I took the correct one.
It's interesting sitting here at 10 because there's a plethora of amazing talent I can take, but I am going with J.K. Dobbins. I know so much is being made about Lamar Jackson. They add Sammy Watkins. They're going to really open up the passing game. But what happens when they open up the passing game? The rushing lanes become as wide as can be. So I'm all over Dobbins. I think he's going to be the featured back in that backfield. And I think with as explosive as Lamar is, it's going to really open up things. And we know how committed the Ravens are to rushing the football. So I'm going Dobbins with my 3rd pick.
All right, Anita Marks has some good balance on her roster. Started things off with Antonio Gibson and then Devontae Adams, followed by J.K. Dobbins, the talented 2nd-year player for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
And, of course, Anita is right back on the clock when we return on the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Draft Sports Center Special. Who will Anita kick off round 4 with? Stand by to find out.
All right, they are crushing this draft, mostly because I think Tyler was just trying to make up for the fact that he's wearing the Rams jersey by selecting Darren
he
Waller.
heard you.
But I'll take it. I'll take a sympathy pick out of it. A little surprised, though, as we just saw through the course of the draft process. You can look at some big names that are still sitting available. I am a little surprised Darrell Henderson Jr., the running back for the Rams out of Memphis, is still sitting on the board. Like, the way they value running the football, and he's going to be the bell cow there, like, I'm a little surprised in that offense he hasn't been a higher pick.
And the person who went away from that, Mina Kimes, who has spent time as one of the analysts for the Rams preseason booth, so gets a lot of look there. and made the decision to go to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We also saw the homer plays come in here. Terry McLaurin going on home to Matthew Berry. And then, of course, we had in the recent one here, Daniel Dopp take DeAndre Swift. You mentioned the last break. We were talking here. There's not many draftable Lions. Daniel Dopp defies you.
Yeah, I mean, in the third round, no less, Daniel Dopp defying me on that. So good work by him, obviously. And Terry McLaurin's a friend of Spain and Fitz. He comes on all the time. Spain and Fitz, you can listen to on the ESPN radio, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. You look at that.
Shameless plugs left and right on
Anita Marks, we got all these, everybody drafting Anita. Tell me how you feel. Like Matthew Berry's decided he's an A+ and he's crushing this draft. So where are you on your draft, and who's having the most questionable draft so far?
Ooh, that's a well, a lot of questions here. First and foremost, of course, Matthew thinks he's crushing it. He's arguably the best fantasy football analyst in the world, right? What do I think about my draft? It's difficult. It's a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's difficult because now I have to pick when we come back from break, and there are some phenomenal wide receivers that are still on the board, right? Like Mike Evans, Adam Thielen, Allen Robinson. But you talked about Henderson, and you're absolutely right. I love this Rams offense. And because their wide receiving core and Matthew Stafford is going to be so explosive, again, it's going to feed into their rushing attack, and I think Henderson's going to be a beast. Also, Chris Carson, he's still on the board, the running back for Seattle. So sitting here at 10, it's fun because there's a plethora of really phenomenal players I could pick from, but it's also difficult.
All right, you're on the clock, Anita. So they say we got to let you go so you can do work. You got away from trash talking to anybody. Next time, I don't know if we'll be that lucky. Keep killing it, though. We appreciate you, my friend.
You got it.
All right, I keep trying to get him debate. Like nobody will talk smack about everybody.
Well,
you know why?
You know what?
Because we know who the most questionable drafter so far is, and he's the biggest guy in the room.
Well, see, the advantage here for Daniel Dopp, Anita Marks, Mina Kimes, and Tyler Fulghum is they're not in the same room. Like if you're Matthew Berry or Mike Clay or Field Yates, you got to live in fear that Damien's going to get up and put hands on you across from the table there. The rest of them are doing this from nice bureau cams. They're safe.
But that's why Anita needed to go. That was Anita's chance to be like, well, Barry's.
Well, not everyone's an instigator like you either. Like you're warming up for your gold medal in the instigation Olympics.
I'm a fecal stirrer. That's all. Like that's it's a thing.
You're a fecal something.
Wow. Okay, that got. You're not wrong about that. So yeah, Darrell Henderson, you make a good point, and obviously Mina saw him up close last week, calling the Rams preseason games, which she's done a magnificent job of, which has me now all in my feels. Because you were saying earlier that like when Mina backs you up, it's good. Well, if he makes it through the next few picks and Mina doesn't, Mina's got the end of the fourth. If he's still sitting there and she doesn't take him, now we got to ask questions.
We heard the other name already from Anita. If Chris Carson is sitting there, she already got on DK Metcalf by Matthew Berry. That's not going to happen twice.
Yeah, well, Mina's a total pro, unlike me. She's not going to let her fandom seep into this. We're loving it. Hopefully you are. We're back here every single commercial. In the meantime, let's get back to the TV side.
It is the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon Mock Draft.
I am selecting Christian McCaffrey.
Saquon Barkley is the pick.
No one ruins their draft in the first round except Mike Clay. Nice job.
I have to go Antonio Gibson.
Love this guy, Anita.
Damien Woody's crushing it.
I'm worried about Mina Kimes most.
I've played in leagues with Mina, and she's sniped me before, so I'm not surprised she did it with Alvin Kamara.
Fantasy Football Marathon returns, and we're about to begin round 4. Anita Marks will have our first pick. But first, Matthew, anything that surprises you through the first 3 rounds?
Yeah, just, sort of the order of the wide receivers. Look, I get Damien's argument on Calvin Ridley, but surprising to see him go ahead of Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins. Oh. So, seeing those guys go as wide receiver 4 and 5 of our draft, surprising to me. I have Diggs at, I have Diggs at 2. I have Hopkins at 3 among my wide receivers.
All right, time to resume the action. Round 4 of 7 begins. Anita Marks, you have taken 2 running backs and a receiver so far. What's next?
All right. You have said in the last, hour and 22 minutes, get your guy. Don't let your guy pass you up, and that's what I'm doing right now. I love this offense. I love Matthew Stafford with the Rams. With that strong arm, there's going to be a lot of goal line opportunities for Darrell Henderson.
Ooh.
I'm going with Darrell Henderson with my 4th pick. I think he's going to blow it up this year. As we know, Cam Akers unfortunately tore his Achilles. This is a monster opportunity for him, and so I'm not going to let my guy get by.
Darrell Henderson, who at one point, we did some research on this. Prior to the draft, Adam Schefter had mentioned on his podcast how someone had told him that Darrell Henderson was Sean McVay's favorite offensive player in that year's draft, or one of his favorite offensive players in that year's draft. So a prime opportunity for him now, it would seem, in Los Angeles.
And that was the case when they drafted him. And last year he struggled some and disappointed, and we saw Cam Akers come on and become that guy. And now Cam Akers is gone, so you'd have to figure that Henderson clearly is going to get the chance to do that, though they do like Xavier Jones and they do like Jake Funk. So we'll see.
He brings the funk, baby.
He does. But by the way, not only is Cam Akers not playing this year, obviously, but Malcolm Brown, who had 124 touches last year, he's now in Miami. 6 different games last year with 12 or more touches for Darrell Henderson, 14.3 fantasy points per game. I like the pick, Anita. Like, if you knew he was the guy and he could stay healthy all year, he has top 5 running back ability. Clear path on one of the best offenses in the NFL. Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dopp, you are up for pick number 4.
I'm loving me some of the NFC North right now, Matthew. I'm going to take Allen Robinson, my first wide receiver off the board, back-to-back top 10 wide receiver seasons. He had 15 end zone targets last year, which was 3rd most in the NFL. Only 28 years old, literally entering his prime with the best quarterback play he's ever going to have. How many times have we said that about Allen Robinson? Like, please just give the guy a quarterback. And even if it's Andy Dalton to start the season, Andy Dalton is still better, I think, than what they had last year. But Justin Fields is so exciting for me with what Allen Robinson can be. Lock him in for me as my number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, Daniel, good point. The hate's gone too far for Andy Dalton. It's going to eventually be Justin Fields, but Andy Dalton is certainly a capable quarterback. For however long he is the starter in Chicago. Allen Robinson playing for a contract yet again. This guy is a super-duper star with a huge target share. Mike Clay, you are back on the clock.
He's so underrated. Allen Robinson is so underappreciated, underrated. Like, such a great wide receiver.
I appreciate him. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so you guys say that heat has gone too far on Allen Robinson. I say it's gone too far on Miles Sanders.
Ooh,
okay,
interesting.
When this guy was healthy and on the field, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. I took the Giant earlier. Okay, I'm good. But anyway, look. So when he played last season, he was RB11 in fantasy points. Right. So he was still giving you that borderline RB1 production that we saw from him as a rookie. He was 7th in pretty much all receiving categories as a rookie. So we know he could do that, even though he struggled a little bit there last season. He had one of the highest yards per carry marks in the NFL last season among running backs. So this guy's effective. He can handle upward of 20 touches a game. And honestly, I'm not really afraid of the competition there. You know, you take a 5th-round rookie of Boston Scott, who's a good player as an insurance back. Jordan Howard's there. They just cut Kerryon Johnson. I think it will be the Miles Sanders show again this season. And with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, perhaps even wider running lanes for this big play running back. So I'll gladly take Sanders in the 4th round all day long.
Player who had 3 separate games with at least a 70-yard rush last season. Super explosive player, and while there's been some talk of a potential committee, it seems like he is the guy in Philadelphia. Damien Woody, you are on the clock with your 4th pick.
I'm going to go up to the Pacific Northwest. Chris Carson.
Ooh.
Chris Carson. Listen, we all talked about letting Russ cook in this offense, but we can't forget about Chris Carson. I think that especially when you get into the red zone area, how strong he is as a runner, I think this guy's going to have a lot of opportunities this year. I got Chris Carson.
Chris Carson.
I love Chris Carson. I would say 80% of the texts that Mina Kimes and I have are about Chris Carson. And I might be low on that 80%. 16.7 fantasy points per game in the 8 games last year in which he got 14 touches. He was 10th among running backs in terms of fantasy points per touch, minimum 100 touches. Look, the questions about Chris Carson are health and is he the guy? Well, they proved he was the guy when they went on and paid him this year. And in terms of health, like I think he gets a bad rap in terms of that. He's played 41 games since 2018. That's more games than Saquon Barkley, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. It's 1 less than Aaron Jones. Like I think he's one of the toughest players in the NFL. And as we've talked about on this show before, I think the Seahawks are one of those offenses that are going to be really, really good. I'm a Shane Waldron believer. Mina, you and I talk about Chris Carson all the time.
I love it. We do. I feel bad because we talked about you drafting him, and I was like, yeah, he'll be healthy. He'll play every game. I actually feel the same way about Chris that I do about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is if I'm a defense playing the Seahawks offense, I'm going to do what defenses did last year, play too high, beg them to run the ball. Chris Carson will benefit from that.
And the Seahawks, of course, should be one of the best offenses in the NFL this year with just a litany of weapons to work with. I am on the clock, and I am the only person in the first 3 rounds that did not take a running back. You see my first 3 picks, Travis Kelsey, Stephon Diggs, and CeeDee Lamb. Will the streak come to an end? Find out next as the Fantasy Football Marathon continues right here on ESPN2.
Guess who's back?
Oh, the suspense is building. I'd like to think that maybe I talked Anita into Darrell Henderson.
It feels like that. I'll give you credit for that, actually, because it was so close proximity-wise that it felt like she just internalized that. And if all other things are equal, Jason, recency bias, man. Who among us?
Yeah, I'd like to think I talked her into it. One person that can talk me into anything, Mina Kimes, she joins us right now. So, Mina, how's it go? So far, we thought maybe Chris Carson would fall to you and you'd get a Seahawks pick in. Your thoughts? Twice now, a Seahawk has been sniped ahead of you. Are you happy or angry of this?
Prefer not to draft Seahawks because it's an emotional hedge. You don't want both the team you actually root for and your fantasy team to be aligned. It's really psychological strategy, Jason. I'm surprised you're not familiar with this tactics given what a fan you are. You don't draft Raiders, right?
No, well, I had that rule and then Darren Waller got good. Now I can't stop myself. I'm back in that cycle.
Yeah, he's been forced into a tough spot by this one, Mina. Do want to take advantage of your expertise because Fitz and I were talking before the pick from Anita Marks of Darrell Henderson out there in Los Angeles. Obviously, unfortunate situation with the injuries, but from what you've seen so far in the preseason booth here, this is a guy that seems to be an exciting prospect for sure.
It is. Well, it's a guy we haven't seen in the preseason because Sean McVay sure isn't going to play Darrell Henderson. But we did watch him in preseason 2019, watched him in college at Memphis as well. I will say, last year before Akers kind of took over, he did run the ball very efficiently, and they did use him at the goal line. I think the question is just, will they give him more carries, not even over the course of a season, but on a per-game basis? But I love the pick for Anita because the depth behind him is not deep. We're looking at Xavier Jones, undrafted back as RB2 at this point. So he's a phenomenal pick, and I would take him if I had the chance.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure anybody's having a better draft so far than you are, Mina, mostly because we're biased and you're the best. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate you, my friend.
Bye, guys. All
right, so, Mike, you start looking at, and as we get into this is the meat where it gets tougher. Like, just being real, the early portions of the draft, you're not going to make a massive mistake for the most part. Like, a lot of the drop-off, as we've heard the guys talking about so much over the last 48 hours, you've got 5 or 6 running backs, and then there's a drop. You've got a group of wide receivers, and then there's a drop. We're sort of in that drop zone now where suddenly you've got to make a good decision. That's why I think it's a little curious that Dopp took Allen Robinson. As much as I love Allen Robinson, the player, I have to look at every wide receiver at this point and ask myself, what's the quarterback situation? Because if I'm not confident in the quarterback situation, how can I be confident in the wide receiver production?
Well, we did just hear Matt Nagy say he wants to get Justin Fields more reps with Allen Robinson, which means we haven't seen that already. I think it's trending in the right direction, and Justin Fields would do a lot for Allen Robinson's situation. But I'm with you, Fitz. We're starting to get in this range where it's going to be a lot of who's your guy in this spot. That's why right after that, with Mike Clay, I love the Miles Sanders pick because with Jalen Hurts there and a dual threat offense at quarterback, that's going to open up things even more and make life easier on a guy like Miles.
In that sense, when we're looking at offense, Mike, I think sometimes we need to start looking at this portion of the draft. Everything is a three-headed monster. Like we see the ESPN.com articles all the time about the best offensive skill sets. Well, I'm looking at running back, wide receiver, quarterback. Look at the three together, and it gives you an idea how production is going to map out.
Exactly, and so hopefully Devontae Smith, who had a little bit of scare with the knee injury earlier in camp, you get those guys going. And again, Jalen Hurts might not be a monster that leads Philly to the promised land here, but at the very least, he provides something different that defenses have to account for that you haven't been really able to do with a banged-up Carson Wentz the last few years.
Well, everybody drafting has to account for Field Yates. He's on the clock. Let's see where he goes right now.
1.492 million signups and counting. Be a part of the push to 1.5 million here as part of the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon. And we are in the middle of round 4 of our draft. Field Yates, along with our great crew of 10 people. I am on the clock. My first 3 picks were not running backs. Here are the first 4 picks of round 4, 3 of which were running backs, which leads me to pick number 35. And I'm taking David Montgomery, whose ADP is actually 22nd right now on ESPN.com. I think perhaps this player's being overlooked. I know that people want to say the competition down the stretch last year wasn't tough for David Montgomery when he broke out. Matt Nagy and this Bears staff is committed to making him the guy. And I get it. It wasn't tough competition. But the kind of production he put up in the last quarter of last season was ridiculous. The talent is there, and I'm not so sure that we're going to see Tariq Cohen to begin the season.
Yeah, you know me, I'm not crazy about David Montgomery this year, but given where it is in the draft, I have no problem here. He was the highest running back remaining on my board. Given how you would construct your team, don't have an issue with that. All right, so I have two running backs and a wide receiver. I'm going to stay in the NFC East. My last wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, of course, Washington. Apparently, I'm a Cowboys fan for fantasy this year. Give me Amari Cooper. Like, for all the buzz about CeeDee Lamb, and I get it, Amari Cooper played 4 full games with Dak Prescott last year. 21.3 fantasy points per game, 12 targets a game, over 100 yards a game. He had 12 end zone targets, which is tied for 10th among wide receivers. Like, Amari Cooper is really good. And what do you want to do? You want to target offenses that are going to score a lot of points. Dallas Cowboys are going to score a lot of points this year. Amari Cooper is still a very, very productive fantasy wide receiver. So I love getting him in the middle of the 4th round as my number 2 fantasy wide receiver. Again, just to show the depth of the position.
It's a nice pick right there. Schefter, you are next up here as we get to the back half of round 4.
You know, I'd like to go somewhere else. The depth is just not what I want it to be. So I'm going to go Mike Evans, the number 1 target on a heavy passing offense. Last year played well. Should play better with his second season with Tom Brady. Mike Evans.
Slow start for them in Tampa Bay last year, and then he got red hot down the stretch. The Bucs offense really found its footing, not just at the end of the regular season, but, of course, in the playoffs as well. You may remember, Matthew, Tom Brady won another Super Bowl. Stephania, you are up with your 4th round pick.
Yeah, Anita's going to like this one, but I'm going to go with Robert Woods on that Rams offense. Yeah. But, hey, he's got this quarterback, Matthew Stafford, who I think is going to get him the ball pretty well. And you know what I like? I like durability. He's played in 47 of the Rams' last 48 games. Robert Woods stays healthy. Sort of flies under the radar as a name, I feel like. When I was out at camp, I saw a lot of throws from Matthew Stafford to Robert Woods.
Bobby Trees.
There's a couple of guys that are always underrated in fantasy, and I don't know if it's because he doesn't have a flashy nickname or
Bobby Trees. That's flashy enough for me.
I'm just saying Robert Woods is always criminally underrated. He's a great wide receiver. He's a great route runner. They love him they love him in Los Angeles. Get this, Matthew Stafford 9th in fantasy points per pass attempt. Like, that's a big upgrade. He was always productive with Jared Goff. I think he'll be even more productive with Matthew Stafford. Mina Kimes, you are on the clock.
Part of the Rams preseason broadcast,
exactly.
By the way. She knows that team very well.
She knows that team very well.
Yeah, I am convinced that Julio Jones was cursed at some point by a witch that made him the best wide receiver only outside the red zone. But I also think maybe leaving Atlanta will break that curse. So give me Julio. I know sometimes he can be frustrating to have in fantasy because of the lack of touchdowns, but I think that's going to change this year.
Yeah, he's bound for it, right? And here's a crazy stat.
Has to happen, right?
Julio Jones, amazing player, right? But think about all the great wide receivers in NFL history. Julio Jones averages nearly 9 more receiving yards per game than any player in NFL history, including the great Calvin Johnson, who was just inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tyler Fulghum, you're back up after a long, long wait. You're on the clock for 2 straight picks.
Oh, Stephania, swipe Bobby Trees for me. I agree with her because he's the wide receiver that Sean McVay trusts the most to be on the field. 90+% of the snaps in 10 out of 16 games last year. But I don't think Matthew Berry, my little Cooper Kupp, is a bad consolation if I don't land on Bobby Trees. Okay. So I am going to add Cooper Kupp, who's a little bit bigger in the red zone than Robert Woods. And we know Stafford likes big bodies down there in the red zone. That's why Higbee, people are high on him. But Cooper Kupp should see about 80, 90, maybe 100 catches if he can stay healthy. And I think 6, 7 touchdowns.
Look, I appreciate you using his proper name, which is My Little Cooper Kupp. You know I love him. Look, and honestly, like, you are correct. Like, in terms of red zone target share, he's always among the league leaders. We are playing a PPR format, which obviously plays to his strengths as well, and fully healthy as well. So we talk about, you know, sort of narrow target trees, right? We expect that to be a better passing offense with Matthew Stafford. Like, all due respect to Tyler Higbee and Van Jefferson and, you know, Deshaun Jackson and Tutu Atwell, like, it's going to be Bobby Trees and My Little Cooper Kupp. So I like the pick. And you get another one, my friend. Tyler, who you going with to kick off the 5th round?
Well, I hope my mom is having as much fun watching Adam Levine as I am having doing this draft, because I can't believe it broke this way, that I'm going to end up getting Christian McCaffrey and Josh Allen, QB1 and RB1 on the same team. Josh Allen will be my pick. I'm finally taking a quarterback here. I'm not going to wait till it comes back around. Josh Allen's ability with his legs, especially in the red zone where Singletary and Moss aren't great runners inside the 5, Josh Allen becomes their de facto running back inside the 5. He'll give me 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, 4,500 passing yards, 38 to 40 touchdowns as long as Steph Diggs stays healthy. No offense, maybe outside of Kansas City, is more reliant on the skill of their quarterback, I think, than Josh Allen in Buffalo, and I think he's just started to scratch the surface of his all-everything potential.
So here's my question. Look, no one questions Josh Allen. You're right. He was the #1 quarterback in fantasy last year. But Patrick Mahomes is still on the board. Tyler,
I understand that.
Everyone, let me speak for the entire internet. Why not Patrick Mahomes if you wanted to go quarterback here, brother?
The rushing equity I get from Josh Allen. Not that Patrick Mahomes can't do it, but especially inside the 5, the plays that Greg Roman will call for someone like Josh Allen, boot action, get out on the perimeter, use that speed and that strength and that body. He's like Cam Newton. He will bowl you over at the goal line. You can't say that about the other guys with rushing equity. Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray. He is a fullback and a quarterback's body who can throw for 5,000 yards. That's why I like him.
Maybe 6,000 with the 17th game. I know Mike Clay has written about that on ESPN.com. So we are now into round 5. Mina Kimes, you are up. Pick number 42 overall. Which direction are you leaning?
I'm going to go a little crazy here and take the player I want, not the player that's being recommended to me. Mark Andrews. Look, I love the additions they've made in Baltimore. Additions, by the way, some of those wide receivers have been a little bit banged up as of late. But this passing offense still goes through Andrews. I think he is in a tier above the other tight ends on the board, and I'm happy that he's on my team.
Daniel Hawkinson respectfully disagrees about that tier. However, nice pick there with Mark Andrews, the best touchdown maker on that Baltimore offense. And right now, every wide receiver is seemingly dealing with some sort of injury.
12 end zone targets last year, tied for the most among tight ends. Like when they get in close, Lamar looks for Mark Andrews. So
yes, he sure does.
He sure does. Stephania Bell, you are up. Your pick in the 5th round.
I can't believe this. If he wasn't here, I was waiting until much later. But Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, I've heard of him.
My goodness, Tyler, what's wrong with you? You just told everyone Patrick Mahomes isn't a good quarterback. He's going to ever take your advice again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I will say it was a passioned takedown of Patrick Mahomes.
It was. He really did. But look, I've heard he's pretty good.
Yes.
You know, so I think that he's got some good weapons around him. I know that Patrick Mahomes had a toe surgery. Is that what scared you? Because I saw him in camp. He's still running really well. This guy he's electric. What more can you ask for?
He is basically the consensus #1 quarterback in fantasy, except in our draft.
Well, Tyler marches to the beat of his own drum, or his own Maroon 5 single, as it were. All right, we've had just one rookie drafted so far through 4+ rounds. That's Najee Harris. When will the rookie wide receivers come off the board? That, of course, includes the highest drafted wide receiver, Jamar Chase, and the Falcons' new man in the middle, Kyle Pitts. More to come on the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon in just a couple of minutes.
I mean, what draft isn't a little better with a little controversy? And we've got it now. Quarterback controversy in the fantasy draft. Tyler, Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes? Patty Mahomes?
Yeah, so I understand in theory what he's talking about here. And the way that the Bills ran their offense last year, certainly there's plenty of wide open space, a lot of empty sets for Josh Allen, a lot of space for him to work with. But, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but at least anecdotally, it felt like a lot of those rushing attempts came on scrambles for him. I don't know how many designed rushes you want for your now very well-paid franchise quarterback either. I know he's built out of Teflon, but I guess counting on that kind of production when it's not in the Lamar Jackson design runway, when it's not the way you're getting him with Kyler Murray on the edge where he can make guys miss. It's Patrick Mahomes, man. What are we doing here? I can try and come up with these cute reasons, but damn.
We'll get back to the Patrick Mahomes conversation in a second, but we're joined now by Damien Woody. Woody Jr. earlier said you're having a terrible draft. What do you say to that?
Oh, man, come on, Junior. I mean, I thought we were supposed to be brothers.
No, Damien, don't let him do this to you right now. Those are Jason's words that he's trying to put out of my mouth because he's afraid to say anything in front of you because he knows you'll squish him like a grape.
Woody, you've seen both of us in person. If I'm going to talk it, I'm going to get crushed. Mike's much bigger than I am. Look, you know, Schefter gave you a little look after a couple of these picks. Like, what's the philosophy, Woody?
Man, listen, man, I'm doing my due diligence over here. You know what I mean? Not everything is going to follow the script here. So my Calvin Ridley, I know I'm going to take, I know people are going to come at me about that, but I'm standing firm by my Calvin Ridley. That Austin Eckler pick, what I'm telling you, that to me is a hell of a pick. So, hey, man, I'm riding the wave right now.
I can't wait for Damien Woody midseason when Austin Eckler's balling to come and find Fitz and dunk all over him in the hallway.
There you go.
Woody, you know I love you, brother. It's just you took too many Chargers, and as a Raiders fan, I can't handle it. Go get back to work, brother. Appreciate you, my friend.
All right now.
Oh, Woody's the best.
I'm going to lob it's going to be like the Dwayne Wade, LeBron James alley-oop, me just lobbing it off the backboard for him to absolutely dunk on you.
Yeah, because Sundays aren't already hard enough. Just add to it. All right, so you're right, though. Like, as we go back to the quarterback question, there's a moment, and I looked it up on a couple of different sites, and you can look back last year, fantasy points, average game, average projection, all slightly favored Josh Allen on multiple.
Dude, he was great last year.
But it's still Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes.
And listen, it's Josh Allen has been about trajectory, right? Buffalo anticipated this when they drafted him. They said, you know what, 55% completion in college at Wyoming. We think that's about your receivers your last year. We can build around you and improve. And it's worked. Like, they deserve so much credit for the way that that's worked. But it's Patrick Mahomes who has been one of the surest bets in sports since he stepped foot on a field after the God, why am I blanking on his
Alex Smith.
Yeah, our colleague right now here. It's been a long day. My brain's not working here. The point is, Patrick Mahomes, you just pick it. It's set it and forget it. It's as easy as can be.
You always say this with me, and we know it. I'm risk-averse at quarterback, and I believe in proof of concept. And while we have proof of concept for Josh Allen, and I take nothing away from that, we have more proof of concept with Patrick Mahomes. And at some point, you have to look at just what you expect from the player and who the team is as a whole. I mean, while it all makes sense, I think, realistically, we can look at all this and say Stephania got a little bit of a home run there getting Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, hi. Like, anytime you can walk away with the $500 million quarterback, got to feel pretty good about stuff.
Well, that is part of the joy of drafting, though. We'll never know if Tyler really meant to or if he got a little stuck, because we all know sometimes the moment can get you. I'm going to text Woody an apology in the meantime and get you guys back to TV to keep watching this call go down.
Sorry, Alex Smith.
We are back here in the Fantasy Football Marathon, round 5 of our mock draft. We've had 3 picks in round 5, which means Adam Schefter is up. Shefty, who you got?
Well, I was thinking quarterback, and I wanted Patrick Mahomes. Stephania took him. I wanted Josh Allen. Got taken by Tyler, so I'm going to go with Kyler Murray, the next quarterback on the board.
Ooh. Yeah, no complaints there. Obviously, Kyler Murray. Look, Kyler Murray could easily be the number 2 quarterback being taken. We expect great things out of him. I am up now, and you know what? Sometimes in a draft, you want to take the best available player.
Right.
And sometimes you want to take a player just to annoy somebody else in the draft. So I'm taking T.J. Hawkinson, Daniel Dopp.
No! You cannot! No! Hold on now. Get this out of here. I am so angry.
Very Hawkinson-esque.
Hawkinson entered the draft.
Yeah.
I actually
have. Could you be at a meeting right now or practice?
I should be at practice. I just got done with 2-a-days, and I came here to be able to do the draft tonight.
Well, the thing about Hawkinson is, I understand what Mina Kimes is saying. I actually have Hawkinson as my number 4 tight end. I think that entire passing offense will go through T.J. Hawkinson. Look, they're going to be behind quite a bit, and Hawkinson is poised for a monster season. I think there's a chance that a year from now we're talking about him in the same tier as Waller and Kittle. So give me T.J. Hawkinson here. And the annoyance on Daniel Dopp's face is makes the pick absolutely worth it. Field Yates, you're up.
I'm up, and I'm going to make it quick here. I'm taking Josh Jacobs, the Raiders running back. They did sign Kenyon Drake this offseason. That being said, I also think that maybe we're overlooking Josh Jacobs a little bit. A very talented player when he is on the field, a hard-charging runner, and a guy who has some passing game value as well. The Raiders need him to be great because it's a huge year in Las Vegas, Damien Woody.
There are concerns about that offensive line, though, in Las Vegas, Damien. You know that.
Mm-hmm. They think less so than we do, though. They believe their offensive line's in much better shape than we do publicly.
I'm going with Lamar Jackson. I'm taking Lamar Jackson.
Oh,
I
boy.
think, listen, Andrews, I think is going to have a good year. I love the weapons that they added on the outside to complement this passing game. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's that guy.
Mike Clay, you're up on the clock here.
All right, so I already have a Vikings wide receiver. So,
Some is good, more is better?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. I'm going to do it. Look, it's a mock draft. We're having fun with this. We're going to take the best guy on the board. Adam Thielen has been a top 10 fantasy receiver 3 of the past 4 years, had 3 more end zone targets than any other player in the NFL last season. This guy is just too good to pass on here. I'll gladly scoop him up for my flex spot.
Adam Thielen, so rock solid, so consistent. And if we ever played in a league where you just drafted a team's position, Vikings wide receivers would be one of the most desirable in all of fantasy football.
Justin Jefferson had such a monster year last year. People forget how good Adam Thielen is as well. All right, from Mike Clay, we now go to Daniel Dopp.
Matthew,
Jamal
I'm
Williams
coming
is
for your
still there.
kneecaps. I hope you know that. I'm coming for your kneecaps, buddy.
Bring it on.
Listen, I'm going to go with
You going to eat them? After you get my kneecaps, you're going to eat them?
No. If I can even find them through all the jello that is your ACL kneecap area. Listen.
More Snickers than Jello, but yeah, I got you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going with Chris Godwin here. I got to tie up another wide receiver for my lineup. Give me somebody that plays with Tom Brady. I hear that guy's pretty good at quarterback. Chris Godwin has all the talent in the world playing opposite of Mike Evans. We're just going to see more chemistry as we saw develop for that Buccaneers through the second half of the season. Real easy pick for me. Godwin's the best player on the board for me. Taking him here in the 5th.
Hard to argue with anyone in that Buccaneers offense. Anita, you're up for the last pick of round 5 and the first pick of round 6.
All right, let's do it. And this is a wide receiver that I love this season. It's Courtland Sutton, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. I don't care who's quarterbacking, whether it's Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. This is a young man, unfortunately, only played 31 snaps last year, got injured, and has been working his butt off. Everything I'm hearing out of Broncos camp is that he's just been fantastic, and I think he is targeted. He's ready to have a huge, huge season. So I love Courtland Sutton, so that's who I'm taking. And are you ready for my next pick?
We sure are. Anita, hit us with it.
Woo! I'm gonna show you who I'm taking.
Wait.
Oh,
that's
wow.
right, baby. Go Pitts!
You calculated this one, huh? Did you have this? Were you going to take Kyle Pitts no matter what tonight?
Let's see. I was hoping I was going to get him, and sure enough, I did. Best player that came out of this year's draft, hands down. Already give him the gold jacket. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame. Julio Jones is out. He's in. Going to be a huge target. Here's the thing. No strong safety and no linebacker can cover this dude. So I'm all in on Kyle Pitts. Give me Kyle Pitts, another common denominator with all my fantasy football drafts. This is the tight end I want. Hence, I bought the shirt.
Fulghum is on board with that pick. And as a matter of fact, by the way, you could probably say no free safety, no cornerback. Nobody can cover Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
It could not happen in college. I think it'll be very difficult in the NFL as well. Daniel Dopp back on the clock as we are into round 6. You just took a Buccaneer and Chris Godwin. What's next for you?
So what's next up for me is Deontay Johnson. I'm going to go wide receiver here. Listen, there are some obvious concerns that you can look at with that Pittsburgh Steelers. You hope that they're going to be a great passing offense. There's a lot of guys there that you got to worry about with Juju, Chase Claypool, obviously Najee Harris. But I like Deontay Johnson. He's a guy that's going to see a ton of volume. He's an easy wide receiver, too, that I'm getting here in the 6th. I think it's the easy pick for me.
Okay, Deontay Johnson had an incredible amount of volume last year, despite the fact that we've got 3 wide receiver in Pittsburgh that matter.
Yeah, but he's a really talented guy. I think if you're he's the guy that I have highest rated on my board from the Steelers. The volume is there. The talent is there. He's still a really young player. I know he had some bad drops in some really big situations, so I think his fantasy value has been decreased, and wrongly so, because insanely talented player who should see a lot of volume in a Steelers offense that we expect to be pretty good. All right, Mike Clay, you're up.
A lot of tight ends getting picked, huh?
A lot of tight ends are getting
picked. You
picked.
going to bother with them or no?
I know where you're going.
Yeah, how about the guy who finished 3rd among tight ends in fantasy points last season, Logan Thomas. Also number 1 in snaps and routes, too.
Yeah.
This guy plays a ton. He's fantastic. Enjoyed a breakout season last year with a merry-go-round at the quarterback position. By the way, all his quarterbacks last season combined, none of them are starters this season. He's adding a big upgrade to Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think Logan Thomas in for another big season.
LT3 was a guy that I talked about in the preseason. You made fun of me for my obscure tight ends, saying I was a homer. Logan Thomas ended up working out, and as Adam and I talked about on the podcast, follow the money, right? Logan Thomas got paid this offseason.
Is LT3 a nickname he throws around?
No, it's not.
It's when you're giving him right now.
Yeah. I did not originate that, but yes, that is one that he's been given within the fantasy community, and I like it. LT3. Anyway, if I didn't get Hawkinson, I wanted Logan Thomas. I love the pick. Back to our Super Bowl champion, Damien Woody.
I really like the Broncos this year. I like the Broncos. Going Noah Fant. Going Noah Fant at the tight end spot. I know they got a lot of weapons, particularly on the outside, but Noah Fant to me is a matchup nightmare. I think whoever the quarterback is will have a friendly target in Noah Fant.
We have seen glimpses of it from Noah Fant, a player that everybody seems to forecast as a potential breakout star in this third year. And again, no matter who the quarterback is, it just feels like there's a bit more stability in that Broncos passing game this season. They looked very sharp in their first preseason game. So the theme of this draft, I would say, has been people finding and targeting their favorite players. And
yeah, it's a little early for me on Noah Fant, but I love the talent, and I know they expect big things for him in Denver. All right, Field, you're up.
Yeah, and along those, keep the theme rolling, right? I have been talking about finding players that I love and getting them when I can.
Yes, sir.
And in this case, Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers wide receiver, who I think is also bound to be a breakout candidate this season, played incredible down the stretch last year. I'm sorry, Mina, I didn't mean to do that to you. But I think Brandon Ayuk could be in for a massive second season. You too, Stephania. I saw her face first. All right, we're coming back in just a few moments. The sixth round is about halfway done. 15 picks left. Find out where will the rest of the quarterbacks and rookies land here on the Fantasy Football Marathon.
Oh, man, leave it to Mina Kimes.
Brandon Ayuk.
I mean, that is just
Damn it, Mina.
That's going to be stuck in your head now for the rest of the season.
And I'm going to hate it.
Well, I mean, so far so good on this draft, though. By the way, update for everybody concerned at home. I did make sure to text Woody and tell him I love him. He's the best, and he texted me back. So I feel like
out of fear.
No, of course.
He's going to put hands on
Have
you.
You seen the size of Woody? I mean, my God, like I'm going to talk that, and then I'm going to walk it back. Talk it, walk it back. That's what we do. Okay. Mike Clay joining us now. Mike, all right. So far, your assessment. How's your draft going?
Matthew say earlier A+. How's A++?
Oh.
We got to one-up that a little bit.
Okay. So who's having the worst draft so far? I'm just trying to get the draft.
God, he really wants this.
The guy that gave himself an A+ earlier.
Oh.
We'll go with him.
I like that.
All right, there we go. Shots directly fired.
He's got a great mind later, and I know where it's going, so I'm just getting ahead of it.
All right, well, one of the picks that you just brought up not too long ago was Adam Thielen here. And we've seen wide receivers get really pushed down in here. Why do you think Adam Thielen, for all of his great relationship with Kirk Cousins, has kind of been forgotten lately?
Because he's not he's not super flashy. It's kind of like Robert Woods. We talked about that earlier during the draft. Some of these guys just aren't the flashiest names, and people want the next young, exciting guy. And meanwhile, Adam Thielen's hanging around 30 and just gets the job done year after year. So I'll gladly take the discount on a guy who, again, as I mentioned, has been top 10 at wide receiver 3 of the past 4 seasons.
Mike, you want to tell us the top guy on your board still?
Top guy on the board here. We have a couple options here, right? How about DJ Moore? Kind of stands out a little at wide receiver. Yeah, that one really stands out, actually. T. Higgins, Tyler Lockett. What you'll notice as you're going through your draft when you get in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 if you're in a 10-teamer, is so much wide receiver talent and depth. It's out of control. There's always going to be good names. So keep that in mind, especially when you're drafting early. You can set yourself up for to target a lot of receivers a little bit later.
Keep up the great work, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You know, Mike, what he just talked about is something you and I have talked about on different college football shows over the last year or two. The evolution of the way young receivers particularly can adapt into the league. Like we're in a league now where young quarterbacks have faster success than they used to. So in my mind, offensive coordinators have looked at it and said, what works at college level? How do we make it for quarterbacks? How do we make it work for them quickly? That also ancillary benefit hits wide receivers, because if you're bringing in these passing concepts from college to help quarterbacks be successful, then in my mind, young receivers have a better chance to be successful quickly.
And go further back even than that here, because think about the volume, the time under task that you're getting right now. Go all the way back to what these 7-on-7 camps have become right here. You're getting so many reps at route running, at doing these things. And so you're right. Once pro offensive coordinators decided to meet these dudes halfway, like we're going to hear him talked about as a sleeper a lot, but I have a feeling people could wake up pretty quick. Elijah Moore and that Jets offense is going to be scary, man. Anyone who watched him, I know Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss run a video game set out there, but man, there was portions of last year where I know Devonta Smith won the Heisman. Elijah Moore looked like he could have been the best one in college football, and he's in an offense right now. It's going to try to mimic some of the things that we saw out in San Francisco with a young quarterback. Like, there's scary talent like that you're going to be able to get late-round flyers on.
And that's why I continue to say, too, look at your second-year wide receivers, because last year, with no camp, with no regular practices, the COVID restrictions, I think we really have to look at the output of young wide receivers and say, hey, we're going to get a big bump from a lot.
You just want Brian Edwards to do really well.
I mean, Brian Edwards is going to be
Las Vegas.
like late round pick, like just late round cinema. Well, I mean,
listen, I don't have any problem with you speaking into existence. Look what that's done for Andy Dalton. Out here campaigning for himself. Go off, Ginger King.
All right, well, we're going to let the guys and girls keep going off on the TV side now. Let's check out and see where they go next with the draft.
We are now over 1.5 million drafted teams as the fantasy football marathon rolls on here on ESPN, ESPN2. My best available. I can't believe DJ Moore has not gone yet. Myles Gaskin, I know there's some concerns about Malcolm Brown, but I do believe in his talent. T. Higgins, Schefter and I fought over him all last year. Ty Lockett, of course, of the Seahawks. Then Dak Prescott. Maybe there's some concerns on the shoulder, but he's my number 3 quarterback. Surprised he's still on the board. Luckily, I am up. I'm up to pick. And you know what? When you have your own board, you follow your board. I'm going with DJ Moore of the Panthers, who I have number 38 overall. So to get him at pick 56, I think is incredible value for me. He's the only wide receiver in the NFL with over 1,200 scrimmage yards each of the last 2 seasons. He was 8th in receiving yards per game last year. He was 2nd in deep targets last season. I believe Sam Darnold will have a nice year for the Panthers, and I believe he's an upgrade over what they had last year. Give me some DJ Moore as my number 3 wide receiver. He's a legit wide receiver 2 in fantasy, and I got him at number 3.
You walking all the way back from that touchscreen to this chair without falling over is the single most athletic thing I have ever seen you do.
It's the biggest upset of the year. There's no question.
That's right there. Yeah.
So
nice pick with DJ Moore, by the way.
Thank you, Brian.
Well.
Surprised DJ Moore fell to me. Surprised I made it. I was able to walk and talk and sit all in
big
the same
here, all over the
movement.
fantasy draft.
A lot of big upsets there. So DJ Moore off the board. I appreciate that nice value. And I turn it over to Mr. Adam Schefter.
And I still need a running back and a tight end.
Yep.
And it seems like the value at running back is greater at this point in the draft than it is at tight end. And so with that in mind, I will go Travis Etienne Jr., Jacksonville Jaguars running back.
First Jaguar off the board, by the way, one of 5 teams that had not yet had a player picked. And I think people are going to ask right away, Schefty, Etienne over James Robinson.
Well, Etienne in a PPR is going to catch passes, and James Robinson may have more carries and make more goal line carries, but they took Etienne in the first round, okay? When there's a team that drafts somebody in the first round, that tells you something. We talk about follow the money, follow the pick when it's a running back going high.
Yeah, and remember, by the way, Carlos Hyde is in that backfield as well, reunited with his college coach, Urban Meyer. Like, Carlos Hyde is still a productive player. He's going to get some run as well. If you think about that running back group, who's got the most talent? And no disrespect to Hyde or Robinson, but Etienne has the highest upside of those 3 running backs, I believe.
James Robinson was very good last year.
He was the 5th best running back in fantasy
this season. Stephania Bell, your penultimate pick in the fantasy football draft. Who are you taking?
I'm here to make Matthew very happy.
Oh,
when he talks about his best available, I'm going to go with T. Higgins.
There you go.
Yeah,
nice pick.
T. Higgins, a big physical receiver in a pass-happy offense. And I know that Jamar Chase is there, which I think is just going to make it more difficult for people to figure out who are you going to follow. And Jamar Chase, remember, he took last year off, still catching up. T. Higgins, to me, is the number 1 receiver on that offense, at least to start the season.
Nearly 1,000 receiving yards as a rookie, perhaps a bit overlooked because of the performance from Justin Jefferson and the fact that somehow he didn't go in the first round of the real NFL draft. In almost any other year, T. Higgins certainly would have gone in round 1.
I thought for sure that's who Schefter was going to take.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have some
T.
intel?
Higgins. Well, he loves T. Higgins, but you needed a running back.
Spot. We have 7 slots
you
in this draft.
Yeah.
That's
they want to
how-
draft a bench player. I can't blame you there. All right,
Understood.
so Tyler Fulghum is back. He led things
No, it's
off.
Mina Kimes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mina Kimes. Mina,
Mina
sorry,
has-
I'm on
yeah.
a penalty
Don't
lap
skip
right
Mina
there.
Kimes.
Sorry, I'm
I'll
going to take
take
a
it.
penalty lap. My bad.
That's okay. That's okay. If Robert Woods is on the Mount Rushmore of underrated wide receivers, right next to him is Tyler Lockett. For like a long stretch of the season, Russell Wilson literally had a perfect passer rating throwing to him. I don't like to draft Seahawks as an emotional hedge, but the value is too great. I like him in my flex spot. Give me Tyler.
4-year, $69 million contract extension this offseason for Tyler Lockett, one of the best vertical threats in the entire NFL and one of the best vertical throwers in Russell Wilson as his quarterback. These two have a certain magic about them, and it's rare that you can have two elite wide receivers in fantasy from the same team. The Seahawks are one of those exceptions. Now, Tyler, and I apologize again to Mina. I've already run my penalty lap. I didn't do any push-ups because I can't do push-ups. So, Tyler, you're on the clock for your final two picks.
I was hoping you would let me steal it because I had a feeling Mina was going to go where she did. I would have taken my namesake Tyler Lockett had she not stolen him, so smart move there by Mina Kimes. I still need some more pass catchers, and I really do think this offense is going to be very prolific in terms of throwing the football. Give me the rookie Jamar Chase. I'm going to jump on the Jamar Chase bandwagon here. Let's not forget, Justin Jefferson terrorized the league as a rookie a season ago. In 2019, when he was at LSU with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, it was Chase that was wide receiver one. It was Jefferson that was relegated below him in the pecking order. That's how elite of the talent is in Jamar Chase. So hopefully Burrow and him can reconnect and make that magic happen again, and hopefully he can be as good as Justin Jefferson was as a rookie a season ago.
Love the pick. First rookie wide receiver to go in this fantasy draft. No surprise, he's also the first wide receiver taken in the real draft, as you just alluded to. And also players like Jalen Waddle and still available. And certainly there have been no shortage of Alabama wide receivers. Devontae Smith could eventually go off the board as well.
It just, we talk about sort of trying to target offenses that we think will be productive for fantasy. And I understand that Cincinnati's had a tough go of it in the NFL. But when Joe Burrow was hurt last year, he led the NFL in passing attempts. Like, that's an offense that is going to throw quite a bit. And we expect Joe Burrow to be healthy back. So I think Jamar Chase, I think T. Higgins, and I think Tyler Boyd is a real value as well. So, like the pick there. All right, I believe, Tyler, you have one more pick, right?
We have. Well, before we get there, we're
doing a commercial break.
Rookies that have been drafted thus far. Najee Harris goes early, no surprise there. Then Kyle Pitts goes to Anita. She's wearing a T-shirt with Kyle Pitts on it. No surprise she took him. Travis Etienne goes to Schefter just a few picks ago. And then Tyler, with his second to last pick, goes with Jamar Chase, which means now it is time for round 7, the final round here on television today. Get into, Tyler, kick things off just as you did with round 1.
I take Aaron Donald. No, I'm just kidding. I wish I could, since he is my GOAT. No,
you can take the Rams defense. We are playing
No Rams defense in
All right.
round 7, as much as I'd like to be Mina's boy Aqib Talib. But I am going to go. I think this is great value, especially with the way my roster is constructed. I have Christian McCaffrey. I have Joe Mixon at running back. And since this is a full PPR league, Mike Davis down in Atlanta. There's really not much competition in that backfield. And we know how proficient he is catching the ball out of the backfield. Matt Ryan lost Julio Jones. We expect Kyle Pitt to absorb some of that volume. But I think Mike Davis is also going to absorb a lot of that target volume, especially in a PPR league. I think he'll provide some value there. So Mike Davis, I'm going to pair him with McCaffrey and Mixon in my backfield.
Okay, he goes from being Christian McCaffrey's backup to his teammate again. So I guess his teammate once again.
When he got run last year, he was solid. 12 different games with double-digit touches last year. He averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game. And you think about what Arthur Smith, the new head coach in Atlanta, likes to do. He likes to run. Now, obviously, Mike Davis isn't Derrick Henry, very different players. But when they get in close, Arthur Smith likes to use his run game. And to your point, not a lot of depth in that backfield. I think he'll be creative with how he uses Mike Davis. Mina Kimes, your 7th round pick.
So this is a snake draft, which means the board's going to take a while before coming back to me. I feel like there's going to be a run on quarterbacks, so I am going to front run it and take Dak Prescott right here. I know people are worried about the injury, but I think they're just being cautious. Love this Cowboys offense. Also, do not love this Cowboys defense, so Dak's going to be pressed to score a lot of points, and comeback season for Dak.
Well, I'm annoyed because I really was hoping he was going to fall to me. I got to be honest. Dak was not getting to you, just so you know.
Okay, that's good. It makes you feel better about it.
He was absolutely not getting to you.
And Dak Prescott seems like it's Stephania. Before you make your pick here, we're going to take a look at your team, too. But just quickly, you are not concerned about Dak Prescott.
No, I am not. So there might be people worried about the injury. Mina, I'm not one of them. I think that right now it's really just the volume progressions for him to make sure that he stays protected. That's why he won't play in the preseason. He'll be ready to go week 1. Love Dak.
Here's Stephania's very strong team, which started off with back-to-back running backs. Derrick Henry, no surprise, he went early. And then you took George Kittle and also Patrick Mahomes. You have to feel good about your quarterback tight end situations.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about, I've got Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry, and George Kittle.
You're going to find some wide receiver depth now seems to be your next target. Am I right with your final pick?
No.
Oh.
I have Robert Woods and T. Higgins, so I'm not really hurting at wide receiver. And again, wide receiver depth is huge. I can keep going. I'm going to get a running back with some upside to backfill because I do feel that running backs are the most vulnerable position in fantasy football. That seems to be where we lose them. So I'm going to take Javonte Williams, the Denver Broncos. Oh, did I make you mad? I'm so happy.
And Anita.
I love it. Look, Javonte Williams apparently getting so much run in early part of training camp that they're starting to scale him back to protect him for the season. I know Melvin Gordon is there, but he's an up-and-comer, and he can do it all. I love this kid.
Much to the chagrin of Anita Marks. Anita has been flailing around football. She has great ball
I love
security.
it when I snipe people.
Yeah, well, listen, and you look at that Broncos schedule towards the end of the year, it's cake. I think Javonte Williams could have a huge year. We talked about this podcast. Right. He's my pick for this year's Cam Akers, a guy that really carries teams to fantasy titles towards the end of the year.
Shefty, last pick for you.
Yeah, I have to take a tight end. I'm locked into the position. And
no, you're not. We're doing a full draft, so you don't have to take every position. You can. We're taking
I'm going to do that because, I've just.
He's a man of integrity.
Exactly. I'm filling my board. And the tight end on the board right now who had more points than any other last year would be Robert Tonyan.
This is true.
Bobby Tonyan.
Bobby Tonyan. Looking for touchdowns this year in Green Bay. He had 10 of them last year. Should have been named to the Pro Bowl. And talk about trust with quarterbacks and pass catchers. Aaron Rodgers, a big fan of Robert Tonyan. That brings us to the 5th pick of the 7th round. And Matthew Berry, you are on the clock. You have not yet drafted a quarterback. Will you round out your roster with a quarterback?
I will. Now, normally, I think you can wait, but I also think there's sort of an elite level. There's a little bit of a drop-off. There's a tier, and there's one guy left in the tier. I was hoping Mina would take this guy, so maybe Dak could follow me, but I have Russell Wilson on my love list this year. He's going as QB7 off the board. I am his QB5. I have him higher in the overall ranks. You heard me talk earlier about the fact that I'm a believer in Shane Waldron, that I do actually believe they let Russ cook. I think people forget how dominant Russell Wilson was through the first 8 games of last year, where he was averaging over 28 fantasy points per game. There's only one quarterback in the NFL that has thrown at least 30 touchdown passes each of the last 2 years, and it's actually Russell Wilson, who's done it for 4 straight years. So there's a very high floor with Russell Wilson, but there's also upside as well. Please let Russ cook. But I think either way, to me, I think there's a drop-off after Russ. Give me Russell Wilson.
I'm not so convinced there is a drop-off, but Russ is remarkable. And we talked about how it's not required upon us to fill every position on our roster. Yeah. But there's something sort of like aesthetically pleasing about having every starter filled out through your first 7 picks. Along those lines, I'm going to go with the reigning, defending NFL MVP, Mr. Aaron Rodgers, a guy who has been relatively in the news this offseason. Adam Schefter just had to drop the story of the offseason on draft day.
Right.
Well, here we are on our own draft day, a much more important one, and Aaron Rodgers is back in the news as he falls all the way to the 7th round. If I know Aaron Rodgers, this man can turn just a tiny chip into a massive boulder on his shoulder. Aaron Rodgers going to be a fantasy superstar again this year. So, Damien Woody, your final pick of this fantasy draft. What do you got?
Yeah, you were at your big board and you talked about DJ Moore. Well, yeah. I'm going to take his teammate, Robbie Anderson.
Former Jet, of course.
Yeah. The connection with, obviously, Sam Darnold down there in Carolina. I love the offense. Robbie Anderson, with that speed, that's where I'm going.
There you have it, Robbie Anderson, who, of course, reunites, as you mentioned, with Sam Darnold. This offense should be very, very good this season. Robbie Anderson quietly played really well down the stretch last year for Carolina, with Teddy Bridgewater at the quarterback.
He was a top 30 wide receiver last year. Like, he very underrated fantasy asset last year. And so now second year in that system and reconnecting with Sam Darnold. We expect big things out of Robbie Anderson this season.
Sure do. Mike Clay, you are back on the clock. We've got just 3 picks left. Who will be the first of those 3?
We do. And look, the quarterbacks have been going early and often here throughout the last couple of rounds. There's only one guy left that I really feel good about starting, and it's Justin Herbert. So that's where I'm going to go here. 36 total touchdowns, 10 interceptions last season as a rookie who he found out about his first start, 5 minutes?
6 minutes. He had 6 minutes to prep.
Sorry.
For the Chiefs. 6 minutes to prep for the Chiefs.
Right, no doubt. And he went on
30 seconds?
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, and look how well he played. That game and going forward, he was terrific. Actually, he was top 10 in 60% of his starts last season. Only Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers were better. And, you know, quarterbacks make a year 2 leap, right? That's what we expect. He can be even better this season, maybe the next elite NFL quarterback. I'll take Justin Herbert here.
And I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he does with his legs.
Sure.
He had 5 different games with both a rushing and a passing touchdown, which is tied for 3rd most among quarterbacks. So more mobile than I think he gets credit for as a quarterback in terms of fantasy.
Justin Herbert, one of the final players taken in our 7-round draft.
And we heard Damien Woody talk about, like, the Chargers, one of those offenses that we think are going to sneak up on people this year.
They are on the rise. Interestingly enough, with just 2 picks left, Michael Thomas, who set records just 2 seasons ago, still available on the board. Daniel looking very sneaky with that hair tied back. Will Michael Thomas be your final pick?
I was thinking about it here, Field. In all honesty, I really wanted to go that route. However, I decided to go with running back because I like Matthew Berry's board. Normally, I'm not going to follow Matthew's rankings. I follow Mike Clay because Mike Clay is the best in the business. Smart man. I love Matthew.
Wow. Smart man.
Matthew
right
puts me on his TV show. I love Matthew. But listen, I love Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin is a guy that I'm a little bit worried about what they're going to do with Malcolm Brown, but he is absolutely somebody that is a fantastic pass catcher. I think that offense is going to get better this year. He is somebody that you can grab later in the rounds. And for me, he's that running back that is still going to be the lead guy there, but I don't have to use an early round pick on him, someone that I can see how he develops. Also, great trade value this late in the draft, 18.3 touches per game last year.
All right, Anita, our final pick of the draft. No pressure on Mr. Irrelevant, who really in a 7-round fantasy draft isn't that irrelevant, but who will be the final pick to hear his name called on national TV?
Well, thanks to Stephania Bell and Daniel, thank you. I picked 2 of the guys that I wanted. You know, how's Odell Beckham Jr. still on the board? You know, he's coming back. I think Odell's got a lot to prove this season. Coming off that ACL injury, and I think this Browns offense is going to be pretty explosive. So let's finish it. Let's give some respect where respect is due. Odell Beckham Jr. is my 7th-round pick.
Find somebody that looks at you the way Anita looks at Odell Beckham Jr. in fantasy. I've been in many leagues with, I don't think I've ever, Anita, you and I have drafted in many leagues together, and I don't think I've ever been in a draft where you didn't wind up with OBJ.
Well, OBJ, one of the trickier players to grade coming into this season with the injury and the inefficiency in Cleveland, but here's his name called at the end of round 7. All right, coming up, a sleeper round. That's right. Last year you had players like James Robinson, who was a breakout star that nobody was talking about, and Logan Thomas and Justin Jefferson. Who could be the 2021 versions of those players? We'll tell you next up here on the Fantasy Football Marathon on ESPN.
That angst is real, and it's very comforting. I mean, there's a moment for me where I feel like sometimes I'm the maniac that is watching the draft go down and yelling at my computer, or yelling last year because we weren't in the same room as we did it, you know, yelling at everything that you thought you were going to get and you don't get. To see a group of some of our best minds going at it and then still see that level of, oh my God, I can't believe you got that guy. To me, I don't know. It's one of the most like heartwarming, strangely heartwarming portions of this.
Man, listen, at the end of the day, like, we're all doing this because we're fans to a certain extent, and then you make it your fantasy team, which who's going to love your team more than you. Like, this is all what lurks underneath. We can put on suits and act like we know what we're doing more than anybody else here, but we're all really just hanging on by a thread.
So for you, because everybody knows my fandom, and obviously everybody knows your college fandom for the school that you played for. do you root for Notre Dame players? Like when you're putting together a fantasy, do you care if they played at Notre Dame? Like, do people have a particular like heartstring pull for you?
I'm going to do what's right for my team. Like, if it works out that I can get a Notre Dame guy there, that's great. Like, but more often than not, I'm going to root for them to do well. Like, I am the card-carrying, first and foremost member of the Defend All Things Zach Martin fan club in the NFL. He has been an all-pro basically every year he's been in the league and is somehow still underrated. But aside from that one, no, I let my mind guide my fantasy football choices.
Which is why, in this sense, you're a professional and I'm not. But one thing that I think is we watch back, like, we laugh about my fandom, and I'm the first to admit, I think Mina's right. You know, I told this story earlier with Kelsey, but I'll never forget, I was at this bar in Nashville called The Rudder, right? And I'm watching the Raiders, who at that time, it was the Darren McFadden era of the Raiders. They were taking on the Steelers.
Who could forget that?
It wasn't a particularly heartwarming era. But I was in this bar, and an 80-yard touchdown run gets ripped in this game and for the Raiders. And I'm talking my talk to so many people around there. I'm running around, and I'm celebrating. And I sit down, I'm like, you know the best part? Darren McFadden's on my fantasy team. At which point, somebody sitting next to me said, yeah, that handoff wasn't to Darren McFadden. It went to the backup back. They were giving Darren McFadden a little breather. So I get Mina's actual approach of, like, sometimes it's good to stay away from favorite teams. But one thing that was refreshing as we watched it is Mina still has, like, her pull to certain Seahawks. And Dopp has his pull to the Lions. And, you know, I have my pull to the Raiders. And Matthew Berry has his pull to the Washington football team. Like, that's real.
And it helps when your team's got good players like that. Like I told you during the break when we were sitting over here, if my life was on the line and they said, Mike, you've got to bet your future on this earth, on the connection between two human beings, I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. The strongest relationship I know is between Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett. I am betting on them every day and every Sunday with my fantasy team. Tyler Lockett has been a staple of every fantasy football squad I have put together since he's been in the league. That ain't going to change this year.
Look, I feel like that's going to go even like, you know, it doesn't matter. One of them leaves. That this is like that best friend movie. Like one dog, like the dog leaves town and all of a sudden the other dog finds it. They're like the Fox and the Hound or something.
Yeah.
Like, they end up together. Although I don't think the Fox and the Hound had a problem.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that one ends up here. You're going to want to probably check your facts.
I'll just rewatch it on Disney Plus, where you can catch all the Disney movies. I think that was a good shameless plug. Any surprise other than Derek Carr not being drafted at this point? Any surprise to you that stands out as we look at the list? I mean, Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt. I'm a little surprised Kareem Hunt didn't go off the board in that process. We saw a lot of value at running back last year for the Browns.
A little surprised there. I will say one of the intriguing ones there, we saw Noah Fant certainly go a little earlier than some people were comfortable with, but Javonte Williams also, when we talked about some of the great backs that we saw coming out in this rookie class here, trying to see who's going to hit there, what that Denver offense could potentially look like. Very exciting.
Well, we're into the spot where you got to be an expert to get it right. So let's go back to our experts and let's get more education from their sleeper picks coming up next from the entire crew.
Back on the Fantasy Football Marathon, over 1.53 million sign-ups already. Be a part of those who make it closer to 2 million. Field Yates and Matthew Berry here. And Matthew, as you know, sleepers can be an invaluable part of your
piece
draft.
of that
Who are some
I
players
heard,
that might
so
strike you as sleepers here for 2021?
Yeah, obviously, so sleepers
30 seconds,
are
Fitz.
one of the
30 seconds?
It's a weird term, right? But how about A.J. Dillon, right?
Okay.
Former Boston College guy, right? Really like him. How about Darnell Mooney, wide receiver of the Chicago Bears? I really like him quite a bit. How about Anthony Ferkser, the tight end in Tennessee, taking over? Well, are we running out of time?
Yeah, we're out of time.
We're out of time, so come with us to Digital.
That's right. Join us on Digital. We're going to do a bonus sleeper round of players we do not want to leave the draft without. Coming up now on Digital.
I'm just going to be honest with the world. I got up because I really got a tinkle. And I was like, this is my break. I'm going to get a chance to go to it. And then all of a sudden, no, we're right back here, Mike.
I am praying to any God that will listen to somehow cause us to have to vamp for like the next 20 minutes here, because I want to see if you'll full on pee your pants.
Mike, I made a very long drive yesterday, and I'm not going to tell you how many times I peed in a cup, so I'm not afraid.
I've done radio with you for multiple hours, and the amount of times in 3 hours you hear Jason Fitz up and go, I got a tinkle.
Well, you know.
It's more than you'd ever imagine. I don't know what happened to your bladder along the way, but it's not good.
I drink a lot of water now. I'm trying to take care of myself, and I'm the Giannis Antetokounmpo of ESPN because we both like to say tinkle. Oh.
Mister, get me out of here.
This is what happens.
Tell me a fantasy thing, Jason.
I will tell you this. I'm a little surprised. I'm looking at best available, right? Because we're still getting the list here. And to see Kenny Golladay, I mean, if there's a weapon for the Giants, I don't know if that speaks to the lack of belief in Daniel Jones. I don't know if that speaks to the lack of belief in the Giants in general, but I think the Giants have a shot of being a better football team than they were last year.
Well, it's going to be one of those interesting things, too. Obviously, Kenny Golladay, the big winner payday-wise this offseason, the beneficiary from the Giants, but that's an offense where we're unsure about the offensive line. You've got Saquon Barkley coming back. You've got Darius Slayton. You've got so many mouths to feed. Kadarius Toney. You brought Kyle Rudolph over in addition to Evan Ingram. Like, stop me when you've heard more names than an offense can possibly contain, not knowing who the favorite's going to be.
Yeah, you mentioned Kadarius Toney. Love him. I love sleeper picks. We're going to throw it back to the guys and get some of those coming at you right now.
It's overtime here on the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon. My name is Field Yates, joined by Matthew Berry, and you probably have been watching the first 7 rounds of our fantasy football draft. So, Matthew, it's time now for an 8th round, and we're calling it the sleeper round. A bonus round because we can't get through all 16 rounds of our mock draft, which we normally would, of our draft we normally would. So it's time for a sleeper round, and it's not necessarily a guy you'd never heard of, but the player that the 10 drafters who've been a part of this exercise do not want to leave without.
Right. So as we said, it's a 16-round draft. So from round 8 until round 16, who's one guy in that range that you want to leave the draft with? Who's a guy that you have your eye on? So
should we get
we'll
started
go back.
then?
Yeah, let's get started. Let's go back to all of our drafters. Everyone's happy with their team. And we start with pick 10, Anita Marks.
My team is so loaded. Is it even worth doing this bonus round? I suppose we're contractually obligated to.
Loaded less than mine.
Wow, interesting. Anita Marks, why don't you start us off now with your sleeper pick, the one player you cannot leave this draft without?
Sure, I think this is a wide receiver that I'm going to be able to get maybe in round 14, and that's Russell Gage from the Atlanta Falcons. I know everybody's talking about Calvin Ridley, Damien. I know you like him a lot. I know Kyle Pitts is there. Julio Jones is out. But I'm hearing amazing things about him out of camp. Keep in mind, weeks 14 through 17, he put up almost 65 fantasy football points. He's extremely, extremely talented. So I think that's a deep, deep sleeper for you, and I think that's a wide receiver you can get. I say around 14 because typically I take my defense at 15, I take my kicker at 16, but a guy that you could possibly end the draft with, and that's Russell Gage.
All right, there you have it. First pick in our sleeper round is Anita Marks, who goes with Russell Gage. Daniel Dopp, how about you?
Phil, it's going to be somebody we talked about on the podcast a little while ago. It's Michael Pittman.
Ah, that was mine.
I am sorry. I'm sorry.
You got sniped on a sleeper pick.
Wow. We love the same guys. Here's the problem. Michael Pittman didn't have great stats last year, but you look at what the kid can do. Great run after the catch ability. Also, he's 6'4", and we both know you can't teach that.
Can't teach that.
Can't teach size. So give me Michael Pittman. I love him as a late-round flyer. There's tons of upside there. What he could be in that offense could be really awesome. Probably wouldn't take him if I have Jonathan Taylor, but I do love Michael Pittman as a late-round guy.
All right. Well, certainly a lot of talent there. And with the positive reports we're hearing about Carson Wentz coming back sooner rather than later, that would certainly bode well for Pittman's fantasy stock. Let's move to Mike Clay and your sleeper. Devontae Booker still out there. Boston Scott still out there. Any thoughts in terms of, ensuring any of your running backs?
No, you can take the bad insurance backs. I'll take a guy that's going to break out this season because, you know what, he showed signs of it last season. Laviska Shenault Jr., second-round pick last year. I don't think people realize during the 13 full weeks he played, he was wide receiver 28 in fantasy, and he was a part-time player. He finished up really strong, lots of volume in the final month of the season. Actually had 4 touchdowns in his final 5 games. So Shenault being drafted way too late. I think he has a full-on breakout in this Jacksonville offense. Much better quarterback situation there as well.
Certainly. Damien Woody, listen, Shenault is all sorts of talented. Obviously, we expect that offense to throw quite a bit with Trevor Lawrence. By the way, I also like Marvin Jones, who's going way later, but he's not going to be my sleeper. All right, Damien, who you got?
How about Corey Davis?
How about Corey Davis?
How about Corey Davis going over to the New York Jets? I think with that LaFleur offense that the New York Jets going to be implementing this year, that San Francisco type of offense, he's the number one guy. He's their number one receiver. I'm going Corey Davis.
That's a good pick right there. Yeah. Corey Davis, 3 years, $37.5 million this offseason.
Follow the money.
Buzz about Elijah Moore out of that Jets camp, but Corey Davis, much bigger, better red zone threat. And this is one that I really haven't thought about that much so far this preseason. As I was scanning the names that are down near the bottom here, this one just sort of struck me. There has been nothing but basically bad vibes around the start to Kadarius Toney's career with the New York Giants. He has a foot issue at the start of training camp. He lands on the COVID-19 list. He's been banged up recently. They've got plenty of wide receivers. And yet, as anybody who followed the pre-draft coverage can tell you, the dude's a human joystick. He is he's explosive with the football in his hands. I know this is probably me overthinking it, but I'm just going to trust the talent here. Kadarius Toney, an interesting lottery ticket late in your draft.
Okay, so like the call there, you heard me mention A.J. Dillon. If you were watching on linear, you heard me mention A.J. Dillon, Darnell Mooney. But look, here's the thing. The premise of this is like, who do I not want to leave the draft without? It's a 10-team league, start one quarterback. I'm not drafting another quarterback because I've got Russell Wilson.
Right.
Russell Wilson doesn't miss games. But I do think it's important to talk about Justin Fields and Trey Lance, who are two sleepers that I absolutely love. Look, they may not start week 1, but both those guys are going to start at some point this season, I think sooner than later, both because of their ability with their arms and their legs are both going to be fantasy superstars sooner rather than later. And obviously, they're both coached by good coaches and good offenses that have a lot of talent around them. And you wait, the Bears are a good offense? Bears were 8th in pass attempts last year. They were 12th in plays from scrimmage with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles as their quarterback. Fields will be an upgrade there. Again, we talked about Allen Robinson. I just mentioned Darnell Mooney. I like I like Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I do like Trey Sermon too, but Lance and Fields as quarterbacks you can grab and stash late in your draft. Shefty?
I like some other quarterbacks. I think it's so deep at quarterback that last year, top quarterback pick after Burrow was Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
And struggled last year. And this year, I think he could bounce back with all the weapons they have in Miami. There's an awful lot of them. So did you pick Justin Fields or Trey Lance?
One or the other.
I picked both.
Pick one.
He picked like 8 guys.
I did pick like 8 guys. Whatever. Like, you talk about them all.
I see names going up on the board.
Oh, yeah. All right. So they gave me.
Okay, well, then I'll take Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa.
There you go. There you go. Fair enough.
Do that.
Yeah. Fair enough. Starfania Bell.
I'm going to pick up what you put down. I'm going to take Trey Sermon.
Okay.
Now, look, they love his talent. In that offense, he can do a number of things. Remember, Hasty was injured last year, probably not going to make it back for a number of months. So Trey Sermon getting a lot of run in camp. Bobby Turner, an awesome running backs coach who makes his running backs learn the entire offense, not just their position. And that's what makes them so versatile. I think you're going to see Trey Sermon emerge this year. I really, really like him as an up-and-comer.
Third-round pick out of Ohio State, began his college career at Oklahoma, ran very well, set a Big Ten Ohio State record for single rushing yards in one game. Mina Kimes, you're up next for our sleep around, the one player you are not leaving this draft without.
Yeah, I had to scroll a while to get to this guy and scroll and scroll and scroll. But I'm going to go with Jacoby Myers for a couple of reasons. I think that he's the best route runner in this wide receiver group, in all the skill players in New England. And I also think when they make the quarterback switch to Mac Jones, which they will, he's going to benefit. He's going to eat a lot of targets in that intermediate area of the field, run the sort of timing routes I think they want Mac Jones to live in, and I just really like him.
There you have it. And by the way, that means that just one team has not had a player drafted at any point during this exercise. Can you guess who it is? Anybody? First person to guess it gets a nickel. What do you got? Of course, Mike Clay. Of course, Mike would know it within 5 seconds. I'm never taking you to trivia unless I want to win. The Texans are the only team who has not yet had a player picked, which means to Tyler Fulghum, you have our last pick here. Will it be Davis Mills?
It will not be Davis Mills or any other Houston Texan. I actually think they're going to go 0-17 this year. I think there's a 25-1 wager on that because I think they're going to be that bad. There's a few names that surprised me they weren't drafted. Chase Claypool, Jerry Jeudy in our draft specifically. Trey Sermon and the quarterbacks that Matthew mentioned I really love. But a couple of wide receivers. One, Marquez Callaway in New Orleans, first and foremost. With Michael Thomas being out, Marquez Callaway is someone who is going to be wide receiver 1, I think, for that team. By all accounts, he's really blown up during this training camp, finished the season strong last year. Don't know who's going to play quarterback, but we know Michael Thomas is not going to be there, and someone has to step up on the perimeter, and I think Callaway could be that guy. I'll also mention Randall Cobb as well because literally Aaron Rodgers got him to Green Bay, and he may not be a great real-life football player anymore, but But Aaron Rodgers will make you a great fantasy football player if he wants to throw you the damn ball, and he will throw it to Randall Cobb.
That much is very true. It's time now for us to send it back to our guys, Jason Fitz and Mike Golic Jr. Fitz is still glowing after Hunter Renfrow broke Jalen Ramsey's ankles during practice today. Fitz, take it away. We'll be back in just a minute with Matthew's draft breakdown.
I'm starting to feel like Field must be listening to my microphone. I have been boring Mike Golic Jr. with every detail of the joint practices between the Raiders and Rams, which today seemed like they were dominated by one particular team.
I'm glad you used the right verb there.
Dominated?
Boring.
Oh, that hurts. Hey, one pick that was just talked about in the sleepers, and I wanted to throw it to you because you've talked about him a lot ever since he was back at college. Laviska Shenault is somebody you like as a wide receiver.
Well, I think it's just going to be really interesting in the context of this offense, right? Like everyone thought, all right, with the second first-round pick that Jacksonville had when they took Travis Etienne, Urban Meyer, everywhere he's been, has loved that kind of jack-of-all-spades player around the line of scrimmage. And everyone thought, all right, maybe Travis Etienne could be that guy in a backfield that's already got James Robinson. But Laviska Shenault was the first name that came to mind for me if you're looking for someone to hand off those jet sweeps to, get the ball like we've seen in the preseason on the perimeter and just let him cook. I think there's a lot of interesting touches for him in another one of these offenses where a rookie quarterback's going to be behind an offensive line that's still trying to find itself.
See, but that's my problem with taking anything from Jacksonville this year. Again, I love Trevor Lawrence. We all love Trevor Lawrence. I think it's going to be spectacular, but it's not a known entity with Urban Meyer and who he is as an NFL coach. We don't know. The offensive line there makes Cincinnati's offensive line from last year look dominant. It's bad. Like, it's atrocious.
I don't know if it's that bad. Last year's Cincinnati offensive line, man, like, that was a tough one. But I get what you're saying here.
I mean, the offensive line is bad. The coaching is not NFL proven. We have no idea what to expect from the play calling while you're working in a rookie running back, and then you have a weird pick of a rookie quarterback, and we have a weird pick of a rookie running back. There was not a position in need for Jacksonville. So I'm just looking at the whole thing with the Jags, and like, I'll use a real Southern phrase here. Mike could. Like,
Mike
work
could.
out. Mike could. Like, that's.
You want another Mike Could on the board right here. Kadarius Toney, we talked about him a little bit ago in that Giants offense here. That's a joystick player. Like, he did some things video game glitch style where I thought he went through players at Florida. And that's going to be another interesting one here. Like, you've got Sterling Shepard occupying a lot of those slot touches in New York. It seemed like a superfluous pick at the time for the Giants, who still need interior offensive line help the last time we checked. Like, Kevin Zeitler's not walking through that door anymore. So I don't know what the answer is there, but that's one that, if it hits, man, he's such a just interesting, different kind of player than most of what you see.
I think he got overshadowed a lot by Pitts and the success Pitts had at Florida. In the meantime, tons of success from Matthew Berry. Let's see what he thinks of everything from the draft.
All right, time now. We're starting with the tote board. Sorry, great. All right, the tote board. Where are we? We are over 1.54 million teams. Tote board is not here on my side of this, not my side of the studio. All right, great. So, hey, we're going to go through the drafts here, and let's start with Tyler. Got pick one. All right, Tyler, you start off with McCaffrey. I'm sorry. Look to my right. There you are. All right, there you go. Great. Fantastic. Live TV. All right, Tyler. Great. All right, so listen, you start with McCaffrey. You come back around with Mixon and Waller in the third. You don't take a wide receiver until pick 4. And then, of course, you shock the world by taking Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes, Jamar Chase, Mike Davis. So my first question to you is, assuming this draft played out, how did you build your team, and how are you going to take the rest of the draft?
Yeah, well, I got my running back I wanted with McCaffrey, the best in the business, and I got that QB1. I had Josh Allen QB1 on my board instead of Mahomes by just a smidge. Now, I bypassed wide receivers early because we know that's such a deep receiver group. Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase playing in two great offenses, the Rams and the Bengals, or at least we think the Bengals can be a prolific offense. So the rest of this draft is probably just going to be to find depth. I have 3 running backs who are starters and 3 down backs, and now it's finding pass catchers. Guys like we mentioned as sleepers, like Marquez Callaway, like Randall Cobb. Got to round out some depth in my pass catching crew, and maybe near the end find a backup quarterback, maybe stack Joe Burrow or Matthew Stafford with one of the elite pass catchers or top pass catchers I have. But really like the way board fell to me, and really fortunate and grateful in Las Vegas to have the first overall pick in Lance Seamack.
Yeah, you know what? It's a real risk-reward team, obviously. Mixon could be great. has some injury issues. Chase could be great. He's also a rookie. Mike Davis could be great, but also, does he have that much job security? But ultimately, real risk reward, yes, I think you identified your issue there. With Cooper Kupp as your number one, ideally he's more of a number 2 wide receiver. You need to get another wide receiver that definitely pops. But nice job there, Tyler. Well done. Let's bring in Mina Kimes. So you went Alvin Kamara, then you went DeAndre Hopkins, CEH. You believe in CEH. Julio Jones, entering his 32-year-old season. Mark Andrews at 5. You finally picked a Seahawk in round 6 in Tyler Lockett. I love the value with Dak Prescott at 7. So, Mina, take me through your draft strategy and what you would expect the rest of this draft to be like as it plays out.
I feel like you were kind of negging my team a little there with the age on Julio, but I'll ignore
listen,
it.
Take a look at me. I make no age jokes of anyone, Mina. Take a good look over here.
The only pick I didn't feel totally certain about was Edwards-Helaire, and I don't feel totally certain about the running back position on my board. It's obviously Kamara with my number 1 pick, but man, what a group of skill players. The wide receiver groups, I feel like Hopkins, Julio, frankly, I know his struggles in the red zone are real, but they're can't-miss volume targets, volume guys. Mark Andrews, the same. Dak Prescott, I was worried about a run on quarterbacks. Love his dual threat ability. Love that offense and what they're going to have to do to compensate for that defense. I love my team. I feel like it's a home run.
Yeah, it's definitely a very good team. A lot of big names on there, too. And it felt like, in terms of draft strategy, you were very much sort of best player available. You didn't come in with a specific strategy other than just sort of letting the draft board come to you.
Exactly. And I'll grab some running back value later, maybe some backups like a Zach Moss or an A.J. Dillon who could step into that RB1 role, but I like the guys I have.
I appreciate it. It's a good team. Be interesting to see how it plays out. I like the Jacoby Myers pick, by the way. It's a guy that could easily get 100 targets. All right, thank you, Mina.
Yes.
Come on over, Stephania Bell, Stephania Bell. Take the long walk over here.
Long walk.
As we go through your team, you went Derrick Henry with pick 3. A little early, but obviously can't argue with that. Back-to-back running backs there, and Henry and Harris, lots of volume with those two guys. You went San Francisco and George Kittle, can't argue with that. Again, first wide receiver, not till round 4, but you got Bobby Trees. Mahomes somehow fell to you. It's unbelievable. And I love T. Higgins. Devontae Williams, a nice sleeper. Take me through your team here, Stephania, in terms of what you were hoping to do in this draft.
In the first round, I probably thought I would have taken Alvin Kamara, but Mina drafted Alvin Kamara. I wanted to take Derrick Henry because he's been so consistent, so strong. He's going to touch the ball a ton. Najee Harris, just the upside. He's going to play 3 downs. They're going to use him a ton. George Kittle, I'm a Niner fan.
Yeah, of course.
And there's really a top tier of tight ends. Travis Kelsey kind of rides the top of the mountain on his own. And then you've got Kittle and Waller. And so I knew he wasn't going to make it back to me. So Kittle is one where you might say you took him a little early, but I wasn't going to get him if I didn't take him then. So that was my rationale. Needed receivers, went with Robert Woods and T. Higgins as my receivers. I'm pretty happy with them.
Yeah.
There's nothing to complain about. Patrick Mahomes, I was shocked he was still there in the 5th round. I know this is a group where we tend to take quarterbacks a little bit later, but I really didn't think he was going to be.
That was shocking to me. I got to be honest with you, Stephania. I love the team. You have 2 potentially top 10 running backs in Henry and Harris. You have a top 3 tight end in Kittle. You have the number 1 quarterback there. And so your wide receivers are Woods and Higgins. Woods, again, more of a 2 than a 1, but Higgins has that potential as well. So you have 2 very solid 2s. And again, the depth of the position, you're crushing at every other position. All you need to do is sort of maintain at the wide receiver position.
No, Matthew Stafford, he's a 2.
Well, you know what I'm saying. You understand. For fantasy, he's not a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, but he's great. And I love Trey Sermon.
There's just so much depth at wide receiver. I wanted to take a chance there, go a little bit later, and get a couple of star running backs. So
fantastic.
I was happy with it.
Nice job. Well done. Per Sources is now on the clock. Adam Schefter, his team name always Per Sources. I was surprised that Dalvin Cook fell to you at 4. He's my number 2 running back. Real nice value there. And then you go back-to-back DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. Actually, wide receiver, 3 straight wide receivers. So take me through your draft here. You waited on running back 2. Did you feel like you waited too long, Adam?
Yeah. No, and again, I am not used to doing a 10-team draft.
Sure.
Didn't have a feel for it the way I would have. And I don't think I would have gone 3 straight wide receivers now, knowing what I know. But I did, and that's the team that worked out. And I got no problem taking Travis Etienne where I did as the second running back. Again, ideally, you'd make one of those wide receivers another running back, mix it up, get a little bit more balance.
Yeah, agreed. You know, in a 10-team league, especially, the wide receiver position is so deep. But I would say this, is that I'm always a believer that you don't want to reach for a guy. Like, take best player available. So you've got Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Mike Evans. You've got 3 top 15 wide receivers. So now, like, you don't have to use that team all through the year, right? Now you've got some building blocks. You could easily call one of the people in the league and say, hey, you've got some running back depth. You need a number one wide receiver. The first 2 teams we saw didn't have a number 1 wide receiver. You've got 3 number 1s in essence.
Yeah, so that's a good way of looking at it too. Again, not used to the 10-team format. It moves up on you quick. And where I took Mike Evans, I was thinking of going Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, I'll wait. There's 5 more picks left. There's a bunch of quarterbacks, and they both went. So I could have gone one of the quarterbacks there. Probably still got Mike Evans or another really good wide receiver.
No question about it. I'm a little nervous about Tunyon regressing a little bit, but yeah, grab the tight end there in the 7th round.
In.
All right, and now I'm being told, bring over Field Yates. Thank you, Adam. Nice job there. Yater's gonna Yates.
Champ is here.
Are you allowed to call yourself the champ?
Yeah, because I'm going to win.
I don't think so. I think Muhammad Ali is the last person allowed to call himself the champ. All right, so listen, you went Kelsey at 6. We talked about that, whether a running back or not. Then you went 2 wide receivers. So were you planning on going 0 RB, or was that just how sort of the draft fell to you?
Yep, happened organically with the way that the draft fell to me. Travis Kelsey, of course, first wide receiver / pass catcher, tight end in this case, off the board. And then Stephon Diggs. He was available there. I think this is probably a little bit behind where you'd normally see him go in a 10-team league. So too much value. And then with CeeDee Lamb, I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to draft him. Actually, interestingly enough, I was considering David Montgomery at pick 26, 22nd player in our overall rankings. Getting him at 35 felt like great value to me.
Well, anyone that's listened to our podcast that you and I do every single day, wherever you get podcasts, know that CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk are 2 of Field's favorites.
That's right.
2 guys, so not surprising that you wound up with both those guys. Real nice depth at wide receiver, of course. If Montgomery and Jacobs pop, that's a very, very good team. It's almost as good as mine. Damien Woody, come on over. Super Bowl champ, but will he be a fantasy champ? Like, I love the first-round pick in Austin Eckler. We talked about that being the Kamara of the Chargers offense there. Second running back, Chris Carson, loved the value there. Felt like you were just going upside here. Did you have a specific strategy, Damien, or was this more, again, sort of letting the board come to you?
Yeah, I think for me, Calvin Ridley, I just looked at, okay, this is a guy that had 143 targets last year with Julio in Atlanta. Julio moves along. I think he's going to be a target monster with Matt Ryan in the Atlanta Falcons. So that was my rationale there. Keenan Allen, I love that offense that they're going to be running out there with the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert in the second year, and Keenan Allen's going to be his primary weapon. So that was kind of the rationale with those 2 guys in the second and third round.
I thought you picked early on Noah Fant, but just quickly, what do you see out of the player?
That's the one guy, that's the one pick I'm really kicking myself on, because I was literally thinking Brandon Ayuk the whole time, and I talked myself out of the pick with Noah Fant. No disrespect to Noah Fant, but I should have went with my first instinct at that pick right there.
Yeah, and then, of course, Ayuk goes the very next pick. That always happens in fantasy drafts. You're like, maybe he'll be there the next round, and it always is the next pick.
Yep.
It happens all the time. Well, thank you, Woody. It's always great to have you as part of this.
Absolutely.
Really fun. Mike Clay, come on over here. Defend your picks.
I'm not coming.
Oh, you're not coming? What do you got?
You always trash my picks when we do this. I'm not coming. I'm just going to say it.
All right, fine. Saquon Barkley at 1. I don't love the pick there. Look, he could get tremendous volume. I get it. I would have preferred him in the 2nd round. No argument with your wide receivers. Tyreek Hill, I think that's great value for Tyreek Hill at 13, and obviously Justin Jefferson. You have 2 top 10 wide receivers as your 2 wide receivers, and then you've got Adam Thielen. I like picking Thielen, too, by the way. Again, you don't want to target 2 guys on the same team, but when he's the best available, and he clearly was then, you go ahead and grab Thielen. You and I both know I love Logan Thomas. I snaked him in another draft you and I are in. Take me through your strategy going into this draft.
Yeah, this is not good. We're too aligned this year. I'm actually a little concerned. So look, best player available, best value available for sure. I'm high on Barkley. I'm going to take that chance. going for gold. I'll take some risk on. I'm okay with that. Tyreek Hill, easy pick. The number 2 receiver last year. Logan Thomas was the number 3 tight end last year. Talked about Adam Thielen, all that work he gets near the goal line. I think the consensus too low on Miles Sanders. Justin Jefferson was top 5 when he played last season, and I think Herbert takes another step forward this season. So I'm happy with it. Again, you're right. Normally, I'm not going to take 2 wide receivers from the same team, but we're mocking here. I didn't have to get too creative with it, and to your point earlier, opportunities to trade too. I'll take the best value and worry about the rest
Of your draft, are you looking for more running backs? Because you do have risky running backs.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll soak them up later. I'm not going to, there's that running back dead zone. You've heard so much about it this season, that area where you get in rounds like 5, 6, 7. Too many question marks. I don't want to be there. But later on, I'll go for those insurance backs and those potential breakout backs. Plenty of time for that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Nice job there. We'll see how that all plays out. Secret Squirrel Daniel Dopp, you are up now. Let's take us through your team right here. Taylor, Jones, Swift, you go running back, running back, running back. Was that a plan for you? And you got Gaskin in the 7th. Was that an idea or just best available for you?
No, it was a little bit of best available with both Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Jones having Week 13 and Week 14 buys. That's so close to the end of the season and playoffs. I wanted to make sure I grabbed the running back that I would be able to play in both of those weeks. That's why I went with DeAndre Swift in the 3rd round. But also, I'm actually really pleased with this. I love the wide receivers that I got. I'm not at all disappointed about it. Getting Myles Gaskin, another running back in the 7th round. And listen, Matthew, I was following this draft. I was watching the whole time. Every other team has a quarterback except for Anita and I. So maybe I have to take Ryan Tannehill, or maybe I have to take Jalen Hurts, or heaven forbid, Tom Brady to pair with Chris Godwin. I mean, I didn't need to take a quarterback because there's still so many guys that are available. I'm pretty pleased with how this fell.
Yeah, I would think so. Allen Robinson's a legit wide receiver 1, and then Godwin, Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 2. You don't have a tight end yet, but I agree, punting sort of on the position given how the draft played out. I like the team that you did there. Nice job there, Secret Squirrel.
I appreciate that.
All right, let's bring in Anita Marks to round this out. All right, Anita, you stole my guy Antonio Gibson. I can't believe you got Davante Adams at pick 11. That was one of the steals of the draft. Take me through your team and your strategy, other than wearing a Kyle Pitts shirt to the draft, kind of telegraphing what you were going to do. Talk to me about your strategy here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think all of us are really thrilled and excited to see what Antonio Gibson's going to do. I don't think he's going to come off the field for Washington, rushing the football as well as being a big part of their passing game. As you said, Davante Adams, I don't need to say much there. Number 1 in my book, number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year. J.K. Dobbins, it's very interesting. I know the Ravens are going to try to pass the ball more. Before we see them run the ball to try to set up the pass for Lamar Jackson, I think this is going to be a more even keel offense that I think is going to open up things even more for their rushing attack in Dobbins. Henderson, I know I reached for him, but this is a guy that I really like. I love Matthew Stafford. That's the quarterback I want on all my leagues, and he's going round 11, 12, 13, so I'm going to wait and pick him up there. I think his strong arm, that offense is going to move down the field, get into the red zone, get on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yard line, and Henderson is going to score a lot of touchdowns this season. I love me some Sutton. This guy is unbelievable. I don't care who's I'll go quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Sutton is going to be a beast this year. I'm wearing this shirt for a reason. Kyle Pitts was the best player that came out of the draft this season. I want him as my tight end. And I had to take a flyer on Odell Beckham Jr. I wanted Javonte Williams. Stephania Bell grabbed him, but Odell was sitting there. I'm willing to take a gamble on him this season.
Well, certainly with the rock-solid production of Davante Adams, you can take chances on guys like Sutton and Beckham because the wide receiver position is so deep. Thank you, Anita. Nice job. And now we bring up my team. Mike Clay, you always say I trash. If you want to come over here and talk to me through my team, but I thought I got really solid production in Ezekiel Elliott and Nick Chubb. I was happy with how that. I had planned to go wide receiver in the 2nd round, but Nick Chubb was too good of a value there. I think I got 2 great wide receivers in McLaurin and Cooper. Hawkinson was the end of the tier for me.
Too many career touches, doesn't catch enough balls. This guy's nickname's F1. You can't even get his nickname right. Injured right now, Amari Cooper. This guy looks like Daniel Dopp. That's not a good sign. I just disaster.
Adam, feel free. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, again, he starts off by taking 2 sleepers. They tell us the instructions are 1. He takes 2. It's
Everything's
like
wrong.
you get 1 scoop of ice cream. It's Matthew going up and taking
I have
everything
Fields
at the ice
higher
cream
than
bar.
Trey Lance, so if you want Trey Lance, you can have Trey Lance. There you go.
But it's a good team.
Listen, I'm very happy with it. I thought I got real value in DJ Moore, Nick Chubb. I thought McLaurin and Cooper were basically at value, and obviously I love Hawkinson. I'm high on Wilson this year. If the Seattle offense does what we think it could, like this team quite a bit.
Yeah, I like a few of them.
Yeah, worked out.
So worked out for you. All right. Well, listen, on behalf of all the managers, on behalf of Tyler and Mina and Anita and Daniel, for Mike and Adam, for Field, for Damien, for myself and Stephania, we want to thank you so much for watching the Fantasy Football Marathon. Come on, sign up, play, invite someone to play. Tune into the Fantasy Focus, and thank you for watching. Good luck this year.
It is the ESPN Fantasy Football Marathon mock draft.
We are this close to getting football.
I am selecting Christian McCaffrey.
Saquon Barkley is the pick.
No one ruins their draft in the first round except Mike Clay.
Damien Woody's crushing it.
That is the hottest of hot takes.
I decided to go with CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. I think the breakout player in fantasy football this year.
Yater's gonna Yate.
I have to go Antonio Gibson.
Love this guy. A Lance revolution.
Country road, take Mahomes.
I'm taking TJ Hawkinson, Daniel Dopp.
No! I am so angry.
I'm going to end up getting Christian McCaffrey and Josh Allen.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, I've heard of him.
I'm in love with this player and I need him in my life.
Stop with the scary Terry. Someone get Anita a Terry McScorin t-shirt.
Comeback season for Dak.
I don't say anything bad to Damien Woody ever in life because if I do, he'd pancake block me into the next studio.
Was it harder to win a Super Bowl or bench press field?
Oh, definitely the Super Bowl.
I'm crushing this draft like a grape.